Synopsis. It is evident that the enemy, positioned a mere 50 meters away, is formidable, compelling Wang Shuixin to exercise utmost caution in his endeavors. After completing his task, Wang Shuixin sought a vantage point that was neither too elevated nor too low a matter of common sense. An elevated position, while offering a broad field of vision, is also a prime target for enemy snipers, making it perilous. One could easily have their head taken off by a bullet the moment it protrudes. Conversely, a position too low would impair visibility, rendering it futile to even spot the target. After traversing the trench, Wang Shuixin ultimately opted for a gnarled, withered tree, recently singed by artillery fire and still exuding faint wisps of smoke. This would undoubtedly obscure the enemy sniper's line of sight. Beneath the dead tree lay a chaotic scattering of debris from the bombardment. Chapter 1. Am I afraid of deep water? You are aware of the situation, which is all that matters, Johanna remarked as she stepped forward to take the slumbering Diana into her arms. Your father has arrived. It would be prudent for you to handle this. With that, Johanna turned and departed. Shortly after her exit, a portly, balding middle-aged man entered the room, his voice booming as he exclaimed, "Carmen, my son, let me behold my grandchildren. Father, it is a pleasure to welcome you, but Johanna has just lulled the little ones to sleep, so it may not be the most convenient time," Carmen replied with a smile. Bennick's expression momentarily stiffened before he quickly regained his composure. "Is that so? It appears my timing is rather unfortunate," he remarked, disappointment etched across his face, his gaze towards Carmen imbued with a sense of loss. Yet, beneath the surface of his eyes burned a fierce, unquenchable anger. Years prior, he had lent this wayward son 30 gold dragons for a business venture, intending it as a simple investment. Little did he anticipate that in a mere 3 years, Carmen would rise to such heights. The once obedient, sycophantic youth had slipped from his grasp, now possessing wealth comparable to his own. He never envisioned that a casual investment would nurture a ravenous wolf beyond his control. "I have heard you intend to contest for the position of governor of Lys," Bennick said, striving to temper his emotions and awkwardly shifting the subject. The governance of Lys was overseen by a council of governors selected from among the city's wealthiest individuals, typically ranging from 5 to 7, with the potential to expand to 10. Currently, there were 5 governors in Lys, and Carmen could declare his candidacy at any moment, with the vote to be cast by the free citizens of Lys. A simple majority of over 1/3 would suffice for victory. Carmen nodded with a smile, unabashedly acknowledging his ambition to run for governor. "I can assist you. I still hold some sway in Lys. If I rally support for you, I can ensure your ascent to the governorship. What say you? What do you desire in return?" Carmen asked, reclining casually, seemingly indifferent. To him, Bennick's offer sounded almost absurd. After all, he had been occupied with far more than merely accumulating wealth over the years. The establishment of armed forces and the economic infiltration of Rys were both meticulously executed by him. Since a year ago, under the guise of the Free Trade Chamber, he has been refurbishing public facilities such as plazas and roads. Concurrently, he has opened stores catering to various aspects of life: clothing, food, housing, and transportation. By offering affordable prices coupled with high-quality service, he successfully attracts customers. Furthermore, he personally designed the emblem of the Free Trade Chamber, transforming it into a symbol of value and affordability. Should he run for the governorship of Rys, one could speculate that the probability of his election would be at least 50%, if not 70%. However, Bennick remained oblivious to the fact that in Carmen's eyes, he had become nothing more than a foolish jester. With an air of arrogance, he remarked, "I've served as governor for 16 years. I was already in office when you were born. You are aware that your brother has yet to produce an heir. If you entrust me with the technology for your beauty soap, I shall ensure your ascension to the governorship of Rys. Additionally, I will take Grace under my wing and nurture her for the future inheritance of my wealth." Carmen gazed at the haughty Bennick, who had begun to regard others with disdain. To an outsider, one might erroneously conclude that he was offering an enticing proposition. His arrogance was palpable, as if he were bestowing a favor upon Carmen. With a wry smile, Carmen remained silent, observing Bennick's demeanor. After a prolonged silence, Bennick finally met Carmen's gaze and was taken aback by his bemused expression. Fury surged through Bennick, coloring his plump cheeks. "What do you mean by that? Are you looking down on me? Young man, your arrogance is not a virtue. The waters of Rys run deep. If I do not speak, no voter will cast their ballot for you." Bennick had evidently lost his patience, veiled threats lacing his words. He could no longer afford to wait. With his spice business under siege, He was the least financially stable among the 5 governors of Riss. Should he fail to acquire the beauty soap technology from Carmen, he would face expulsion from the governor's council. His properties, ships, and estates would be acquired at a pittance. As Bennick's threats echoed in the air, the smile faded from Carmen's face. "Father, it is precisely in deep waters that one finds great fish. Do you recall how I once earned my keep?" He continued. "My little fishing boat still rests at the headquarters of the Free Trade Chamber. Would you care to take a look?" With a resounding thud, Carmen slammed his hand on the table. "Do you think I fear deep waters? Bennick, I address you as father. Out of respect, do not mistake my courtesy for weakness. You are nothing more than a repugnant peddler. Let me hazard a guess. How much longer can you retain your position in the governor's council? A year? Or perhaps 2? Carmen's words were unvarnished, marking his first confrontation with Bennick directly and irrevocably severing any semblance of civility to this day. His influence is not inferior to that of any governor, and naturally, there is no need for him to continue playing the role of subordinate. You. Bennick's face flushed with anger. He had not anticipated that Cayman would be so well informed about his circumstances. With a crimson face, Bennick bellowed, "You little wretch, without the 30 golden dragons I provided you back then, what would you be today?" Cayman, equally infuriated, retorted without reservation. "Have you not drained enough from me over these 3 years? Constructing a large cargo ship requires at least 50,000 golden dragons, and you have taken 3 from me. Do you still have the audacity to mention it?" In recent years, Bennick's business had deteriorated significantly, suffering losses nearly every year. Out of respect for their father-son relationship, he had already subsidized Bennick with at least 150,000 golden dragons. Yet, Bennick still dared to bring up those 30 golden dragons from years past. Bennick felt as though he might explode from rage. However, his opponent was no longer the young, easily manipulated lad of yesteryear. He could only take a couple of deep breaths to calm himself. "Cayman, do you not wish to know who your mother truly is? Her lineage is far from ordinary. If you provide me with the technique for the beauty soap, I will reveal her identity to you." Bennick's words immediately darkened Cayman's expression. His mismatched blue and purple eyes fixated intently on Bennick. Chapter 2. The Golden Sapling Dragon Egg Fossil. Noticing this, Bennick straightened his posture, believing he had grasped Cayman's vulnerable point. He could not believe that any illegitimate child would be uninterested in their own origins. "Cain, show him out," Cayman suddenly commanded with a calm demeanor. Bennick stared in disbelief, his eyes widening. "Do you not want to know who your mother is? Her noble status presents an opportunity." Bennick refused to relent. What opportunity? Certainly the chance to become. Bennick's expression shifted dramatically, and he promptly fell silent. He had nearly revealed too much. "Heh," Cayman scoffed. "I wish you a pleasant departure." Ultimately, Bennick left Cayman's estate with a grim countenance. In the manor's main residence, Cayman approached a mirror. He gazed at the handsome youth reflected within, his eyes slightly widening. His left blue eye resembled the calm surface of the sea under sunlight, while his right purple eye added an element of allure and madness. He ran his fingers through his golden white hair. In truth, even if Bennick had said nothing, he could surmise who his mother likely was. Such unmistakable features, coupled with the peculiar history of Bennick Salen's rise to prominence, rendered the answer all too clear. "Targaryen," Cayman murmured to himself. His mother most likely hailed from the Targaryen family of Westeros. During the time of Bennick's ascent, there just happened to be a pure-blooded Targaryen in the region, sampling various men. Rhaenyra Targaryen, the niece of the current ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, Aegon II, spent several years in List before departing for Volantis over a decade ago. It is said that during the heir selection assembly held by Aegon II in 101 AC, her 3 illegitimate sons, including the son of a Volantine magistrate, also journeyed to King's Landing to assert their claims, with the outcome being all too predictable. Carmen inhaled deeply and rose to make his way into the estate. Navigating through layers of guards, he arrived before an iron gate. Cautiously extracting a key, he unlocked the gate. A chill wind, mingled with a metallic scent, rushed towards him. Narrowing his eyes, Carmen greedily inhaled the aroma of wealth. After closing the iron gate behind him, he strode directly to the innermost recesses of the warehouse. The flickering flames illuminated a brazier, within which lay a black dragon egg, 3 times the size of an ordinary one. Approaching the brazier, he extended his right hand, for which a multitude of golden lines emerged. These lines intertwined, ultimately forming a seedling of a golden tree, its crown shimmering with a faint green luminescence. As a transmigrator, he had previously worked within a bureaucratic system burdened by immense psychological pressure. Consequently, during a vacation to Kunlun Mountain, his curiosity compelled him to touch the golden seedling he encountered there. In an instant, everything went dark, and when he regained consciousness, he had transformed into an infant. Carmen remained unaware of the seedling's origins, yet over the years, he had discerned its purpose. With a mere thought, the seedling gradually extended 2 branches, effortlessly piercing the dragon egg shell and delving within. The green glow from the crown began to flow through the branches and into the egg. This scene had unfolded repeatedly for a decade, as he visited every 7 days. The dragon egg was not a living one, but rather a fossil from the Shadowlands, likely a remnant of the early Valyrian dragons. Carmen had no knowledge of the exact time of its creation. Perhaps the fire sorcerer whose skull he had shattered in his dreams could shed light on that. As the green light surged in, the dragon egg ignited with a red glow, deepening into a purplish hue, an eerie spectacle. After approximately 3 seconds, Carmen retracted his hand, his complexion pale, as though his vitality had been drained. The green luminescence emitted by the golden seedling was a uniquely potent energy, imbued with remarkable life force, powerful enough to restore the dragon egg's vitality and reignite its potential for hatching. Carmen sensed that the egg was on the brink of hatching. After a decade of anticipation, should the dragon egg successfully hatch, his years of effort would not be in vain. In this world, dragons were nearly invincible, their power surpassing that of countless armies. Carmen was acutely aware of the significance of dragons, fully cognizant of the stark contrast between possessing one and being devoid of such power. Thus, he felt a profound sense of gratitude that his mother hailed from House Targaryen. He also appreciated that Bennick was a true Rhys, a descendant of Valyria. Ignoring the blazing flames in the brazier, Carmen boldly plunged his hand into the fire, retrieving a dragon egg and gently caressing its uneven shell. Perhaps due to the presence of the golden sapling, he found himself entirely immune to the searing heat. Furthermore, while enduring the flames, he could absorb the luminescence emitted by the golden sapling, thereby permanently enhancing his physical constitution. However, over the years, he had channeled the radiance from the sapling into the dragon egg. Initially, he had contemplated secretly taming a wild dragon in Westeros. Yet, as he deepened his understanding of this world, he realized how naive his ambitions truly were. The foremost issue at hand was his identity. He had no means to authenticate it. Would the Targaryen family not perceive him as a mere dragon thief? Would they not pursue him on their dragons? Even if he proved the Targaryen blood coursing through his veins, it would still be a precarious situation. Westeros placed immense emphasis on lineage, and as a Bashed child, his standing was no different from that of a commoner. Moreover, Carmen had previously read The Dance of Dragons. Now, in the year 106 AC, he knew that in merely 23 years, a brutal and bloody civil war, known as the Dance of the Dragons, would engulf Westeros, ignited by disputes over the Targaryen succession. After careful consideration, Carmen opted for the most arduous path. Though it would take time and bore the risk of failure, he resolved to attempt activating a dragon egg fossil on his own. Should he ultimately fail, he could still develop slowly in Rhys and bide his time for the right moment. Hurry, hurry! The Battle of the Stepstones is about to erupt. This is a prime opportunity for a coup, he urged, placing the dragon egg back into the brazier before turning to leave. Just as he was about to close the door to the chamber, a sharp crack echoed from the depths. Chapter 3. The War of the Stone Steps Archipelago. The grand hall of the palace was enveloped in a prolonged silence. At last, Ivica picked up the letter from the table. He turned to the remaining 4 and proclaimed, "The Stone Steps Archipelago has fallen to the Tri-Cities Alliance. However, the majority of the spoils have been seized by Telosai. We stand as the weakest among the alliance. Therefore, I believe it suffices to provide some supplies. Not a single ship should set sail." Ivica's words were met with agreement from the others, regardless of their allegiance to Lys or personal sentiments. None wished to dispatch their vessels. Just then, Anders's eyes sparkled with insight. "I fear that if we do not send a single ship, Telosai will not simply relent. Especially the Lord Phaedos." "What do you mean?" Ivica inquired, gazing at Anders. "What I mean is that if Cayman aspires to run for governor, let him do so." "Why do you all look at me like that?" "I am merely acting in his best interest, without demonstrating any political achievements. Which least person would cast a vote for him?" The others' expressions brightened. Indeed, this was a sound strategy. If Cayman desired to pursue the governorship, he would need to present tangible accomplishments. It was unlikely he would turn down such an opportunity. More importantly, this plan would silence Telosai and Mill without necessitating the deployment of their warships. What was there to lose? In the unfortunate event that Cayman were to perish in the Stone Steps archipelago, they could unite to obliterate Cayman's trading company and seize the coveted beauty soap technology. This was a veritable windfall. Ivica rapped the table to beckon the others to silence. Then it settled. Binnick, he is your son. You shall negotiate on his behalf. Are you capable of this? Binnick's countenance shifted dramatically. Another visit? I fear that is not feasible. He immediately declined. I shall not deceive Cayman knowing the truth. Whoever wishes to go may do so. Binnick's face was a mask of anger and shame. Unfortunately, his remarkable acting skills could not deceive the seasoned old foxes present. Particularly Anders. Could you not feign such indignation? Your rotund visage truly makes it repugnant. Do you not realize that? Anders's mockery caused Binnick's eye to twitch. His simmering anger barely contained. In his prosperous days, Anders would never have dared to speak to him in such a manner. Now, with the tides of fortune turned, he was subjected to this humiliation. What a wretched creature. Yet, ultimately, in the free trade city-states, one's worth was dictated by personal wealth. Presently, Binnick lacked the confidence to retort. Ivica's triangular eyes bore into Binnick. If you refuse, I shall go in your stead. Binnick, I know not what transpired, but the Stone Steps archipelago is of utmost importance. Do you grasp my meaning? He had fortuitously encountered Binnick earlier and was aware that this man had visited Cayman's estate. Undoubtedly, some discord had arisen during that encounter. Otherwise, that scoundrel Common would not have relocated the Storm Brigade to the manor's interior. Well, let us conclude this meeting for now. I shall determine the extent of support after conversing with Common. Ivica waved his hand, prompting the assembly to disperse. Before leaving, Anders cast a glance at Ivica, his eyes brimming with envy and malice. This old man Ivica perpetually seeks to assert his seniority over the other governors, just because he has lived longer. Does he truly believe his influence is profound? Presently, the wealthiest individual in the realm is none other than Anders. He ought to be the cornerstone of the governor's council. Meanwhile, upon returning to the manor, Binnick erupted in fury. Beasts, dogs, a pack of wretches. Binnick kicked over the mahogany table before him, his eyes bloodshot. Having faced consecutive humiliations within a single day, he had never felt such disgrace. He wreaked havoc within the room, collapsing onto the floor, his body trembling slightly. His features contorted. You have forced my hand. Common. And you wretched little cur, why can't you simply hand over the beauty soap technology? He cackled maniacally. This is all you're doing. Do not blame me for my ruthlessness. Binnick's countenance took on an oddly flushed hue as he rose to feverishly pen a letter. Soon, a personal missive was completed. He carefully sealed the letter and summoned the headmaid. Go find Frank and ensure he personally delivers this letter to that harlot, Senela Targaryen. Binnick entrusted the letter to the maid. Valyne received it with both hands, her demeanor one of utmost respect. Just as she was about to turn and leave, Binnick suddenly called out to her. Valyne's heart raced, yet her face remained a mask of reverence. Please, command me, my lord. First, put the letter away. Binnick instructed as he sat on the floor, legs spread apart. Observing this, Valyne secretly sighed in relief. She then obediently knelt and began her task. Minutes passed, and after wiping her mouth, Valyne rose to depart. Soon, she murmured to herself as she left. Her hand gently caressed her abdomen, her face radiant with the unique glow of motherhood. My child, I shall never allow you to be sold to a slaver like a beast. Trust me. You will grow up healthy and happy. As Valyne whispered, she remained blissfully unaware of the figure that had silently approached her from behind. Chapter 4. You are pregnant? Are you pregnant? A deep voice suddenly resonated. Who? Valyne gasped in shock. Turning to look, she found a tall, robust man standing behind her. Frank, what are you doing here? Cold sweat beaded on Valyne's forehead. She desperately urged herself to remain calm, but when confronted by Frank's placid blue eyes, which seemed to pierce through her very soul, she could not suppress her fear. I was merely taking a stroll. It is my duty to protect the manor. But you, why are you so anxious? Moreover, are you with child? Surely not for your master, I presume? If he were to discover this matter, he would subject you to unspeakable torment. The child within you would undoubtedly meet a grim fate, perhaps fed to fish or dogs. However, it is far more likely that the innocent would be butchered and served to hounds. Do you recall Maya? Frank's voice was as calm as still water. Maya was the former head maid who, after an indiscretion with a servant, found herself with child. Upon learning this, Binwick expressed no discontent until the child was born. He dispatched men to seize the infant, forcing Maya to witness her daughter being devoured by hunting dogs. I know not what you speak of. Farron resolved to maintain her defiance. At this juncture, she had no recourse but to pray that Frank would not delve deeper into the matter. Yet, the subsequent words from Frank plunged Farron into despair. Let me hazard a guess. The child belongs to that rascal again Shilto, does it not? No need to rush to deny it. The entire estate lies beneath my watchful gaze. You have been rather close to him of late. It is merely a few words exchanged. You are being overly suspicious, my Lord Frank. Farron's voice trembled, unbeknownst to her. Is that so? Frank had confirmed his suspicions. He continued, since this is the case, I shall have that scoundrel minced into pulp, to be used as bait while fishing. To Frank's surprise, upon hearing this, Farron's countenance shifted to one of fury and resolve. Spare me your idle threats, Frank. What do you truly desire? Frank appraised the tall, strikingly beautiful Farron. Oh, do not act thus, Farron. Anger is detrimental to the unborn. Shall we find a more suitable place to converse? Farron inhaled deeply and ultimately consented to Frank's request. She was unwilling to relinquish any opportunity. Frank turned and departed, with Farron following closely behind him to a secluded woodshed. Frank casually seated himself upon an ancient wooden stool, which creaked under the burden. This place is quite secure. Now, speak. Whom have you been clandestinely communicating with among the governors? Frank believed Farron must have established contact with a certain governor to utter such words. Not a governor, but a nobleman. Farron was reluctant to reveal her benefactor. Nonetheless, Frank persisted in his inquiries, determined to unearth the truth, even threatening her with the life of a Gath. I advise you to refrain from further questioning. It may cost you your life. The estate is not solely under my watch. There are many eyes lurking in the shadows. Farron regarded Frank intently. Very well. Do you not fear Benwick discovering your knowledge of my condition? Frank, intrigued, pondered who could grant Farron such audacity. Benwick cannot last much longer. Might you consider an alliance with me? Farron did not directly address Frank's inquiry. Instead, he took the initiative to invite Frank to join the forces behind him. Frank shrugged, expressing his uncertainty. I do not even know who your benefactor is. If you merely intend to flee with Gonfu, would I not become a mere stepping stone for you both? Once you learn the identity of your master, there would be no turning back. That would be my honor. Frank replied with a smile gracing his lips. Unlike Farron, he was not born of servitude and thus did not need to seek alternative patronage in advance. As evening descended, the city was ablaze with light, revealing but a glimpse of the opulence exclusive to the elite. Common did not venture to the harbor for his usual maritime escapades. Instead, he hosted a grand banquet within his estate. Upon arriving at the manor, Ivica was greeted by a peculiar scene. The exterior of the estate was heavily guarded, yet the interior radiated festivity and odd juxtaposition. My lord, there is a banquet this evening. Lord Common awaits you in the hall. Allow me to escort you. The maid, clad in a fitted gown, swayed her hips as she led the way. Ivica followed closely, discreetly surveying his surroundings. A wave of unease washed over him. The last time he visited Common Manor, it was a haven of nature-esque beauty. Now, it bore the semblance of a military fortress. In the manor's hall, the maid announced, My lord, Governor Ivica has arrived, bowing gracefully before withdrawing. Governor Ivica, it has been too long. You appear as robust as ever. Came a hearty laughter from Common, causing Ivica's eye to twitch slightly. Common's words echoed the flattery of their previous encounters. Yet the tone lacked the subservient flattery of old. It has indeed been a while. You two seem considerably more robust. Are you not going to invite me to sit? Ivica quickly recalibrated his demeanor, engaging in conversation with Common on equal footing. He was no longer in a hurry to discuss the matters of the Stone Step Islands War. Rather, he was eager to comprehend the reasons behind Common's drastic transformation. Chapter 5. It is time to advance. Ivica had never harbored concerns regarding Common's potential rebellion. Yet now apprehension seeped in. At Common's invitation, Ivica took a seat to his right. Governor, your timing is impeccable. The banquet has only just commenced. As Common spoke, an array of exquisite dishes was presented one after another. Do indulge in this roasted venison, tender fawn from the disputed lands. With a wave of his hand, a maid promptly served a slice of venison before Ivica. With a slight smile, Ivica cut a small piece and tasted it under Common's watchful gaze. The flavor burst forth in his mouth, and Ivica's eyes lit up. It is delightful. What spices have been used? The fawn meat was indeed delectable. Yet Ivica was certain that some unfamiliar spice had been employed in its preparation. Noticing Ivica's intense scrutiny, Common regarded him with a knowing gaze. Carmen smiled and said, Fresh salt powder, a specially crafted seasoning, is priced even higher than gold. When asked about its production, he replied, It is exceedingly scarce and therefore expensive. The fresh salt powder Carmen referred to is essentially refined salt mixed with sun-dried, crushed sea cucumbers, akin to a blend of salt and monosodium glutamate. In the past, when his strength was feeble, he hesitated to bring forth lucrative ventures. However, after 3 years of stable development, he has begun to expand. As for the reason behind selling sea cucumber powder mixed with salt, it is quite simple. The flavor of sea cucumber powder is similar to that of monosodium glutamate. Yet its production process is remarkably straightforward. Freshly harvested sea cucumbers are cleaned, dried, and crushed, making it easily replicable. Therefore, it would be more prudent to mix it with refined salt to elevate the price of the salt. Ivica swallowed hard, his eyes glimmering with avarice. He understood better than anyone the profitability of the spice trade. Behind the collapse of Bennick's spice business lay his shadow, driven by the desire to capture a larger market and amass greater wealth. Taking a deep breath, he attempted to maintain his composure. Yet, the thought of Carmen gaining yet another lucrative avenue made it impossible for him to remain calm. Should fresh salt powder enter the market, it would undoubtedly penetrate every corner of the known world in a remarkably short time, representing immeasurable wealth. Carmen, I heard from your father that you aspire to run for the governor of Riss. Ivica abruptly shifted the conversation toward the gubernatorial election. Indeed, that is true, Carmen readily acknowledged. In fact, this matter was hardly news, as Carmen had publicly expressed his ambition to contest for the position on numerous occasions. Having held the position of governor of Riss for nearly 30 years, I am acutely aware of the challenges that accompany such an election. Apart from wealth, one must also have made considerable contributions to Riss. That fellow Anders proposed at the governor's conference that the next governor of Riss must participate in the War of the Stair Islands. Otherwise, the others would intervene in the election. You must have heard about the imminent war over the Stair Islands, where the Targaryens, in alliance with the Valyrians, seek to reclaim control. Ivica wasted no time in throwing Anders under the bus, without a hint of hesitation, plainly stating that it was Anders' idea. Carmen took a sip of golden wine and looked up at Ivica, a large question mark seemingly hovering above his head. So what does that mean? Seeing Carmen feign ignorance infuriated Ivica. This lad had previously been somewhat assertive only when it came to matters involving beautiful soap, but otherwise had always been compliant. What on earth had transpired to make him so insufferable now? Thus, if you wish to successfully run for governor of Riss, you must face the dragon. Carmen aptly displayed a look of concern. Hastily, he inquired if Ivica had any alternative methods. Noticing the worried expression on Cayman's face, Ivica secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Stroking his grizzled beard, he replied nonchalantly, "If you wish to abstain from the conflict, there is indeed a way. I can stand by your side and vouch for you. This would render your campaign virtually untroubled. Furthermore, I have been a long-time friend of Chio Lyre and Destin, and I can assure your success in this endeavor." Cayman, upon hearing this, displayed a look of delight. "Is that truly the case?" "Absolutely," Ivica affirmed. "I could even arrange for you to replace Bennick if necessary. However, as a businessman, you must understand I cannot assist you without some form of compensation. And what would I need to offer? Sea salt powder. We shall become partners. As long as we unite, no matter the envy of others, they shall not be able to touch us. Together we shall reap the wealth of the entire world." Ivica raised his glass, signaling Cayman to toast in celebration of their impending fortune. Cayman regarded Ivica with a bemused expression, his glass unmoving in his hand. Ivica's demeanor froze. Cayman took a sip, tilting his head. "Then perhaps I need not run for governor at all? In truth, whether or not I hold the title is inconsequential. Wouldn't you agree, Governor Ivica? In a free trade city-state like Liss, the political structure is exceedingly loose. Essentially, the strongest voice prevails. Cayman, you are still young and inexperienced. Some matters are not as straightforward as they appear. At times, being unable to act as one wishes is the norm, even if you merely desire to conduct business peacefully." Ivica quietly set down his glass, his gaze shifting from warmth to coldness. His slanted eyes appeared piercing as they fixated on Cayman's distinctive pupils. "Cayman, considering your youth, I feel compelled to share my wisdom as a mentor. The allure of the beauty soap you possess has already incited envy among many. Do you comprehend the implications of hoarding the sea salt powder for yourself? The current situation on the Stone Steps archipelago is dire, and the internal strife within the Tri-City Alliance is palpable. You are unaware of the ferocity of power struggles. The waters in Liss run deep, and the storms are fierce. If you do not align yourself or band together, you shall be dismantled and divided." Ivica spoke as if he were an elder imparting lessons to a younger generation. Though his tone was advisory, it bore an unmistakable essence of threat and warning. The banquet fell into an abrupt silence, the only sound being the crackling of the torches. All present were Cayman's subordinates, who regarded Ivica with quiet observation. Undeterred by their varied gazes, Ivica fixed his stare on Cayman, awaiting his decision. He believed Cayman to be astute enough to grasp his meaning and make the right choice. As the atmosphere thickened with tension, the wail of a child broke through the stillness, followed by Johanna's impatient voice. "Come on, quickly confine Igolas. It has once again roused Grace and Diana." With a hiss, Johanna entered, cradling Grace in her arms, followed closely by Rika, who held Diana. Suddenly, a leaping black dragon soared into the room, emitting incessant hissing sounds. Is that a dragon? Ivica gasped, turning to look at Cayman. Nonchalantly, Cayman sipped his golden wine. Have you forgotten, my lord, that I have only been a merchant for a few days? Am I to fear the depths and the tempests? Chapter 6. The Dragon Knight Governor? Ivica gazed at Igalus, wanting to say something, yet words failed him. When had he last encountered a dragon? He felt utterly bewildered, but Cayman was unfazed. With a simple gesture, Igalus obediently flew into his embrace. Governor, it is my honor to introduce my new family member. Igalus, Cayman smiled. A black dragon, hatched from one of the ancient Valyrian dragon eggs. I consider this to be nothing short of a miracle. Do you not agree? Where did you acquire the dragon egg? That wretched Senela Targaryen has stolen a dragon egg from the Targaryen lineage? Ivica regained his composure, his voice sharp, his gaze fixed intently on Igalus, clearly incredulous that this lively dragon had emerged from a fossilized egg from millennia past. Indeed, it was Senela Targaryen. Little did he expect to receive a definitive answer here. Be cautious with your words, Ivica. Otherwise, you may become the first governor in the history of Riss to have his tongue removed. Cayman's eyes darkened, for he despised the term theft. The dragon egg that hatched Igalus had been activated only after he shattered the skull of a fire sorcerer, a process that took him a decade. Ivica's expression fluctuated between uncertainty and realization. At that moment, he understood why Cayman had displayed such an unusual assertiveness. After Cayman spoke, some attendees at the banquet began to rise and approach. Before witnessing the dragon, Ivica had been confident that Cayman would not dare to harm him. But now, with a dragon at his side, Cayman might indeed be bold enough to sever his tongue. For the common folk of Riss, the protection of a dragon lord would surely incite their support for the removal of other governors. After all, Riss had once been a native colony of Valyria. Yet, this was not favorable news for those in power in Riss. I apologize. I merely became overly excited at the thought of Riss being under the protection of a mighty dragon in the future, Ivica conceded. Today, he had only brought 2 servants, without even a single guard. I understand, it's quite all right. I forgive your rashness. Cayman instantly restored his cheerful demeanor. Let us continue our revelry. It would be a pity to indulge in such exquisite cuisine without accompanying libations. Ivica exhaled deeply. His purpose for visiting Common Manor was to persuade Common to engage in the conflict. Although he encountered a series of unforeseen events, the fact that he had not provoked Common was a relief. The paramount objective now was to ensure his safe return. As Ivica regained his composure, a sudden realization dawned upon him. Upon his arrival, Common not only welcomed him but also took the initiative to present the fresh salt powder and the dragon. There was undoubtedly a hidden motive at play. It soon became evident that Ivica's intuition was correct. Common had intended to extend an invitation to both Ivica and Sholayer in a couple of days, unaware that Ivica would visit him today, bearing news of moderate significance. Common rose to personally pour a glass of wine for Ivica. As Ivica accepted the chalice, Common, with a beaming smile, remarked, Governor, I believe you have expressed the truth. In the tide of the times, those who do not unite shall face ruin. Ivica sipped the golden wine, nodding in agreement without uttering a word. I am preparing to select a few trading partners to jointly increase the production of beauty soap. What are your thoughts? A spark of understanding ignited in Ivica's eyes as he grasped Common's intentions. With the newfound ease of profit through the fresh salt powder, the importance of beauty soap diminished. Thus, leveraging beauty soap to attract allies became the most prudent strategy. A smile graced Ivica's visage. A splendid idea. Do you have suitable candidates in mind? Indeed, I do. In Riss, you are one, along with Sholayer and Destin. You are my closest friends. Laughter ensued, revealing that it was not just Ivica who perceived their bond as strong. Ivica felt quite pleased with Common's selections, as Sholayer and Destin were both old acquaintances. I, too, believe our relationship is commendable, Common toasted with Ivica. The ensuing banquet was filled with merriment, with Common and Ivica toasting and drinking with abandon. As the night deepened and the festivities concluded, Common accompanied Ivica to see him off, agreeing to host another banquet the following day and inviting Sholayer and Destin to discuss collaboration. Ivica readily acquiesced, wobbling slightly as he boarded the carriage under the watchful eye of the servants. Once inside the carriage, Ivica underwent a transformation. His previously dazed expression sharpened instantly. His finger tapped rhythmically on the armrest as he contemplated the day's events. The emergence of the dragon had utterly disrupted his subsequent plans. Riss, once a colony of Valyria, held a sense of reverence for dragons rather than fear. The only individuals genuinely apprehensive were the rulers, including himself. The dragon's appearance could very well facilitate Common's effortless acquisition of support from the common folk of Riss. Based on his understanding of Common, It is highly probable that this wretched creature will transform Riss into his own autocratic realm. He may even forge Riss into a hereditary kingdom akin to that of Westeros, where lineage serves as the nexus of power. This was originally his grand design. Having served as the governor of Riss for 29 years, he has long dreamt of establishing a traditional hereditary monarchy. His son, grandson, and descendants would forever reign over Riss, rather than allowing those impoverished commoners to vote and share the supreme authority among a select few. Chapter 7. The Tenacious in the Dead of Night at Common's Estate. Reka lay breathlessly on the bed, utterly exhausted and weakened. After some time, she regained a modicum of strength. She turned onto her side, propped up on the headboard, and gazed at Common, who was diligently writing by the flickering light. "Did you use to stay up this late every night before I arrived?" Reka found it somewhat absurd. She had not anticipated that Common could indulge in drink until such a late hour and still have the energy to exhaust her to such a degree, only to continue working afterward. "My stamina far exceeds that of ordinary men. I lacked for women even before you, and work is one of the ways to channel my energy. Did you seek out prostitutes? Haven't those women borne you any children?" Reka inquired, her curiosity piqued. To her, it seemed that Common had a fondness for the propagation of his lineage. He might occasionally seek the company of prostitutes, yet no matter how high their status, they remained mere prostitutes, unworthy of any benefits. "What is my worth then? Is it merely my complexion that appeals to your peculiar taste?" Common set down his pen and turned his gaze towards Reka, remaining silent for an extended moment. It was only when Reka felt a shiver under his scrutiny that he finally spoke. "Have you rested sufficiently? Come take a look." With that, Common placed the completed plan on the table. Reka's eyes sparkled, and she sprang to her feet. "Don't soil the bed and floor." "I know. I will be careful. Rest assured." Reka gleefully perched herself on the table and picked up the parchment. Throughout her years of wandering, she had learned the Valyrian tongue and could easily comprehend the contents of the parchment. After a thorough examination, Reka bit her finger in silence, having forgotten to even cross her legs. "You wish to claim the entire Summer Isles?" Hesitation was etched across her face. The parchment Common had handed her contained a complete and detailed plan, titled The Return of the Birds. In this plan, Common would assist her in assembling a formidable naval fleet of no less than 5,000 well-equipped men. Simultaneously, he would provide an unceasing stream of logistical support until she reclaimed her family's fiefdom and gained actual control over Valyrian Island. Moreover, she would become the new sovereign of Valyrian Island alongside either Common's eldest son or daughter, while the second son or daughter would adopt the surname Russell, becoming the heir to the Russell family. At this juncture, her transaction with Common would have been complete, and she would have found it acceptable. Yet within the Return of the Birds, this was merely the initial phase of the plan. The entire Return of the Birds plan encompasses 3 significant phases. The second phase involves waiting for her and Cayman's child to reach maturity. Cayman will finance their offspring in initiating the unification war of the Summer Isles. This war of unification serves merely as a trial. Following this, the third phase of the Return of the Birds plan, which represents the ultimate strategic objective, will commence. Should this child successfully unify the Summer Isles with only Cayman's material support and solidify their rule, Cayman will bestow upon them a dragon egg and amplify his support, enabling this child to establish their own lineage as the new Dragon King, ruling over the Summer Isles and the surrounding seas. This is a long-term plan spanning 2 decades. Reka's hesitation stems from the Russell family. Her initial intention was to leverage Cayman's support to reclaim her family's fiefdom while simultaneously seizing control of Valyrian Island, nothing more. In stark contrast, the third phase of Cayman's Return of the Birds plan effectively allocates the entire Summer Isles to his bloodline as their domain. If the Return of the Birds plan succeeds in the future, will she not be inviting a wolf into her home? The Russell family has thrived on the Summer Isles for a millennium, possessing a noble and ancient lineage. With the blood of the Russell family coursing through her veins, she would undoubtedly find it significantly easier to wage the unification war alongside Cayman's eldest son. Subsequently, the Russell family would remain the same as ever, yet with a monarch of ancestral heritage presiding over them. In simpler terms, Reka feels as though she is at a loss. She desires for her children to bear the Russell name, ensuring that the Russell family becomes the hereditary rulers of the Summer Isles, the new Dragon Lord family. With these thoughts in mind, Reka slithered into Cayman's embrace like a serpent, beginning to act coyly and subtly expressing her desires. Cayman's eyes narrowed, a smile gracing his lips. Yet his right hand found its way to Reka's neck, gradually increasing the pressure. "Have you forgotten that you still owe me a life?" he queried. "What kind of woman could I not find? Do you truly believe that my support in helping you reclaim your family's fiefdom is solely for your physical form?" His expression remained calm, yet the pressure of his grip intensified until Reka began to roll her eyes, prompting Cayman to release her. My objective has always been the Summer Isles. Assisting you in reclaiming your family's fiefdom was merely a convenience. You should feel grateful for this, not greedy. Wanting everything, do you understand? Reka gasped for breath, her face flushed. I understand, she replied, her gaze fixed on Cayman's eyes, imbued with an indefinable meaning. That's good to hear. I will rest now. You should tidy up your thigh before coming to bed. Yes, I know, Reka murmured softly. Cayman rose, stretched languidly, and then retired to bed. Reka bit her lip gently, watching Cayman's retreating figure. She had never encountered such a formidable man. The bed techniques learned from my mother proved utterly ineffective. Chapter 8. The Contested Land. The first rays of morning sunlight cascaded down. A sharp, grating sound pierced the air. Carmen instantly widened his eyes. Gazing at the nearby Icarus, a twitch flickered at the corner of his eye. With a firm grip, he pinched the little Rika in his arms, venting his displeasure at being roused by the dragon's noise. Rika let out a muffled grunt, casting an irritated glare at Carmen. If you break it, be prepared to find a nurse for the child. Carmen replied with a smile, it won't break. I know it well. When Icarus was born, it measured a remarkable 30 centimeters, including its tail. Now, it seemed to have grown a bit more. Such a terrifying rate of growth. Since its birth, Icarus had subsisted solely on venison. However, procuring deer meat had become increasingly difficult, and the estate stock was nearly depleted. Therefore, Carmen resolved to switch Icarus' diet to more affordable mutton starting today. After getting dressed with Rika's assistance, Carmen took Icarus to the kitchen storeroom. The two cooks had just slaughtered a fat sheep, blood pooling on the ground. Icarus' eyes sparkled, drawn by the scent of blood. Yet, just as it prepared to swoop in for a feast, Carmen suddenly commanded, Stop, Icarus. The words flowed effortlessly in pure ancient Valyria. Perhaps Icarus did not fully comprehend the meaning of the command at that moment, but by observing Carmen's expression and tone, it could roughly discern what was expected of it. A look of confusion adorned Icarus' small head, unable to fathom why Carmen wanted it to halt. Quiet, Icarus, Carmen reiterated. The dragon, initially inclined to hiss, closed its mouth and quietly regarded Carmen. Perhaps due to the bond formed with the golden sapling, Icarus was exceedingly reliant on Carmen. It never defied his commands. Carmen had noticed this, but was not inclined to ease up on Icarus' training. On the battlefield, Icarus would be his crucial ally. Obedience was paramount. Only together could they maximize their potential. Young dragons quickly succumbed to hunger. Icarus fixated eagerly on the bloodied sheep. Its red-finned tail flicked back and forth, displaying evident agitation. Icarus, dragon flame. Carmen ordered once the cook had severed the sheep's head. Upon receiving the command, Icarus lunged forward, unleashing a torrent of dragon fire that charred the sheep's leg, beginning to feast voraciously. The cook swallowed hard. It was his first encounter with a dragon. Icarus' fierce demeanor instilled fear within him. If a breath of fire were to engulf him, would he not be left in tatters? Sir, your breakfast is ready. Would you like to dine first? As Carmen's dedicated chef, Marwan cautiously inquired, casting furtive glances at the voraciously devouring Icarus, the implication unmistakable. Carmen let out a hearty laugh, patting Marwan on the shoulder. Rest assured, Icarus is not so foolish. It will not harm you without cause. At this, Marwan nearly burst into tears. Yet he feigned composure with a nod. In truth, he had intended to suggest that Icarus be fed elsewhere. After all, once it became accustomed to the vicinity, wouldn't it frequently make its way to the pantry? After much contemplation, Marwan ultimately voiced his concerns. It would indeed pose a dilemma if the pantry were inadvertently ignited by dragonfire. Carmen nodded in acknowledgement, accepting Marwan's suggestion. Marwan, you are among the earliest of my trusted allies. Your son serves as my cupbearer, and your wife oversees all the maidservants in the estate. I have faith in you. Carmen, gazing at the ravenous Icarus, spoke earnestly to Marwan. Marwan, not a fool, understood the underlying message in Carmen's words. Rest assured, my lord. Every ingredient in the pantry is personally selected by me. The serving maids have all been meticulously chosen by my wife. I trust your family to handle matters well. Carmen replied with a smile. What have you prepared for breakfast today? I have prepared a portion of lamb chops, a fried egg, a slice of honey-glazed bacon bread, and a warm glass of milk, hoping it pleases you. Thank you. You always know how to satisfy my palate, just as you did 10 years ago. Marwan scratched his head, remaining silent. Observing this, Carmen chose not to press further, as Marwan had always been this way. A decade prior, Marwan had served Carmen a fried egg. At that time, Carmen's life was far from prosperous. He was merely one of many illegitimate offspring of Binnock. Marwan, one of Binnock's cooks, often crafted delightful meals for Carmen using scraps. Once Carmen achieved success, he promptly brought Marwan and his family to his side. Icarus swiftly devoured the entire lamb, licking its lips in satisfaction. It truly can eat. Such a large lamb, consumed in no time, Marwan marveled. For an ordinary person, finishing a whole leg of lamb in one sitting would be remarkable. Its appetite will only grow, and soon we shall relocate to the contested lands. The contested lands refer to a region in the southwest of Essos. The three free trade city-states of Lys, Myr, and Tyrosh had long vied for control over this territory, occasionally joined by Volantis in the fray. Eventually, Lys, Myr, and Tyrosh united to form the Tri-City Alliance, also known as the Kingdom of the Three Daughters. Since then, Volantis had been completely ousted from the contested lands, which were peacefully divided among the three. Common purchased extensive tracts of land there, with a significant portion of the trading company's revenue reinvested into this land acquisition endeavor, a move that left many within the company perplexed. For the Merchant Guild, which has prospered through the trade of resale, land is truly of little consequence. Even if they were to purchase land to expand the production of soap, such vast acreage would be unnecessary. Nevertheless, Carmen holds significant prestige within the guild. Hence, few dare to voice dissent against his decisions. Well, there were indeed some who opposed him. At that time, in an effort to showcase his willingness to consider others' opinions, Carmen initiated an internal vote. He emerged victorious by an overwhelming majority and subsequently assigned all those who cast dissenting votes to lower-tier positions, asserting that this was intended to hone their abilities for future advancement. Since then, while Carmen continued to solicit feedback from the upper echelons, opposing voices have remained conspicuously absent. Chapter 9. We must eliminate him. Once Carmen finished his breakfast, Johanna arrived, cradling their child. I intended to take the child back to the estate in the disputed territory, for this place is fraught with dragons and thus perilous. Johanna harbored concerns for the child's safety, especially now that news of Carmen becoming a dragon knight had spread. The estate would undoubtedly become a focal point in Rys, which posed significant danger. The common folk of Rys regard dragon knights with awe. Yet the wealthy and powerful nobility feel no such reverence. Those who wield power fear the dragon, yet do not honor it. Be cautious. The affluent merchants within the city will not allow your dragon to thrive unimpeded. They are the true masters of power in Rys. Noticing Carmen's nonchalance, Johanna felt compelled to reiterate her warnings. She did not wish for her child to grow up without a father. Rest assured, I will arrange for your safe passage, so you need not worry. Carmen was well aware that he could not conceal the dragon, thus he had long prepared for the forthcoming plans. Just be mindful. If you perish, our child and I will be in great peril. Johanna tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Since becoming a mother, her focus had gradually shifted from the struggle for power to her child. Once you arrive, entrust the child to the nurse. I will provide you with a decree that commands all estates to heed your instructions. Remember what I taught you. Stockpile provisions, train the troops, fortify the walls, all of it is in my memory. Will you not return? Johanna furrowed her brow. Carmen gently kissed her forehead. I shall return in 3 months. Before that, I have matters to attend to. Very well, Johanna replied softly, choosing not to pursue the topic further. Carmen. Johanna suddenly lifted her gaze. I can remain your mistress for a lifetime, but might we allow our child to bear your surname? This matter had weighed on her mind for quite some time, and she felt compelled to advocate for her child's claim. Have you always believed that Grace and Diana are bastards? Carmen replied with a bemused smile. It is often said, yet you have never directly addressed the issue of the children's parentage, have you? Johanna pressed her lips tightly together. You are overthinking it. Cayman reached out and playfully pinched little Grace's collagen-rich, fair cheeks. Upon hearing Cayman's words, Johanna's expression suddenly dimmed, her gaze fixated on the Grace in her arms. Grace and Diana had been part of the Solon family since birth, and little Grace was destined to be the future king of Rieslong. Greetings, future king of Rieslong, Mr. Grace Solon. Grace was amused by Cayman's exaggerated expression, laughing heartily. At that tender age, he was blissfully unaware of the significance of such a promise. Yet Johanna understood all too well, and this realization rendered her somewhat incredulous. As she lifted her gaze, it fortuitously met Cayman's mismatched eyes, which sparkled with mirth, while tears threatened to cloud her own. No one knew of the despair she felt upon learning her uncle's refusal to pay the ransom, nor the terror she experienced when treated as a mere commodity at auction. Now, however, she had finally found in Cayman a sense of security that could grant her peaceful slumber, even if that comfort stemmed solely from a verbal commitment. Enough of the tears. This was all part of the plan. Cayman gently wiped away Johanna's tears. Within the estate of Ivica, Shirel, Destin, and Ivica were seated around a table. I do not know how Synira Targaryen managed to steal the dragon egg, nor do I comprehend why she would bestow it upon that little scoundrel Cayman. Yet the reality remains, he has become a dragon rider. The small dragon bore black scales, with its dorsal fin and wing membranes a deep crimson. It appeared just as dubious as Cayman. Shirel rubbed his forehead, Feeling a headache coming on, he heard the rumors circulating throughout Rise City, even without your input. Moreover, I do not believe that Synira is capable of such a feat. She has had many bedfellows. As far as I know, she currently has 3 illegitimate children, one of whom is the offspring of Governor Volantis. Do you think, given her temperament, she would gift a dragon egg to her child with Binnock? We both understand that Cayman is merely an unintended consequence of a transaction created to satisfy that peculiar whim of Binnock. By the gods of lust, who could have anticipated that this boy would grow to such an extent in just 3 short years? A silence enveloped the 3, each harboring a sense of imbalance. They had toiled for at least a decade to amass their current wealth. Yet, lamenting now served no purpose. They had to devise a means to eliminate him and that dragon, or else. Ivica's words trailed off, but Sharel and Destin comprehended his unspoken thoughts. As long as the dragon remained, the next step would inevitably involve establishing a new dynasty of dragon kings to rule Rise. The existing Governor's Council of Rise, if fortunate, might transform into a royal council. If unfortunate, it would likely face dissolution. What do you propose we do? Sharel queried, his gaze flickering. For the Cayman estate was now impenetrable, even to a mere mouse. Chapter 10. What more do you desire? The dragon's growth requires time, and we still have opportunities. It is implausible for him to remain cautious indefinitely. Let us collaborate with him in a conventional manner. After all, does he not intend to share the beauty soap? Cheolir chuckled. Ivica sighed, acknowledging that this was the only viable approach at the moment. Currently, Common was at his most vigilant. Any impulsive assassination attempt would likely fail and only serve to heighten Common's wariness. Are there alternative methods aside from assassination? The usually taciturn Destin inquired suddenly. Poison? Ivica suggested. However, poisoning is akin to assassination. It still necessitates infiltrating Common's estate, and that old fool Malvon is not easily bribed. We could attempt to contact Binnock and see if he can reach out to Malvon. Who knows what that fellow Binnock is thinking? Let us not forget that Common is his son, Cheolir replied with a grin. What would those present do if they had a dragon rider's progeny? Naturally, they would wholeheartedly support the restoration of the Valyrian dragon lord's glory. For this assembly of powerful individuals, fearing the dragon lord was commonplace. Yet, their greater desire was to become the dragon lord themselves. Riss had been a native colony of Valyria millennia ago. They possessed the blood of the dragon lord, with golden hair and blue eyes serving as the finest testament, even if that bloodline had thinned significantly over time. This notion ignited a wild and audacious idea within Ivica. His ancestors had never intermarried outside their lineage, suggesting that his dragon blood remained relatively pure compared to other Riss. If he could eliminate Common, might he not have the opportunity to tame that black dragon? As this thought swelled within him, Ivica could no longer contain his burgeoning ambition, yearning to slay Common and seize his black dragon. However, lost in his splendid fantasies, he remained oblivious to Cheolir's meaningful gaze across the table. At that moment, Cheolir, with a mere flick of his intuition, discerned Ivica's delusions. He gently massaged his right thumb, refraining from interrupting Ivica's reverie, instead calculating how best to maneuver for his own advantage. Unlike Ivica, who was consumed by the lust for power, Cheolir preferred the pursuit of wealth. As long as he could profit, what did it matter if multiple dragon lords loomed above him? Presently, the Riss Governor's Council was dictated by Ivica and Anders. He, along with Destin and Binnock, were relegated to the periphery. The benefits did not extend to them, yet they were always expected to contribute. Thus, whether it was Ivica or Common above him made little difference. Soon, he reached a resolution. He resolved to approach Common during the evening banquet to gauge the latter's disposition before making any further decisions. Ivica, pulling himself from his daydream, composed his expression anew. We must devise a means to eliminate Common. He poses too great a danger. At that moment, he could also capture that little dragon and sell it to the Targaryen family, making a considerable profit. Ivica naturally did not dare to openly express his intentions. He could only cautiously probe the thoughts of others, keeping the dragon in hand before attempting to tame it. It was indeed a splendid idea. But how should the profits from the dragon's sale be divided? Cheolir inquired. This idea is mine. I shall take 40%, and the remaining will be equally divided between you two. No problem. Cheolir readily agreed, yet inwardly he scoffed. There was a time when the Governor's Council was entirely dominated by Ivica. Since then, Ivica had grown increasingly arrogant. Convinced that Cheolir lacked his own thoughts and would follow his lead unquestioningly. There was a time when this was indeed the case. Back then, to ensure a stable business, Cheolir rarely opposed Ivica's demands. However, the circumstances had changed. With the rise of Anders and now the emergence of the Dragon Knight Cayman, Cheolir would no longer blindly align himself with Ivica. He needed to identify a more stable and reliable ally. As for Destin, that fool lost his resolve whenever faced with significant matters, simply following Ivica's every move. In the past, while Ivica held sway, it was perfectly fine to associate with him, and Ivica was more than willing to share the spoils. But once Ivica faltered, continuing to follow blindly would only lead to disaster. Then it is settled for now. We must further discuss the matter of the Stone Steps Isles. Cayman, cunning as he was, preferred to forego the gubernatorial election rather than engage in battle. The question of whether we should send warships remained unresolved. Ivica furrowed his brow, as did Chiolier. Not sending warships was certainly an option, but it would ultimately leave a precedent that could hinder future profit distribution. If Cayman is unwilling to engage in battle, I believe we should still make a gesture, contributing more supplies while reducing the number of ships. Then it is decided. We have a dozen idle crossbows in the city to send over as well. The crossbows mounted on the ships would be the only weapon capable of posing a threat to the dragons. But only when the dragons flew at low altitudes could they be harmed. A dozen crossbows may not seem like many, yet they represented a significant gesture from them. In the future, when Tyros mentioned this matter, they could retort, "We provided dragon-slaying crossbows. What more do you want?" Chapter 11. Do you have the capability? Clap. Clap. Cayman applauded, and a servant promptly brought forth a piece of parchment. He handed the parchment to Chiolier. This is the detailed plan. I will provide the technology and labor, while you supply the land and initial funding. Chiolier took the parchment and began to peruse it, simultaneously voicing his concerns. Isn't it unwise to offend Ivica? He is the most powerful governor of the Lyris faction. Then why do you choose to stand by my side? Chiolier raised his gaze, locking onto Cayman's eyes with a serious tone. Hey, I believe Ivica is not your match in any regard. You are younger, craftier, and far more resourceful than he is. I shall take that as a compliment, Cayman replied, and there is no need for you to worry excessively. I began contemplating the current situation 3 years ago. We still have allies. Allies? Chiolier expressed surprise. Anders? I would not recommend forming an alliance with that fellow. He is even more difficult to deal with than Ivica. Anders may have a bit of business acumen, but politically he is inferior to Ivica. He certainly cannot be our ally. Then who is it? Roger, Cayman answered coolly. Chiolier frowned, clearly taken aback by Cayman's mention of Roger's family as an ally, which stirred a sense of concern within him. The Roger family is not in a favorable position at the moment. Sanro recently passed away, and his eldest son, 2 years younger than you, is hardly fit to lead. The Roger family now relies heavily on Sanro's sister for support. But I recently heard. Wait, it cannot be you. Can it? Chiolier's eyes widened in astonishment as he looked at Cayman. Cayman shrugged with a smile. You are correct. I am the one marrying that ice maiden. The Roger family is a wealthy banking lineage in Lys, with bloodlines tracing back to Valyria before the Cataclysm. However, the family has shown signs of decline in recent years, particularly during Sanro's generation, which consists only of Sanro and his sister, Sanzalia. Sanro has been plagued by illness, and fortunately, during his earlier years of relative health, he fathered Lysans and Delazico. Otherwise, Sanro might have left behind no heirs. His sister, Sanzalia, is known for her cold demeanor. While Sanro was alive, she showed little interest in the family's affairs. It is said that at the age of 24, she remains a maiden. Many men, drawn to her beauty yet unable to win her affection, mockingly refer to her as the Ice Maiden and spread rumors that she seeks solace with livestock at night. 3 months ago, Cayman personally visited the ailing Sanro and secured a betrothal with Sanzalia. As a time traveler, he is acutely aware of how powerful the Roger family will become over the next 30 years. In the future, the Roger banking empire will surpass the Iron Bank of Bravos. The now 14-year-old Lysans will lead the Roger family to its zenith, ushering in a period of prosperity. Unfortunately, Lysans' eldest son and heir, Lysans Roger, proves to be an inadequate successor, possessing only half the capability of his father. Yet, his ambition is twice that of his progenitor, ultimately leading to the family's further decline, one that will be profound and complete. Cayman would not relinquish such a formidable ally, especially given the Roger family's historical ties to the Dragon Lords of Valyria. The bloodline of the royal family is notably rich, making it the ideal choice for matrimonial alliances. Once Cayman secures dominion over the contested lands, he will shift his foundation there. Should he aspire to establish a nation in the future, the vast and fertile expanse of the contested lands will undoubtedly be the prime selection. The hall was eerily silent, interrupted only by the crackling of torches. Their sounds echoing in the air. You wish to support the royal family? Chiolier's expression was peculiar. I actually have another daughter, of an age similar to yours. Though our family's heritage is somewhat modest, our wealth is indeed considerable. Noticing Chiolier's attempt to promote his daughter, Cayman hastily declined. Let us not speak of your daughter. She would surely smother me in bed. Cayman waved his hands dismissively. Lear's face flushed with embarrassment. While his daughter was indeed a tad plump, it was far from the severity Cayman implied. Your words are excessive. How could my daughter possibly smother you? Cayman chuckled to himself, thinking, your daughter must weigh at least 200 pounds and stands over 6 feet tall. She's practically a warrior. Am I exaggerating? He mused. Once you have a granddaughter, I can arrange for Grace to marry her. As for your daughter, I believe it's best you seek a son-in-law instead. Lear found himself momentarily speechless, but ultimately acquiesced, for an alliance through marriage is always the most reliable pact. If Cayman successfully establishes the new Targaryen family, the Fox family will no longer be considered of modest heritage. Wait, Lear suddenly exclaimed. Isn't Grace the son of you and Johanna Sivan? Indeed, Cayman nodded. Lear's countenance darkened. So Grace is a bastard? My granddaughter marrying a man of no standing? Observing Lear's grim expression, Cayman quickly gestured for him to calm down. Grace will inherit the Solent surname, carrying forth my bloodline to rule Rhys. If all goes well in the future, that will be the case. Lear's expression shifted instantly, revealing a smile, yet confusion soon returned. Are you planning to entrust Rhys to Grace? What of your child with Sandralia? The contested lands were once a prosperous region under the rule of the Freehold of Valyria. Cayman's lips curled into a smile. You wish to seize the entirety of the contested lands? Lear raised an eyebrow. Tylos and Mir are not easily dealt with. If news of your ascension as a dragon knight spreads, they might even unite to demand the surrender of your young dragons. Huh. That will depend on whether they possess the capability. Cayman scoffed with disdain. Chapter 12. The Targaryen dragon threat. Cayman and Lear engaged in an extensive discussion throughout the night, concluding only in the early hours. They finalized their forthcoming collaboration and its intricate details. The following morning, Cayman rose early. After ensuring that Igarus was well fed, he commenced executing his plans. With his commands disseminated, the taverns under the Free Trade Guild began to spring to life. Carmen manages numerous establishments in Rhys, covering various aspects of daily life, with the taverns being the most abundant. More importantly, the prices of beverages in his taverns are remarkably low, despite their immense popularity. They merely suffice to sustain the tavern's regular operations. Many tavern owners mock him for his inability to run a business effectively, deriding his navet and believing that volume sales could yield profit. After all, in this era, the productivity is limited, and any venture relying solely on volume earns only meager returns. Carmen is aware of this predicament, but his management of so many taverns is not driven by the pursuit of profit. At the Red Rose Tavern, even with the impending threat of war, the atmosphere remains vibrant, untouched by the looming chaos. A resounding crash of glass echoes through the establishment, revealing a robust man clad in silk robes. His crew cut brimming with indignation. If only we had dragon riders in the protection of the Dragon King. Those barbarians in Westeros would not dare to wage war against us for the Stepdiles. His words resonate deeply with the patrons, who, already tipsy, begin to voice their grievances. Wait a moment, don't we have dragon riders in Rhys? A loud voice suddenly emerges from a corner, as a burly man dressed as a mercenary rises. Ah, you must be referring to the esteemed Mr. Carmen. But let's be honest, he is now a free man, capable of fleeing at any moment. Why should he protect us? I heard he intended to run for governor of Rhys, but alas, he faced obstacles and had no choice but to withdraw. Now, expecting him to safeguard us. The initial loud man's voice booms throughout the tavern, prompting a ripple of murmurs among the patrons. The mercenary, with a glint in his eye, inquires loudly, who is it that obstructed him? Does this not mean that all of us in Rhys lose the protection of a dragon rider? His statement, seemingly representative of the crowd's sentiments, ignites a wave of inquiries. The man in silk gestures for silence, scanning the room anxiously. In a hushed tone, he divulges. It is said that a certain elder in the governor's council spoke out. Upon uttering these words, the silken-clad man displays an expression that conveys mutual understanding. My uncle is one of the stewards at Carmen's estate. He overheard some confidential information, so please, do not spread this around, all right? Infuriating. It must be that old coot. Ivica. Rest assured, we will not speak of it. Responds an elder among the crowd. The mercenary promptly counters, how can you be so sure it was Governor Ivica? He is the oldest and most respected governor in Rhys. Be careful with your words. At this moment, another voice rises from the throng. Certainly. It must be that old dog Ivica. Do not let his appearance deceive you. I have heard that not long ago, he assaulted a girl who had just turned 12. And ultimately, he sent someone to murder the girl's father. Truly, a despicable creature. That girl had not even reached her first menstruation. What is this? I have also heard that Ivica betrayed the interests of Rhys to curry favor with Lord Tolosai. When the rumors began, people, regardless of the truth, hastily joined in with their scornful remarks. Even more absurdly, some fabricated tales of Ivica's proclivity for older men, and shockingly, some believed it. The tavern keeper watched this spectacle with a bemused smile, murmuring to himself, "What the Lord said is indeed correct, once the atmosphere is charged." Even falsehoods can be perceived as truths. A similar scene unfolded simultaneously in various taverns. In the span of mere hours, rumors proliferated throughout the city of Riss. If one were to identify the fastest means of communication, it would undoubtedly be the tavern. With a generous outpouring of gold dragons, the effects of public opinion were strikingly evident. In the realm of discourse, the early bird always catches the worm. People tend to instinctively believe the version of events they encounter first. Sometimes, as rumors circulate, they transform from mere whispers into established facts. Once the notion of the dragon's peril is imprinted in the minds of the people of Riss, it could lead to significant trouble. Currently, the perception of the dragon as the protector of Riss is rapidly gaining traction. For the common folk, it matters little who governs them. In contrast, amidst the ominous shadows of the island wars, having a dragon king to shield them undoubtedly offers greater solace. And what of the 5 governors currently ruling Riss? If the Targaryen dragons were to launch a surprise attack, could they defend Riss without dragons? The answer is glaringly obvious. Only dragons can contend with dragons. Riss needs its own dragon riders. In the afternoon, the blazing sun scorched the earth, and the air was thick with heat. Following yet another directive from Cayman, the Targaryen dragon threat theory spread rapidly. People began to fear that the War of the Stone Steppes Islands was a prelude to the Targaryen family's invasion of Essos. Riss must possess its own dragon king. With the protection of a dragon king, they would no longer dread being relegated to the status of inferior colonial subjects. In the future, they might even aspire to become the esteemed subjects of a dragon king. In no time, an array of chaotic assertions circulated through the streets and alleys of Riss. By the time Ivica learned of all this, the evening had already arrived. Incompetence, a pitiful bunch. Why has it taken so long for anyone to inform me of this matter? Ivica roared in fury, never having been this enraged before. His chastised subordinates cowered, secretly cursing Ivica's foolishness. Had it not been for his daily indulgence in the company of young boys, would I not have been able to meet with him sooner? Chapter 13. Confrontation. Where did these rumors originate? After wreaking havoc, Ivica managed to calm himself slightly and inquired about the source of the rumors. Unbeknownst to us, by the time we received the news and commenced our search, the rumors had already spread like wildfire. Utterly useless, Ivica seized a cup and smashed it against the head of his subordinate, warm blood immediately gushing forth. The bloody guard dared not utter a single word of complaint, bowing his wounded head to the ground. Notify the city guards to patrol the entire city at once. Anyone who dares to continue spreading these rumors shall be apprehended on the spot. At this moment, Ivica began to regain his composure. He understood that the most pressing matter was not to investigate the source of the rumors, but rather to swiftly and decisively curb their proliferation. The city guards of Riss were not an army. They typically played a role in maintaining public order, and their combat prowess was consequently limited. Nevertheless, with the governor's backing, they could certainly manage to contain the spread of the rumors. As the city guards mobilized, the momentum of the rumors in the northern, western, and southern districts was swiftly quelled. However, soon they encountered a dilemma. They could not enter the eastern district. The entrances to the entire eastern district were controlled by heavily armed mercenaries. Compared to these mercenaries exuding an aura of lethal intent, the city guards appeared as innocent infants. "Father, are we to remain here indefinitely?" At the largest intersection of the eastern district, 2 factions stood in a standoff, observing the immovable, upright mercenaries opposite them. Malcoretti's lips twitched. "How many times have I said it? You must use your titles when outside. I have already dispatched someone to inform the governor. We are merely here to keep watch." Seemingly recalling something, Malcor struck Rickard with a resounding slap and quietly admonished, "Remember, with that meager salary, do not truly consider yourself a good official. Not everything requires your earnest diligence. When I was your age, I too was inflexible, wandering down many misguided paths and enduring much hardship. Therefore, my son, always bear in mind your identity and position. Responsibilities that can be shirked should be, and work that can be slacked off should be." Malcor pinched Rickard's face, gesturing toward the location held by the Storm Brigade. "Look at them. If our pitiful city guards were to engage, we would be devoured alive. All for a few coins. You must be wiser in the future." Rickard nodded thoughtfully, seemingly grasping his father's intentions. As time passed, the night gradually enveloped Riss. Torches appeared in the distance. Ivica arrived simultaneously with several other governors, accompanied by a multitude of slave soldiers. "Is Common preparing for rebellion?" Ivica bellowed upon his arrival. These words were not directed at Malcor and the others, but rather intended for the nearby citizens of Riss who were spectating. No sooner had Evika's voice faded than a youthful, cheerful laugh echoed forth. Governor Evika, you truly have a sense of humor. I carry the blood of Rhys in my veins, as will my future wife. How could I possibly instigate a rebellion? The Storm Brigade parted ways in unison, and before the crowd appeared Common, donned in a luxurious silk coat, his face adorned with a broad smile. Beside him stood a woman of icy demeanor, her expression inscrutable, elegantly entwining her arm with his. With silver hair and violet eyes that sparkled in the glow of the flames, she was breathtakingly beautiful. Evika's expression shifted dramatically. The woman's silver hair and purple gaze were unmistakable traits of the Dragon King's bloodline. In Lizzie, only one family bore such a distinct lineage, the Roga clan. At that moment, Chiole arrived with his entourage, approaching Common with an enthusiastic embrace, reminiscent of long-lost friends reunited after years apart. Evika's companion, Binnock, was momentarily taken aback, clearly unaware of the alliance between Chiole and Common. His mind raced, beads of sweat forming on his forehead, before he finally reached a decision. With a sweeping gesture, he laughed heartily and led his companions towards Common's side. My son, there must be some misunderstanding in this matter. After Binnock departed from the group, Anders discreetly signaled, subtly distancing his people from Evika. Everyone in Lizzie knew the ferocity of Common's Storm Brigade, and Anders had no desire to unwittingly engage in a conflict. Observing from the sidelines to conserve strength seemed the wisest choice. At the intersection of the East District and Lizzie, three factions stood distinctly apart. Perhaps for the first time in the city's history, I have heard of the unrest erupting throughout the city, to ensure the safety of myself and the dragon hatchlings. I had no choice but to seal off the East District. My sincerest apologies. Kane, why are you standing there in a daze? Hurry up and lift the state of readiness. Common chastised playfully. Understanding the implication, Kane promptly ordered the Storm Brigade to stand down. Evika's expression fluctuated between anger and despair. He realized he had underestimated Common, failing to grasp his cunning and resourcefulness. Before Evika could respond, Common raised his voice once more. I must say, Governor Evika, you are the eldest governor in Lizzie and my senior. Although I have heard many unfavorable rumors about you, I still firmly believe they are untrue. Yet, you have disappointed me greatly by allowing Lizzie to descend into such a state of panic. If it were me, I would never let Lizzie fall into this predicament. Those rumors were unfounded, and as for today's chaos, it was unavoidable. There are always those who stir the pot from the shadows, catching us off guard. Wouldn't you agree? Evika's triangular eyes fixed intently on Common, his gaze seething with the desire to devour him whole. Regardless, the unrest today was indeed relentless, alas. My dragon has yet to mature, and I am not the governor of Lizzie. Such a pity. Common's face bore a look of regret, and as his words faded, the roar of a dragon followed. Screech. A shadow descended from the heavens, its visage grotesque. Chapter 14, Leading by the Nose. Screech, the dragon Icarus, with its dark flames tinged in blood red, appeared exceptionally fearsome under the shroud of night. However, Icarus was still quite young, and its breath was not yet potent enough to instill genuine terror. It could merely intimidate. Evika scrutinized Icarus, and he couldn't shake the impression that the dragon had grown a little. Did young dragons grow so quickly? Whispers of curiosity swirled around, as it was evident that many were encountering Icarus for the first time. In their minds, dragons were typically seen as volatile behemoths, the sovereigns of the skies. A juvenile dragon, measuring less than a meter in length, although striking, did not evoke much fear. It seemed a misunderstanding had occurred. If that were the case, it was best to disperse. If the governor wishes to enter the Eastern District, he is welcome to do so, Common said with a smile. Evika had remained mostly silent since his arrival, and this suited Common's purpose, which had been accomplished. He aimed to demonstrate to the people of Rhys that he possessed the strength to oppose their governor and that he had supporters within the governor's council. In contrast, Evika felt his teeth nearly grinding to dust in frustration. Faced with Common's blatant provocation, he could not respond with the assertiveness he desired, resulting in a devastating blow to his prestige. In the future, when the people of Rhys spoke of him, they would only mock him for being thwarted at the entrance of the Eastern District. Meanwhile, Common would step over him, becoming a prominent figure among the youthful elite of Rhys. At that moment, Evika longed to arrest Common on charges of slander, but the situation had unfolded unexpectedly, leaving him unprepared. To pit the city guard against Common's Storm Brigade would be akin to throwing eggs against a stone. Ultimately, he could only watch helplessly as Common and his entourage departed. As Common left, the remaining onlookers gradually trickled away. Upon returning to the manor, Kirill urgently inquired about the events of the day. Common did not conceal anything and shared his thoughts candidly. After listening, Kirill fell silent, realizing he had underestimated Common's cunning, even calling it treachery. Today, Kamen had indeed caught Evika off guard, but replicating that success would prove challenging. Kirill offered his perspective. Once was enough. From tomorrow onward, the people of Riss will genuinely believe I am superior to Evika, Kamen remarked with a grin. The matter of his being blocked at the entrance of the Eastern District will become widely known. Those unfavorable rumors will quietly circulate through the alleyways and taverns. Unless Evika can find an excuse to eradicate my foundation in Riss in one fell swoop, he will have no choice but to follow my lead. Kirill nodded in agreement. Recognizing that Kamen was indeed correct, once the advantage was seized, the latter could only be led by the nose. Please, take your seats. The banquet shall commence shortly. Do indulge in the culinary delights crafted with fresh salt powder. They will undoubtedly exceed your expectations. Chiu Liar had already savored the flavor of the fresh salt powder, and these words were primarily aimed at Sang Zulia. As for Binnock, he was merely an incidental presence. After all, given their relationship, Kamen could not simply dismiss him. The guests gradually took their seats. Suddenly, Binnock directed his attention towards Sang Zulia beside Kamen, inquiring, "When did you and Kamen become betrothed?" His tone was tinged with a hint of accusation, evidently attempting to assert his father's authority in front of Sang Zulia. However, had it been any other woman, she might have contemplated how to respond. Sang Zulia did not even lift her gaze. Did Kamen not inform you of when the engagement was established? Binnock's expression stiffened. The respect Kamen had shown him over the years was merely pretense. He would never divulge matters of their union. Fortunately, the arrival of Yagalas shattered the awkwardness. Binnock's gaze shifted to Yagalas, a glimmer of greed flashing in his eyes. Kamen was his son, and since Kamen could command dragons, it implied that he too possessed the potential to do so. His eldest son and heir, Gyrolag, should similarly be endowed. The notion of a young dragon in Kamen's possession felt like a waste. If either he or Gyrolag could become dragon riders, Binnock could not help but swallow hard. The sheer power of a dragon knight made him salivate at the thought. Yagalas, with his keen senses, seemed to detect Binnock's avaricious stare and immediately unleashed a breath of dragonfire. The black flame singed Binnock's face, prompting a startled scream as he scrambled backward in a panic. Kamen, your beast nearly killed me, Binnock exclaimed, beads of cold sweat dotting his forehead. Kamen frowned slightly. In the past, he had tolerated Binnock's antics to preserve a semblance of harmony, but that fade had crumbled. And the development of the Merchant Guild had now come to light. His patience with Binnock had reached its nadir. Governor Binnock, should you continue to raise your voice, do not expect me to show you mercy, Kamen said, his eye twitching as he struggled to suppress his discontent. Were it not for their relationship, he would have relished the thought of crushing Binnock's skull. Chapter 15. Fire Magic. The farce concluded. The banquet proceeded smoothly. The only blemish was the presence of Binnock, which prevented certain topics from being discussed in depth. Binnock, oblivious to the disdain he inspired, insisted that he must be invited to the next banquet. As he departed, he incessantly urged Kamen to foster a closer bond with Gyrolag, to strengthen the ties between the two brothers. Kamen responded with a forced smile, vowing to take action against the Solon Merchant Guild starting the following day, in collaboration with Chiu Liar and the Luo Gyre family, to launch a concerted assault. The following morning, Kamen and Sang Zulia enjoyed breakfast in the main hall of the residence. Previously, it had been Ruka or Johanna occupying Sang Zulia's position, but now, the rightful occupant had arrived. Where is your mistress? Sandra glanced around, noticing her absence at dinner. It's just a mistress. Let's eat. Carmen preferred not to linger on the topic. You need not make a fuss about it, as long as you do not disturb my studies in fire magic. You may pursue as many mistresses as you wish. In truth, Sandra was not inherently aloof. She simply exhibited little response to matters beyond her interests. Her passion lay in magic, particularly fire magic. To her, the soaring flames were the most exquisite sights in the world. Noticing Carmen's silence, Sandra pressed her lips together and inhaled deeply, seemingly resolved. Rest assured, once we marry, I will certainly carve out time to bear your offspring, I promise. Sandra spoke with utmost seriousness, as if making a solemn vow. For a moment, Carmen found himself at a loss for words. Did she really intend to schedule time for children? It was somewhat perplexing. But you shall be the one to raise them. I do not intend to take on the responsibility of child rearing, Sandra added suddenly. Carmen took a large bite of bread, responding helplessly, all right, how about one every 2 years? Sandra furrowed her elegantly shaped brows, contemplating for a long while. Agreed, that poses no issue. My brother mentioned that establishing the Sandra line requires your support, and you will be my anchor in the future. I will heed your counsel. Carmen raised an eyebrow, surprised by Sandra's forthrightness. However, he appreciated such candid dialogue, particularly regarding family matters. What else did my brother say? Carmen inquired. Well, he also mentioned that I should bear more sons. The more sons I have, the more secure my position will be. Carmen pursed his lips. There was truth in that statement. In the feudal era, regardless of location, a legitimate wife needed to bear offspring to solidify her standing, preferably male heirs. After all, in certain places, only male heirs were acknowledged. Appointing a female heir could potentially incite civil strife. Sandra began to eat in silence. After some contemplation, Carmen decided to take the initiative, after all. She was his legitimate wife and deserved more than the indifference afforded to a mistress. Do you have a fondness for fire magic? Sandra paused mid-bite, then looked up, her violet eyes sparkling with excitement. Do you also enjoy fire magic? Not exactly enjoyment, but I do find it quite fascinating. Carmen's statement was not made to flatter Sandra. He was genuinely intrigued by fire magic as well as other forms of magic. The world of A Song of Ice and Fire did not seem to be one of low magic. At times, Carmen imagined whether, if the tides of magical energy continued to surge, it might be possible to conjure a fireball by hand. Upon discussing fire magic, Sandra transformed, her enthusiasm evident as she picked up her knife and spoke to Carmen. I have made some progress in my research. Magic is not as ethereal and elusive as my brother suggested. Please wait a moment. I shall demonstrate it to you. Sandrolia clasped the hilt of the knife with both hands, reciting an obscure incantation. Silence enveloped the room, deafening in its intensity. Wait, grant me another chance. The enigmatic chant echoed once more. Cayman observed in silence as Sandrolia clutched the exquisite dining knife, glimmering in the morning light. Why not try again? Cayman exhibited remarkable patience. Sandrolia's typically expressive face was devoid of emotion, now transformed by embarrassment, which brought a smile to Cayman's heart. Undeterred, Sandrolia recited the incantation once more. Yet the result remained unresponsive. Just as she bit down on her lip, pondering where she might have faltered, a sudden flame surged forth. The dining knife in her hand ignited like grease caught in fierce fire, erupting in a burst of flames. Startled, Sandrolia dropped the burning knife onto the table, immediately igniting the tablecloth. Crackling with excitement, Igarlas bellowed, watching the burning table, his tail flicking wildly. The commotion instantly attracted the guards. A multitude of guards rushed into the parlor, and upon discovering the blaze, swiftly sought water. The entire manor descended into chaos. After a flurry of activity, Cayman sighed as he gazed at the half-burned table, pinching his nose in exasperation. Sandrolia, her hands folded over her abdomen, lost her previous aloofness. Now only a picture of embarrassment. I apologize. I shall fetch Lysandro and have him replace the table for you. Cayman waved his hand dismissively. No need for that. It is merely a table. Search the storeroom. I recall someone once gifted a set of goldenheart wood furniture. The Summer Isles prohibited the felling and sale of goldenheart wood, intended to protect the island's trees. Ironically, this led to a skyrocketing price for golden heartwood in the outside world, exacerbating smuggling activities. Chapter 16. Mariel Cayman found the dining knife amidst the battered remnants of the table. The knife still gleamed with silver, its blade showing no signs of charring. Truly remarkable. Cayman marveled at the knife. Is there anything else you can do? Sandrolia shook her head, biting her finger. I have only mastered this one incantation. That book is rather cryptic, and I am striving to learn more. The tome she referenced was a gift from Sanro, given to her on her 18th naming day. Hailing from the ancient and mysterious Shadowlands. A commendable endeavor. Once I become governor of Riss, I shall construct a tower for sorcerers in the controversial lands. At that time, I will offer generous benefits to recruit mages from across the realm. Really? Sandrolia exclaimed with delight. Indeed, Cayman assured her. He had long intended to establish a similar organization to study magic. He merely expressed his intent in passing. Cayman led Sandrolia to an open space outside the main manor. Under his guidance, Sandrolia endeavored to enchant an ordinary longsword. Upon the incantation's completion, the sword exhibited no reaction. Cayman intervened to halt Igalaz's attempt to unleash dragonfire, opting instead to summon ordinary flames in an effort to ignite it. Yet, the sword remained unresponsive even to the heat of the torch. Igalaz unleashed the dragonfire. Boom. The dragonfire surged forth, and in an instant, the sword erupted into a brilliant blaze, burning fiercely in the sunlight. It appeared that ordinary flames could not ignite it. Was this due to the magical properties inherent in dragonfire? The contrasting outcomes ignited Cayman's curiosity. What if the ordinary sword were replaced with a Valyrian steel sword? Or perhaps a dragon crystal dagger? Or a dragonbone dagger? Or was the inability to enchant with fire directly attributable to Sandrolia's insufficient mental prowess? The myriad possibilities left Cayman in a state of anxious turmoil, yearning for immediate answers. In an uncharacteristic move, Sandrolia stepped forward and embraced Cayman's arm. She perceived his urgency but was acutely aware that one must never rush in the pursuit of magic. Impatience would only yield contrary results. We can explore at a leisurely pace. That is where the true enjoyment lies, is it not? Sandralia winked playfully, her demeanor transforming whenever fire magic was involved, becoming lively and voluble. Ah, and there is another matter. Lysandro has meticulously selected a few slaves for me, several of whom hail from the Great Temple. Which Great Temple? The one in the West District? The West District's Great Temple is also known as the Red Temple, the sanctuary of the King of Light. The red-robed monks kindle the night fire at sunset and welcome the dawn at sunrise, preaching to the gathered crowds. The Red Temple purchases child slaves and trains them to become monks, courtesans, and warriors. Shall I accompany you? Yes, Lysandro wishes to meet you. He has matters to discuss. Very well. The Roga Bank is situated in the East District, where Lysandro resides and conducts his affairs. Lysandro, Common has arrived. Avoiding the topic of fire magic, Sandralia reverted to her customary aloof demeanor. Aunt, uncle, welcome, welcome. Lysandro's face bore a smile, yet the weariness concealed within was palpable. Clearly, the recent passing of his father had a profound impact on the Roga family. Common was intrigued. How did Lysandro manage during this period without his patronage in the original narrative? How has the bank fared recently? Common inquired. Not long ago. I resolved a multitude of bad debts, Lysandro replied with a beaming smile. Since you became a dragon knight and publicly declared your engagement to my aunt, the bank has released a significant number of loans and received considerable deposits. It is an honor for the Roga family to be allied with you. Lysandro did not hesitate to express his admiration for Common. Were it not for Common's investment, he was uncertain when he would have been able to rectify the bank's financial woes. Indeed, you possess remarkable capabilities. Carmen gave Lysandra a thumbs up, crediting her with the investment of 300,000 gold dragons. Lysandra, feeling a bit bashful, scratched the back of her head. Haha, it's nothing, she replied. Sandralia mentioned you wished to speak with me? Carmen shifted the conversation back to business. Lysandra chuckled lightly. Oh, it's not a pressing matter. Allow my aunt to select a few servants first. I've arranged for a luncheon. We can discuss it then. Seeing this, Carmen nodded with a smile. Preparing a luncheon and discussing matters during the feast suggested that it was not trivial after all. The trio made their way to the backyard, where 10 young girls clad in coarse linen stood barefoot in a row. These are the girls I meticulously selected, Lysandra explained. The 3 on the far right were purchased from the Red Ropes. They possess some basic knowledge of magic. Carmen inquired, you mean they understand the fundamentals of magic? Yes. Precisely, Lysandra confirmed. These 3 girls are quite lively. The Red Robes intended to train them for sacrificial purposes. Sandralia cast a casual glance at the girls, ultimately fixing her gaze on the second-to-last girl. I'll take her, she declared, pointing. 1 is sufficient. Wouldn't 2 be better? Lysandra asked. More isn't necessarily better. It's important to choose wisely, Sandralia replied matter-of-factly. Aware of her aunt's decisive nature, Lysandra promptly gestured for the chosen girl to approach. Take the others away and send them to the perfumed garden for proper training, she instructed her attendant. The perfumed garden was a newly established brothel, exquisite and opulent. What is your name? Do you have your own name? Sandralia inquired of the girl before her. Esteemed Miss Sandralia, my name is Muriel. It is an honor to become your servant, the composed girl replied, surprising Carmen, who had expected her to be more nervous. However, the name Muriel struck him as oddly familiar. Carmen lifted Muriel's chin, scrutinizing her features. She had long, light red hair, a heart-shaped face, and striking red eyes. Where do you hail from? He asked. Sir, I am from Astapor in the Slave Bay. My father may be a certain great benefactor, she answered. Haha, benefactor and great are not terms that coincide, Carmen chuckled, releasing her chin. He couldn't quite recall why Muriel's name felt familiar, leaving him to ponder it later. Muriel is quite beautiful. If I find myself preoccupied with research on fire magic and unable to attend to my duties, you may allow her to keep you company in bed. Sandralia suddenly interjected. Both Muriel and Lysandra turned to look at the expressionless Sandralia in disbelief. Had they not heard it with their own ears? They could hardly have imagined such words coming from her lips. Meryl silently etched the first rule in her heart. Sandra's fascination with fire magic surpassed all else. Chapter 17. The Golden Mercenary Corps. It was decided that Meryl would be the one, and thus Sandra summoned a servant to escort her for her ablutions. When Meryl reappeared before the gathering, she seemed almost a transformed individual. Sandra couldn't help but cast a sidelong glance at her aunt. This was no mere selection of a maid. It was as though a succubus had been placed beside her husband. Sandra also noticed the glint of inquiry in Sandra's gaze and, perplexed, regarded her, failing to grasp her meaning. Observing this, Sandra resolved to devote her prayers to the deities, beseeching them for her aunt to soon bear a legitimate heir. In the ensuing hours, Sandra guided Common through the esteemed Roga Bank. This institution, steeped in history, sprawled over a considerable expanse. When including the backyard and warehouses, Common estimated it to be the size of 2 football fields. Ever since the announcement of his engagement to his aunt, those who had previously refused to repay their debts had become compliant, dutifully paying both interest and principal. Sandra could hardly contain his delight. Sometimes he lamented in silence that Common was not a woman. If he were to marry Common, the Roga family would undoubtedly soar to new heights. Reflecting on this, Sandra marveled at his father's sagacity. There had been suitors in the past who sought to wed his aunt, yet all had been rebuffed by his father. Until Common arrived. He was unaware of the discussions that transpired with his father, which led to a direct order for Sandra to marry Common. Thus far, it could only be said that this union had bestowed immense benefits upon the Roga family. Everyone had been a debtor. A waning influence would inevitably attract predators. They understood that the declining Roga family posed no real threat to them, emboldening their audacity. Yet, Sandra was different. Should they dare to default on their debts, he would not hesitate to seize their assets. Common chuckled. Common's own banking establishment, known as the Free Treasury, had flourished over the past 3 years, albeit without aggressive expansion. Despite its tumultuous growth, it managed to sustain itself reasonably well. Many doubted Common's foundation, attempting to collude in deceitful dealings. Common maintained a stoic silence until the debts matured. However, just as those plotting to renege believed Common to be meek, he unleashed the Storm Brigade on the 3rd day post-maturity, confiscating all their assets. Some individuals sought to rally mercenaries for a desperate resistance, but ultimately, their hired fighters merely became a minor footnote in the annals of the Storm Brigade. As a time traveler from the Celestial Empire, Common understood the paramount importance of armed strength, particularly on the continent of Essos. Essentially, in any city-state reliant on slavery, warfare is predominantly conducted by enslaved soldiers and mercenaries. Thus, compared to the merchants of Essos, Common's lavish expenditure on maintaining a mercenary company appears quite incongruous. However, the efficacy of this arrangement is unmistakable. With a mere command, Common can effectively block Ivica in the eastern city, leaving Ivica powerless and merely watching. Ironically, even in such circumstances, Ivica remains reluctant to hire a mercenary group for defense and risk. As time swiftly progresses to the afternoon, in the backyard of the Roga Bank, Common has had ice delivered. The afternoon sun is at its zenith, and the addition of ice to the fruit wine alleviates the oppressive heat. Uncle, is this ice truly produced through alchemy? Lysandro, stirring the ice in his glass with a spoon, gazes with bright eyes. In a sense. But don't entertain thoughts of profiting from it. The yield scarcely suffices for personal use. Common dispels Lysandro's entrepreneurial aspirations regarding ice. He has yet to discover any traces of the saltpeter mine, nor are there signs of it in the contested lands. Nevertheless, it surely exists. Once Riss is secured, he can expand the search radius. What a pity, Lysandro expresses with a look of regret. Setting that aside, didn't you mention you wish to discuss something with me? Pray, enlighten me. I am contemplating relocating the bank's headquarters to the contested lands. What are your thoughts? Common is taken aback. You wish to move the bank to the contested lands? Why? Safety. Safety? Indeed, safety. Once the bank is operational, I have procured a tract of land in the contested lands. After a moment of contemplation, Lysandro continues. I aspire to emulate you and establish a mercenary company in the contested lands. He has pondered this for quite some time. Especially after the day when the Storm Brigade cornered Ivica at the intersection, the desire to maintain a mercenary group has completely consumed him. Consequently, he promptly purchased a substantial piece of land in the contested lands. Very well, as long as you are willing to invest the necessary funds, you may sustain as many mercenaries as you desire. Common looks at Lysandro with curiosity. Does he truly need to consult him over such a trivial matter? Wait. You aren't contemplating misappropriating bank funds, are you? Common's expression shifts dramatically. He possesses a 40 share in Roga Bank. Misappropriating bank funds not only poses a risk of disrupting the financial chain, but is tantamount to using his money to sustain mercenaries. No. I have no intention of misusing bank funds. My father left me some savings. What I mean is, I would like to borrow some personnel from you to assist in training soldiers. I do not possess an arena. So I plan to assemble a golden mercenary company directly from robust young slaves. A golden mercenary company? Chapter 18. The estate sustains the mercenaries. Common's lips twitch in disbelief. Really? You're forming a golden company now? Are you certain you want to call it that? Well, I understand that it may sound somewhat kitsch. Perhaps we could call it the Silver Company instead? Common, at a loss for words, decides, let us stick with the Golden Company. Let us be honest. The Silver Brigade does not resonate as melodiously as the Golden Brigade, does it? Very well, let us adopt the name Golden Brigade, exclaimed Lysandro with evident delight. Clearly enamored with the appellation. By the way, I have a few inquiries I wish to address. Rising, he poured wine for Cayman while inquiring. The The Storm Brigade boasts a membership of 2,000, yet seldom ventures out for missions. Have you been the one sustaining them all this while? To outsiders, the Storm Brigade's frequency of undertaking missions appears alarmingly low, spending the majority of their time stationed outside the city of Riss. Ordinarily, a mercenary group that exhibits a modicum of diligence should be able to sustain itself. However, the Storm Brigade, under Cayman's command, remains predominantly encamped outside the city. Is this not a sheer waste of the brigade's inherent value? In truth, the Storm Brigade incurs minimal expenses these days, while peeling shrimp. Cayman elucidated the operational model of the Storm Brigade to Lysandro. Initially, the brigade's expenditures were akin to those of any ordinary mercenary group, necessitating frequent missions to alleviate Cayman's financial burdens. However, Cayman later acquired vast tracts of land in the contested lands and constructed an impressive 20 grand estates. Each estate harbors no fewer than 5,000 slaves, who, akin to standard tenant farmers, are tasked daily with cultivating crops. In addition to these regular farmers, the estates house a variety of skilled slaves, including blacksmiths, carpenters, masons, and tailors. Some estates even feature brothels, exclusively staffed by bed slaves sourced from Riss. The essentials such as food and clothing required by the Storm Brigade are supplied by the estates, while maintenance of weapons and armor is entrusted to the blacksmiths within. With a newfound understanding of the intricacies, Lysandro widened his eyes in astonishment. How do you sustain such a multitude of slaves? He questioned incredulously. Each estate accommodates at least 5,000 individuals. How much arable land does that necessitate? Cayman chuckled. As long as you can enhance the yield per acre of crops, the rest will fall into place. That is all I can divulge. As for the methods of increasing crop yields, that remains a secret. However, if you were to maintain merely 500 individuals, you could easily replicate this model without issue. The operational framework is, in essence, quite straightforward. A multitude of slaves dedicated to sustaining a modestly armed force. In the continent of Essos, the price of ordinary slaves is remarkably low. Their existence and all resultant value belong solely to their masters. Sustaining a small standing army poses no significant burden. Yet, this is limited to a select few. Once the numbers increase, a shift in strategy becomes imperative. The specifics of this transition need not be shared with Lysandro, as it involves the secrets of high-yield agricultural practices. It is noteworthy that in Cayman's estates within the contested lands, the yield of wheat per acre generally approximates 180 pounds, double the standard yield of the era, with barley, rye, and turnips yielding even higher outputs. Very well, it is settled then. Let us first assemble a contingent of 500 individuals. However, dear uncle, I must trouble you to assist with the initial operations of the estate. Lysandro sheepishly scratched his head. Feeling somewhat awkward for imposing on his uncle before his aunt had even formally wed Carmen. Yet, the prospect of possessing a cost-effective and readily available mercenary band filled him with uncontainable excitement. On the continent of Essos, a mercenary force of 500 is indeed considerable. I am profoundly grateful for your generous assistance. Dear uncle, allow me to raise a toast in your honor. Lysandro lifted his goblet. We are family. There is no need for formality. Mutual support is only natural, Carmen replied. Lysandro said nothing further and downed his drink in one swift motion. Carmen acquiesced to Lysandro's request, and the atmosphere of the luncheon naturally grew more lively. Lysandro continued to extol Carmen, expressing that his aunt had chosen a flawless husband. After the luncheon concluded, Carmen promised to find time in the near future to accompany Lysandro to the disputed lands. However, prior to that, he needed to continue steering public opinion in Riss. Currently, the eastern district of Riss was under Carmen's control. Under his orders, the Storm Brigade increasingly patrolled the streets, justifying their presence with claims of relaxation and rest. The streets of the eastern district were teeming with members of the Storm Brigade. Due to the political system in place, Ivica could only watch silently in the face of such brazen provocation. There exists no law in Riss that prohibits mercenaries from leisurely wandering within the city. Unless Ivica convened a governor's meeting to legislate a ban on mercenaries in the streets, which is undoubtedly impractical and would only serve to alienate all mercenary groups without yielding any tangible results. Even if Ivica were to successfully enact such legislation after the inevitable disputes at the governor's meeting, what then? Would Carmen simply withdraw the Storm Brigade? Chapter 19. The terrifying rate of growth. Half a month has swiftly passed. Throughout this period, Riss has scarcely experienced a moment of tranquility. Rumors regarding Ivica and Destin have circulated incessantly within the city. The consensus has solidified that the Targaryen family intends to invade Riss, necessitating the protection of their own Dragon King. Concurrently, new rumors about Carmen have emerged among the populace. A small faction of the citizens of Riss believes that Carmen possesses Targaryen blood. and he may very well be plotting to seize control of Reese to offer it to the King of the Seven Kingdoms in exchange for personal gain. Alongside the myriad of rumors, the Free Trade Guild has launched 2 new products. The golden liquor is remarkably clear and offers a variety of flavors and purities. Meanwhile, the freshly ground salt has outperformed all other seasonings in sales, becoming highly sought after by nobles and affluent merchants alike. As introduced upon its release, just a pinch of this fresh salt could render even the most unpalatable of dishes, such as one's own stinky shoe, utterly delectable. Consequently, even though the fresh salt is priced at 50 golden dragons per pound, it remains in high demand. Carmen Manor. Hiss. Igelas fervently flapped his wings, evading the arrows that rained down from below. Typically, Cayman would employ about to simulate the crossbow, honing Igelas' evasive abilities. While the cumbersome crossbow found it challenging to strike a soaring dragon, the necessary training could not be overlooked. Cayman drew his bow with fluid precision, releasing an arrow nearly every 3 seconds. Once all 20 arrows had been loosed, Igelas gradually descended before Cayman. Hiss. Igelas excitedly flicked his tail, clearly pleased with his recent performance. You are truly becoming more formidable. What would you like to eat tonight? Lamb? As he spoke, Cayman retrieved a homemade measuring tape and grasped Igelas' tail, straightening it to take a measurement. 56 centimeters. Excellent. Your growth is astonishing. Cayman was unaware of the growth rate of the Targaryen hatchlings, but he was confident that none matched Igelas' remarkable pace. During this period, he had scoured various accounts of dragons and had obtained a slender manual on dragons from a small trader, which originated from the Shadowlands. This manual contained numerous records of dragons from the Valyrian era, along with a few simple phrases in the tongue of dragon training. According to the manual, dragons do not cease to grow, yet their growth rates vary significantly across different stages. Dragons under 5 years of age grow rapidly, typically increasing by 3 to 4 meters each year. In just half a month, Igelas had surged from 30 centimeters to 56 centimeters, a growth rate nearly double that of the dragons from the Valyrian period. The growth of Targaryen dragons, it seemed, should be comparatively slower. Hiss. The moment Igelas felt his tail tugged, a sense of discomfort washed over him. Only Cayman dared to pull it so. Enough, enough. You should cherish these moments while I can still measure you myself. Once you grow larger, I shall no longer be able to do so. Cayman affectionately patted Igelas' back, only to retract his hand in an instant. Upon closer inspection, he noticed a crimson line across his palm, the skin having been grazed. Cayman inhaled sharply. He distinctly remembered Igelas' dorsal fin not being this sharp just a few days prior. My lord, are you unhurt? Upon seeing Cayman injured, Mulwin's son, Sane, immediately rushed forward to examine the wound. Hiss. A dark dragon flame erupted before Sane. Igelas fixed his gaze upon Sane, his eyes brimming with vigilance. Quiet, Igelas. Cayman promptly commanded, issuing a stand-down order. Otherwise, any slight movement from Sane could result in him being ignited by dragonfire. Noticing Igelas return to his side, Cayman playfully delivered a light tap to the dragon's head. You are on high alert. Yet you seem oblivious to the fact that the true culprit is your own dorsal fin, are you not? He then waved a hand at Sane, signaling that he was unharmed. Since the hatching of Igelas, the life energy generated by the golden saplings has been absorbed by Cayman himself to fortify his body. Each time he absorbs this life energy amidst the searing flames, his physical attributes are enhanced ever so slightly. Although the improvement may seem modest, it is comprehensive, encompassing even his self-healing abilities. A mere scratch does not penetrate deeply enough to harm the flesh beneath, allowing him to recover to his former state in no time. Just as Cayman was preparing to continue his ministrations on Igelas' chest, a guard hurriedly approached. My lord, we have received the latest news from the Stepstone Islands. Demon Targaryen has made his presence known there, riding a dragon. The guard handed over a letter, detailing the most recent developments from the Free Trade Guild's outpost in Tyros. Cayman opened the envelope and perused its contents with great attention. Moments later, a smile crept onto his lips, and he discarded the envelope onto the ground. Dragonflame. Upon receiving the command, Igelas unleashed a torrent of dragonfire, incinerating the letter to ashes. Sane, someone came to see me. The forthcoming public sentiment is of utmost importance. Chapter 20. The rampant pirates following the command, Cain hurried back to the manor. My lord, you summoned me? Indeed. Take the scouts from your regiment and disseminate this information. Cayman instructed, presenting a sheet of paper to Cain. Especially in the North District, deploy 500 men to the northern border and emphasize Demon's threat to Lys. Understood. As you wish. Cain turned to depart. Cayman poured himself a glass of golden wine, savoring its richness. However, shortly thereafter, he opted for warm water. Thus far, he had not accustomed himself to consuming wine as if it were water. Particularly when the two were mixed, the taste became rather peculiar. He preferred to either drink wine or water exclusively. As he contemplated his next plans while sipping water, Sane burst through the door. "What is the urgency that you cannot even knock?" Cayman frowned slightly. "Apologies, my lord, but the matter is pressing. The Black Pearl has been detained at the southern port. Governor Destin has personally dispatched agents to seize it." "What did you say?" Cayman leapt to his feet, his expression darkening as he demanded. "That beast Destin dares to seize my ship? The Black Pearl." The Black Pearl is the largest merchant vessel under the Free Trade Guild, measuring 69 meters in length and 24 meters in width, a true behemoth of commerce. Furthermore, the ship is laden with barrels of golden wine and fresh salt, all ordered from Volantis, worth hundreds of thousands of golden dragons. Where does he find the audacity to detain my Black Pearl? "Relay my orders. Storm Brigade, assemble." Cayman's roar echoed throughout the manor. He had prepared himself for the possibility of his merchant ship being seized, for Governor List possessed such capabilities. However, what Cayman did not anticipate was that, while seizing a common cargo ship might have been acceptable, daring to directly commandeer the Black Pearl goddess was an entirely different matter. This was akin to brazenly riding atop his head. The 1,000 soldiers of the Storm Brigade quickly assembled and stood in neat formation before the manor. Cayman, mounted on his majestic black steed, approached the Storm Brigade. Destin Wicco had audaciously seized the Black Pearl goddess without cause. Your urine bonuses rest upon her. Whether those bonuses are duly distributed depends solely on your actions. Onward. With 1,000 men, Cayman surged towards the southern port. As the largest port in Ris, the southern port could accommodate dozens of large cargo vessels simultaneously. It was precisely for this reason that the Black Pearl goddess was docked at the southern port, rather than the eastern port under his control. The 1,000 soldiers made their way to the southern district with significant commotion. Many Ris civilians and foreign merchants, far from feeling fear, trailed behind the Storm Brigade at a distance, eager to witness the unfolding spectacle. The Storm Brigade was the fastest rising mercenary group in the past 2 years and had recently become the favored child of the increasingly influential Free Trade Guild. Such a large-scale, purpose-driven operation could only indicate that something monumental was about to transpire. It was no wonder they were curious. Everyone knew that Ris was currently rife with unrest. The Free Trade Guild was on the verge of direct conflict with certain governors of Ris. It appeared that a head-on collision was imminent. However, not all Ris inhabitants were keen on spectating. Some individuals of modest means had already closed their doors and begun gathering their slaves, preparing to confront any unforeseen circumstances. The southern port bustled with a myriad of merchants and laboring slaves, resembling a colony of ants in the midst of a move. Upon the arrival of Cayman and the Storm Brigade, they headed straight for the heart of the docks. The fully armed Storm Brigade caused a considerable uproar, prompting confused slaves to abandon their tasks and retreat to the sides. Such lowly creatures, if mistakenly slain, would only yield a few silver coins to their masters of no other utility. At this moment, the colossal Black Pearl goddess lay quietly docked at the port. However, the gangplank and deck were teeming with unfamiliar faces, seemingly mercenaries rather than city guards or administrative officials under the governor's purview. Cayman narrowed his eyes, drew his long sword with a swift motion, and bellowed, "Cursed pirates, how dare you be so brazen? Invading Ris in broad daylight and plundering our merchant vessels as though the streets of Ris are lined with corpses." The Storm Brigade responded to his command, "Leave none alive. Annihilate them, the pirates shall perish." The thunderous roar of the Storm Brigade reverberated across the skies of Ris, sending ripples across the sea. As they charged towards the Black Pearl goddess, the mercenaries still aboard the ship displayed expressions of sheer terror. Although they had mentally prepared themselves to confront the Storm Brigade, the Black Cat Brigade now found only a mere 100 of their members stationed aboard the ship. The opposing forces, estimated to be nearly tenfold in number, were not only well-equipped but also brimming with high morale, leaving them with little hope of survival. A portion of the mercenaries from the Black Cat Brigade hastily leapt overboard to escape, while others stood at the edge of the deck, waving their arms and shouting in an attempt to communicate with the Storm Brigade. Suddenly, a sharp arrow sliced through the air, instantly piercing the throat of one mercenary. Cayman's expression turned icy as he knocked another arrow to his bow. With a thunderous roar, the dragon's flame descended from the heavens, igniting the mercenaries of the Black Cat Brigade who were poised to draw their bows. The air was filled with anguished screams that resonated on the deck, echoing in the ears of every terror-stricken mercenary. Chapter 21. The conflict. The temperature of the dragon's flame unleashed by Igalus was not yet excessively high, but it was sufficient to inflict excruciating pain. The cries of despair rang out continuously as the Storm Brigade ruthlessly slaughtered anyone in sight. Dozens of Black Cat Brigade mercenaries, unable to escape, were mercilessly dispatched. Their heads were severed and displayed on pikes along the dock, a grim spectacle ordered by Cayman. He had initially intended to instigate a coup after the Three Cities Alliance faced defeat at the Stone Steps Islands, providing a justified reason for the uprising that would favor the new regime. However, if a large-scale conflict erupted today, he would act decisively and launch the coup without hesitation. Circumstances had changed drastically. The Black Pearl, a flagship of the Free Trade Guild, was a symbol of their prestige and representation. If it were to be seized, the repercussions, beyond the cargo on board, were not something Common wished to confront. He desired a smoother governance in the future. Yet that did not imply he lacked the confidence to initiate a coup at present. 62 severed heads were mounted on wooden stakes along the dock. Common vociferously condemned the Governor's Council for their inaction, allowing pirates to invade the port of Riss. Merchants who had come to conduct business in Riss anxiously watched from a distance, many of them equally pressed for time. With the Storm Brigade now controlling the entire dock, they could only fret from the periphery. Soon, D'Iston, accompanied by the Black Cat Brigade, hurried to the dock. The brigade's leader, Wideland Connie, immediately spotted the gruesome display of heads at the dock, and fury engulfed his mind. His Black Cat Brigade boasted 2,000 members, now bolstered by the support of the Governor of Riss, well-equipped and possessing combat prowess that could rival the Storm Brigade. Yet, the Storm Brigade treated his mercenaries with such disdainful humiliation, clearly underestimating him. D'Iston, protected by his mercenaries, approached the Storm Brigade, ready to accuse Common of betraying Riss and openly rebelling. However, he was interrupted by Common, who stepped forward confidently. D'Iston, as the Governor of Riss, what purpose do you serve? Hundreds of pirates brazenly invaded the docks of Riss, seizing my ship, the Black Pearl Goddess, along with its cargo of fresh salt powder valued at 2 million gold dragons, which has vanished without a trace. If the Governor's Council fails to provide me with an explanation today, I shall have no choice but to establish my own assembly to safeguard the property of the free citizens of Riss from threats. Daston's expression darkened. Previously, Ivica had seized several merchant vessels from the Free Trade Guild, and Cayman had sought a resolution through Curel. This led Daston to develop a misguided perception of Cayman's insignificance, particularly after the arrival of the Black Cat Brigade. With mercenaries at his disposal, Daston completely disregarded Ivica and Cayman's cunning warnings. Furthermore, he underestimated Cayman's audacity. Although the Black Cat Brigade had commandeered the Black Pearl Goddess under his command, they had not yet touched the cargo within. Daston had promised the cargo on the Black Pearl Goddess to the Black Cat Brigade. Yet their merchant ship had yet to arrive. How could the cargo have disappeared entirely? Such an act would constitute rebellion. Should you dare to establish a new Governor's Council, Riss shall bring you to justice under the law. Daston immediately invoked Riss law, preparing to accuse Cayman of treason. However, Cayman was unfazed, deftly diverting the conversation. Nonsensical ramblings. To have a reckless individual like you as the Governor of Riss is truly a tragedy for our people. I cannot fathom what the Governor's Council is thinking. Recklessly engaging in war with the 7 kingdoms that possess dragons. Not to mention that this could provide the 7 kingdoms with a legitimate rationale to invade Riss. Let us also consider the pirates' indiscriminate plundering of Riss merchant ships. Will our vessels be left vulnerable for pirates and mercenaries to ravage at will? What Cayman seeks is not logical discourse, but rather the moral high ground, prepared to seize it preemptively. Daston's countenance darkened further. The Black Cat Brigade is not a band of pirates, but a force hired by the Governor's Council to defend Riss. Are you suggesting that the mercenaries we employ in Riss could freely abscond with our wealth? What kind of absurd reasoning is that? That is not what I meant. Then what do you mean? Tell me, where has the fresh salt powder worth 260,000 gold dragons on my ship gone? Ramon, now amplified by 2 enhancements, bellowed his inquiry, his voice resonating throughout the entire dock. There is an issue with your ship. The soldiers of the Black Cat Brigade merely went to oversee it temporarily, awaiting a search. Ah, at last, you concede. Not only do you indulge the mercenaries in their audacious theft, but you also plundered the cargo of the Black Pearl Goddess. Daston's words were swiftly distorted by Cayman, whose booming voice drowned out any retort. The onlookers from Riss and external merchants could only hear Cayman's raging roar, oblivious to Daston's protests. As the 2 individuals engaged in a heated argument, Kane, who was originally supposed to be in the Northern District, arrived with 500 followers. At that moment, the Storm Brigade and the Black Cat Brigade had amassed over 3,000 individuals at the docks. A bloody confrontation was imminent, prompting many onlookers from Riss and traveling merchants to discreetly distance themselves from the harbor. The 2 factions stood off at the port, with Destin wearing a grim expression. Regret began to seep into his thoughts. He should not have hastily detained the ship, the Black Pearl. Chapter 22. Who cannot wear a hat? Just as the standoff persisted, Ivica and Curel each arrived with their respective groups. Under the pretext of safeguarding Riss, Ivica quietly signed contracts with 4 mercenary brigades. Among them, the Black Cat Brigade was merely the first to arrive, serving to draw Common's attention. The remaining 3 brigades, namely the Grey Wolf Brigade, the Courage Brigade, and the Broken Flag Brigade, boasted a staggering total of 5,000 men. According to Avika's plan, he intended to put on a facade of seizing merchant ships while allowing the Black Cat Brigade to attract fire. In the shadows, he awaited the arrival of the other 3 brigades near Riss to devise a meticulous strategy aimed at completely eliminating Common and dividing the Free Trade Guild. Swift, precise, and ruthless, he would grant Common no opportunity for resurgence, nor allow that black dragon any time to grow. Regrettably, Avika was not the only one harboring such intentions. Common entertained similar thoughts. Even with the Storm Brigade at his disposal, he did not hesitate to contact other mercenary brigades at this critical juncture. This task was entrusted to Kirill, who was also to reach out to mercenaries under the guise of protecting Riss. Given that Common already commanded the Storm Brigade, Kirill only contacted one mercenary group, the Iron Shield Brigade. Although the Iron Shield Brigade comprised only 1,500 members, they possessed 200 cavalrymen. These horsemen were well equipped, rivaling the Storm Brigade's cavalry and capability. However, the Iron Shield Brigade had been operating in contentious territories, and their arrival in Riss would require some time. Once the Iron Shield Brigade arrived and news of a frontline defeat reached them, Common would immediately initiate a coup. Unfortunately, plans often falter against the whims of fate. Before the Iron Shield Brigade could reach Riss, Common was already locked in a standoff with Destin. What are you attempting, Common? According to the law, the penalty for treason should be the severing of limbs and feeding the fish. Avika bellowed upon his arrival, accusing Common of treason. Common clicked his tongue. Avika, despite his age, still possessed some cunning. Without hesitation, he had branded Common with a serious charge. The manner in which this accusation was levied seemed far more natural than the foolishness displayed by Destin. However, Common had resolved to decisively deal with Avika and his cohorts that day. After all, Riss had always been governed by the principle that those with wealth and might possess the authority to dictate terms. As for the potential labels he might bear, such as having risen to power through a coup, Common dismissed the thought. He would simply employ certain tactics to gradually reshape the perceptions of the people of Riss. As events have escalated to this point, he resolutely declared today that he would completely eradicate Avika and his associates. There would be no further delay. However, before taking action, the necessary protocols could not be overlooked. Cayman maximized his talent for bluster and bravado. Utilizing his commanding voice, he feigned ignorance to Avika's inquiries, directly countering him with the matter of the Black Pearl Goddess. Avika, let me make this clear. If you do not compensate the 290,000 gold dragons today, I will take matters into my own hands for vengeance. With a grand gesture, Cayman commanded his 1,500 Storm Brigade soldiers to shift their formation and assume a war-ready stance. Iglaris descended from the heavens, alighting upon the stout mast of the Black Pearl Goddess. With a youthful yet formidable roar, the dragon's presence was undeniably intimidating. I demand an answer now. Avika, will you compensate the 300,000 gold dragons, or will you evade responsibility? Avika trembled with rage, having underestimated Cayman's audacity. Just moments ago, the figure stood at over 200,000 gold dragons, and in the blink of an eye, it had inflated to 300,000. The interest on his high-interest loans did not accumulate in such a manner. Cayman, it appears you are intent on rebellion. Avika bellowed. Yet, his voice, though somewhat amplified in the governor's meeting, felt diminutive against the fortified Cayman, akin to a peasant woman confronting the leading courtesan of a brothel. Cayman chuckled derisively. With 2,000 Storm Brigade soldiers at his disposal, along with the imminent arrival of the Iron Shield Brigade, controlling the entire city of Lys would be effortless. Unbeknownst to him, Avika had enlisted the aid of 4 mercenary bands, and he was determined to settle matters with Avika today. Avika Grims and Destin conspired with pirates, betraying the interests of Lys, allowing the likes of Pirates Mill and Telosai to amass wealth while disregarding the welfare of the people of Lys, a crime deserving of the harshest punishment. Cayman was no stranger to the tactic of defamation, and he was quite adept at it. In his previous life, such accusations required a degree of logic. However, in the world of power struggles, particularly in the realm of Essos where brute strength reigns supreme, logic is unnecessary. One merely needs to eliminate the opposition and place a cap upon the corpses. For Lys, Cayman drew his sword from his waist and proclaimed loudly. For Lys. The Storm Brigade echoed in unison, maintaining their formation as they charged towards the Black Cat Brigade. At long last, Vedran awaited this moment. They not only had the advantage in numbers, but also possessed the superior weaponry provided by Avika and Destin. He envisioned beheading Cayman, transforming his head into a urinal, and fashioning the skull of the black dragon into an ornament to wear at his side. Chapter 23. The shift unleashed the outbreak of war occurred with such abruptness that Chiolier found himself momentarily paralyzed, until the soldiers of the Storm Brigade led him away. In contrast, Ivica and Destin reacted with alacrity. The instant veteran commanded the assault, they retreated to safety, their expressions betraying their grave concern. They clearly did not anticipate that Common would dare to take direct action, even going so far as to proclaim the formation of a new governor's council. "It is all your fault. Why did you seize the Black Pearl Goddess?" It was only then that Ivica remembered to settle accounts with Dustin. Dustin, sporting an awkward expression, retorted, "I merely aimed to force him into a slip-up." Who would have thought he would act so brazenly? "You fool. He commands dragons and has the Storm Legion as a standing army at his disposal. We could have comfortably secured victory, but now, due to your reckless behavior, we can only pray for the Black Cat Legion to vanquish the Storm Legion." Dustin's face darkened under the scolding, and he defensively countered, "The Black Cat Legion possesses the superior weapons we provided, and they outnumber the Storm Legion. The advantage lies with us." At that very moment, the roar of Igala's dragon echoed through the air. The two hastily turned to behold Igala's deftly evading the arrows of the Black Cat Legion, even managing to retaliate effectively with dragonfire. "Damn that beast. All dragons should be eradicated. It is truly infuriating." Ivica glared at Igala's, who was continually unleashing fire. It was unclear whether his disdain for dragons was genuine or if it stemmed purely from jealousy that they were not his mounts. Common relinquished command to Kane, a mere formality for the Storm Legion. Once divested of his command, Common donned a dragonhead helmet and brandished his spear, charging forward. The thrill of war and blood stirred him, for otherwise, he would not frequently find himself immersed in the arena. As Common boldly surged ahead, the morale of the Storm Legion soared once more. The already beleaguered Black Cat Legion soon displayed signs of imminent defeat. However, Weidland, witnessing this, felt no fear but rather exhilaration. He seized a knight's spear from his bodyguard, a manic glint flickering in his eyes. War is no trifling matter. "Let me teach you how to be a proper commander." Whispering to himself, Weidland mounted his magnificent black steed and charged toward Common on the battlefield. To him, Common was merely an unseasoned youth, recklessly leading the charge instead of remaining safely behind. Was this not an opportunity for him to turn the tide? If he could sever the opponent's head, the Storm Legion would surely crumble. The steed galloped forward, swiftly closing the distance to within 10 meters of Common. "Boy, are you ready to meet your demise?" Weidland bellowed with excitement. The madness in his eyes seemed poised to consume all, his tone brimming with arrogance and confidence in victory. Common looked up to see Weidland charging toward him. He furrowed his brow, vaguely recalling that this man was the leader of the Black Cat Legion. But why was he coming toward him? To offer himself as a sacrifice. A sudden surge of green luminescence ignited in his eyes, accompanied by a rhythmically intense heartbeat. Veins bulged in Common's right arm as he swiftly hurled his spear, accompanied by a piercing sound that sliced through the air, aimed straight at the oncoming Weidland. The robust knight's lance pierced Velen's chest, propelling his body backward for several meters before it finally came to a halt. This shocking scene left the surrounding soldiers in a state of disbelief. However, after undergoing enhancement, Carmen had significantly increased his resistance to the side effects. At that moment, he was not weakened. Rather, he advanced to retrieve the long spear and continued to navigate the battlefield with agility. Following Velen's demise, the balance of power on the battlefield shifted dramatically. The Black Cat Brigade, merely a band of mercenaries fighting for coin, descended into chaos upon the death of their leader. Scattering in all directions, Carmen chose not to order a pursuit of the Black Cat members, instead directing a dozen cavalrymen to search for the whereabouts of Ivica and Destin. There was no need for complete extermination of such a mercenary group. Their lack of cohesion meant they were likely to hide away and seek another mercenary band to join once the turmoil subsided. However, Carmen was unable to locate Ivica and Destin. Perhaps they had fled at the onset of the conflict. "Kane, secure the city gates and blockade all ports. We must find Ivica and Destin. Shirel, take a small squad to locate the city guard. Inform them that as long as they comply, I shall increase their salaries and benefits on the condition that things remain unchanged." Although the city guard lacked combat prowess, they could still maintain order within the city. Despite the Storm Brigade suffering losses of 300 men, they efficiently secured both major and minor ports of Riss. As an island city, control of the ports effectively sealed off the entire city. With each command issued by Carmen, an eerie silence enveloped the city. Households shuttered their doors, and out-of-town merchants swiftly returned to their temporary lodgings. After conferring with Shirel, Marco readily chose to pledge allegiance, voluntarily taking on the responsibility of maintaining order within the city. For Marco, working for anyone was still work, and he paid little heed to Carmen's promised increase in remuneration. In his view, it was merely a verbal assurance to win him over. He only hoped to retain his position in the end. Chapter 24. The vanished governors with the city guard maintaining basic order, the Storm Brigade began a thorough search of Riss. Unfortunately, they ultimately failed to locate Ivica and Destin. Even Binnick Solon and Anders Sonda had seemingly vanished. This meant that, aside from the remaining governor, Carmen, both Anders and Binnick were also missing. Carmen gazed at Sherelle in astonishment, clearly unprepared for this development. If only Ivica and Destin had disappeared, it would not have posed a significant issue, after all. The free trade city-states of the Essos continent did not adhere to notions of bloodline legitimacy. The phenomenon of one bloodline commanding unquestioning allegiance was unlikely. Yet, with both Anders and Binnick also gone, the situation grew increasingly intriguing. Not to mention Binnick, who had been cornered by Carmen. Was Anders so certain that he would be harmed that he chose to flee outright? That can only be considered a testament to his cleverness. Had Anders not fled, he would have been the first to face the consequences once Carmen made his move. Since they have both disappeared without a trace, it is time to issue a warrant for their arrest, citing treason and betrayal of the interests of Riss as the rationale, and disseminate it worldwide. What of Anders and Binnick? Should warrants be issued for them as well? Sheolir inquired. Carmen waved his hand dismissively. The warrant serves merely as a formality, demonstrating our legitimacy while branding Ivica and Destin as rebels. There shall be no warrants for Anders and Binnick. I will convene a new roundtable council, appointing 12 representatives, and reserving seats for the governors Anders and Binnick. Carmen pondered momentarily, then reiterated, this matter must be publicized. We will send envoys to notify the major free trade city-states. And remember to bring along some fine salt and gold liquor as gifts. The quantity is at your discretion. No problem, Sheolir nodded, as the governor of Riss. He was capable of such tasks. There is no rush on this matter. Riss is now firmly in our grasp, gradually regaining its operational capacity. What is your perspective on Riss's current political structure? Carmen gazed intently at Sheolir. He now faced two choices, to implement immediate changes or to adopt a gradual approach, reforming while waiting for Igilas to mature. Sheolir's eyes flickered. Given the choice, he would undoubtedly prefer the governor system. However, at this moment, he cast a glance at Igilas, who was voraciously devouring his meal beside Carmen, and forced a professional smile. The concentration of power in the governor system is excessively diffused, which is detrimental to the operation and development of Riss. I believe a gradual approach, modeled after the Dragon King system of Valyria, would be prudent. Carmen nodded with satisfaction. That is an excellent idea. Tonight, I shall host a banquet, inviting all the administrative officials of Riss, and we shall discuss it together. Sheolir felt a slight twitch in his eye. Carmen's audacity surpassed all expectations. This was clearly an attempt to shift the blame onto him. Nevertheless, it mattered little. As long as his granddaughter could successfully marry Grays, it would all be worth it. If he could elevate the Fox family to become the pinnacle of nobility in Riss, ensuring its legacy for thousands, or even tens of thousands of years, or perhaps even forever, he would die content. A merchant like him could only dare to dream of such generational prosperity and success for his family. With the future political transformation of Riss essentially settled, Carmen was in high spirits, having preemptively opened the ports of Riss. In just a single day, Riss underwent a complete transformation. Yet, now a day later, it was as if nothing had ever happened. In fact, with the introduction of fine salt and gold liquor, maritime trade flourished even more. Carmen divided the Storm Brigade into four, seizing control of the four major ports of Riss in the east, south, west, and north, while simultaneously initiating the recruitment of soldiers in the disputed territories. The acceptance of Carmen among the people of Riss exceeds his expectations. Some revere him as a dragon knight. Yet a greater number remain indifferent, neither harboring disdain nor adoration. This, for Carmen, is sufficient. Indeed, it aligns perfectly with his aspirations. He is confident in his ability to alter the underlying sentiments of Riss within 3 years. This task is not arduous, given that his taverns are scattered throughout the streets of Riss. However, what unsettles Carmen is the state of Riss's treasury. It is utterly barren, devoid of gold coins, and even copper ones, not to mention the absence of any vermin. In Riss, a trade tax of 10% is levied, and it is evident to whom those funds have been funneled. Nevertheless, Carmen has arranged for the assets of Ivica and Destin and Riss to be seized, thereby replenishing the treasury and ensuring the smooth functioning of the city. Although the extent of the plunder remains uncertain, he is assured it will be substantial. Ivica and Destin fled in haste, leaving behind the bulk of their possessions in Riss. Similarly, Anders and Binnick exhibited the same urgency. Yet Carmen has no intention of seizing Binnick's meager belongings, considering him merely impoverished and thus unworthy of his attention. As for Anders, he has always dispersed his wealth across various city-states. His departure serves to enhance Carmen's reputation for magnanimity. Chapter 25. From Freer to Dragon King. As evening descended upon the grand hall of the governor's palace in Riss, Carmen raised his goblet, laughter resonating through the opulent space. He had anticipated that it would take half a year to reside here. The assembled guests, having aligned themselves with Carmen, rose to toast in his honor, with Lysandro among the most exuberant. His aunt, being Carmen's legitimate wife, would now be the Dragon Queen, elevating his own status and promising innumerable advantages for the Roga family business. Lysandro stood and proclaimed, "Riss requires its own Dragon King. Ivica and others have betrayed the interests of Riss, dragging our city into the quagmire of war. They are unworthy of this palace." Carmen, with a glint of amusement in his eyes, secretly commended the young man for his eloquence. After returning the toast, he welcomed further toasts from Chiu Lei and others. "Fallon, please bring forth the parchment I prepared, one for each individual," Carmen instructed quietly. Fallon nodded gently and discreetly departed from the banquet hall. Once she had left, Carmen surveyed the assembly of Riss's administrative officials and affluent merchants. These individuals occupy the pinnacle of Riss's power hierarchy, and any reform of the city's system must navigate through them. This occasion presents an opportune moment to gauge their reactions. Those who are to be eliminated will be, while those who can be won over will be courted. Soon, Fallon returned with a stack of parchment, distributing it to each person present. As the banquet quieted, Carmen sipped his wine and declared, "Ladies and gentlemen, I shall reorganize Riss, and together we will forge it into the most formidable free trade city-state on the eastern continent. I speak candidly, although the dragon is formidable. The ambition to transform Riss into the most powerful free trade city-state of the eastern continent undoubtedly requires the unwavering assistance of all present." After uttering these words, Carmen patiently awaited as the several dozen attendees perused the parchment in their hands. The document detailed the reorganization plan for Riss. The governor's assembly would be transformed into a round-table parliament, consisting of 12 seats in addition to Carmen, totaling 13. The round-table parliament would be presided over by a leader, who would include 2 financial representatives, 2 legal representatives, 2 military and political representatives, 2 intelligence representatives, 2 administrative representatives, and 2 executive representatives. The 12 members, comprising 6 principal and 6 deputy representatives, would be directly accountable to the leader, overseeing all affairs of Riss. The leader would wield the ultimate authority within Riss. This administrative model bears some resemblance to that of Westeros, albeit with the monarch replaced by a leader and the court ministers supplanted by representatives. Initially, Carmen contemplated directly adopting the model of a Dragon King with a court council. However, he ultimately opted for the combination of a leader and a round-table assembly. The primary reason for this decision was that Igilas had yet to mature, and the dragon's advantages on the battlefield could not be fully realized. He feared that declaring himself Dragon King might provoke a united front from Meereen, Tyrosh, and even Volantis, as these city-states were once colonies of the Valyrian Dragon Kings. Despite their claims of being the daughters or bastards of Valyria, should Carmen assert himself as Dragon King to govern Riss, they would undoubtedly rise in opposition. Currently, Igilas had a limited role in large-scale conflicts. Once Igilas reached adulthood, and with 2 or 3 growing young dragons in tow, it would be the moment for Carmen to establish the Dragon King's lineage. With Riss now under his control, the first phase of the plan had been accomplished. The most crucial task ahead was to secure a period of stable development. Soon, a variety of expressions flickered across Carmen's gaze: surprise, furrowed brows, contemplation, each one distinct. Carmen committed each expression to memory, particularly noting those who frowned, signaling discontent, and would keep them under close observation. "I find this reorganization plan commendable and feasible. Such consolidation will undoubtedly enhance Riss's administrative efficiency, bringing the day closer when it becomes the most powerful free trade city-state in Essos." Quilleril was the first to voice his support for Carmen's proposal, and Carmen readily connected with him. After all, they had resolved to align themselves with Carmen, making any lack of support at this juncture the most foolish of decisions. Lysandra, noticing that someone had expressed support before her, felt a twinge of annoyance. She had been engrossed in the parchment and momentarily forgotten to declare her stance. "I too find this reorganization plan commendable. A wise and exceptional leader is more than capable of guiding Riss to become the most powerful free trade city-state in Essos, far surpassing Bravos and Volantis." In affirming the reorganization plan, Lysandra also took the opportunity to flatter Carmen, with a smile gracing his lips. Carmen finally comprehended the reason behind Lysandra's ability to elevate the destitute Roga family from its misfortunes. Such words were sweetly spoken, veiled compliments laced with flattery. Although Carmen was well aware that Lysandro's praise was insincere, it was difficult for him to suppress his delight, such as human nature. Following the lead of Quirrell and Lysandro, Others, whether genuinely or feignedly, began to extol the virtues of the Reformation of Rhys, with the former governor and the patriarch of the Roga family at the helm. The banquet brimmed with the intricacies of human relationships. Chapter 26. Egalian, the true dragon yet remains. In the 3rd month of the 106th year, the sun blazed fiercely, and temperatures soared to unprecedented heights. However, the geographical advantages of Rhys, situated upon an island, afforded a relatively cool atmosphere within the city. A month had elapsed since the turmoil in Rhys, and normalcy had been restored. Common assumed the role of the head of Rhys. He appointed Lysandro as the Grand Minister of Finance, and designated Lysandro's brother, Drazek, as the Minister of Finance. Subsequently, Kuril was appointed as the Grand Minister of Administration. Marco was named the Military and Political Minister, while the Grand Military and Political Minister was entrusted to Kane, the Vice-Captain of the Storm Brigade. To everyone's astonishment, Common assigned both the Grand Minister of Intelligence and the Minister of Intelligence to Johanna Swen. Ultimately, Common feigned seriousness as he appointed Anders as the Grand Minister of Justice and Binnick as the Minister of Justice. He conveyed messages to all city-states, expressing his anticipation for Anders and Binnick's return to Rhys to assume pivotal roles in the Round Table Council. Once the fundamental positions were established, Rhys commenced its normal operations, with a surge in the influx of merchants. In addition to the daily exports of soap, fresh salt, and gin, the overall reduction in taxes attracted even more traders. Witnessing the astonishing speed at which stability returned to Rhys, Common could not help but feel pleased with his decision to initiate a coup d'etat. He had overestimated the citizens' recognition of the governor's council. It seemed that even without the dragon or media backing, the people of Rhys would remain indifferent. Life would continue as it always had, and as long as the new rulers of Rhys were tolerable, they would harbor no dissent. In the Rhys Palace, within the council chamber, Common entrusted Rhys to Kuril, urging him to work diligently, yet not overexert himself. He advised Kuril to consult with Kane, Drazek, Marco, and Johanna whenever necessary. Common poured a glass of wine and handed it to Kuril, who chuckled in response. Rest assured, I am not one to tire easily. How long do you and Lysandro plan to remain in the disputed lands? Kuril inquired after accepting the glass. I do not know. In any case, I shall not be returning to Rhys frequently. Perhaps once Igalus matures, my visits will become more regular, Common replied. Do not overwork yourself. You are still young. Merely in your 50s. Young Grace will need your assistance to solidify her rule in the future. Upon hearing Common's words, a glimmer of joy and satisfaction flickered in Kuril's eyes. Once the Roger family and Cayman shifted their focus to the disputed territory, the Fox family, under his command, would soon rise to become a formidable clan in the region of Rhys. Before long, Cayman and Lysandro embarked on the monumental task of relocation. The Roger family's banks, brothels, and free trade merchant guilds, along with their factories on the small island, were all moved to the Watcher's Port in the disputed territory. This port lies directly north of Rhys and serves as the sole interaction harbor between Rhys and the lands it occupies in the disputed territory. Boasting significant potential for extensive development, Cayman planned to expand the Watcher's Port, renaming it Dragon City, and constructing a colossal port city. The establishment of Dragon City would undoubtedly impact maritime trade in Rhys. However, the diminutive island of Rhys lacked the value for deep development. In contrast, the impending transformation of the Watcher's Port not only featured a bay with immense developmental potential, but also had the vast expanse of the Essos continent as its hinterland. Particularly in the disputed territory, as long as war was absent, it presented itself as a fertile and flat expanse of land. Comparatively, although Rhys had been developed more thoroughly, the overall potential for development at the Watcher's Port was evidently greater, making it a more suitable base for diligent cultivation. Upon arriving at the Watcher's Port, Cayman immediately set about acquiring land, reclaiming all properties that had fallen into the hands of merchants. Naturally, the funds for purchasing this land were derived entirely from the assets left behind by Ivica and Destin and Rhys. Land was of paramount importance. With land, one could sustain a larger population. A populace equated to tax revenue and soldiers. If Cayman's intuition was correct, Ivica and Destin had likely fled to Myrene, while Anders had gone to Terre and Binnick to Volandis. These movements were verified by Cayman's investigations. Especially concerning Binnick, his every action was under the watchful eye of Fallon. Regrettably, the Igalus was not yet capable of human flight. Otherwise, he would have relished the opportunity to soar to Volandis and witness Binnick's expression upon discovering that his envelope had been switched. Binnick's original letter intended to unite with Senira Targaryen, orchestrating a coordinated effort to seize Rhys and its lands in the disputed territory. After Fallon and Frank handed this letter to Cayman, he meticulously crafted a new letter, imitating Binnick's handwriting. In his heart, he unleashed a torrent of venomous invectives, denouncing Synira as a wretched parasite born of the dragon lineage. Of course, Binnick might never realize that his letter had been swapped. It was highly probable that Synira would simply eliminate him. For a woman like Synira, men were mere toys, and Binnick was but the most inconspicuous tool among her many playthings. On the 7th day after establishing residence at the Watcher Esport, with the cargo ships having nearly completed their unloading, Cayman hosted a grand celebratory banquet. The bonfire blazed, casting a warm and luminous glow. Standing at the head of the gathering, Cayman raised his cup high and proclaimed, "From this moment forth, the Watcher Esport shall be officially renamed Dragon City. Cayman Soren has become a relic of the past. I am now known as Cayman Agarian. Let it be known that this will also be the tongue of the Agarian family, for the true dragon still exists." Hiss. Icarus, standing beside Cayman, let out a roar before unleashing a jet of inky dragon flames that soared into the night sky. Applause erupted. A thunderous ovation filled the air as all present offered their cheers in celebration. Whether a few of them were genuine in their congratulation or merely feigned, Cayman remained oblivious and indifferent. In the days to come, the controversial land would undoubtedly transform into his private sanctuary. His empire would rise, brick by brick, from this contentious territory. Chapter 27. Demographics. As dawn broke, casting a pale light across the sky, Cayman awoke from his stupor. With a yawn, he tucked the blanket around Sandrolia before rising alone. Marwan had already prepared a sumptuous breakfast. "Marwan," Cayman said, taking a bite of his sandwich. "I am here," Marwan replied. "How has your practice of the dishes I mentioned been progressing?" "I have nearly mastered the small meals you suggested. If you wish to partake, I can prepare them now." Marwan referred to breakfast items such as noodles, dumplings, buns, and soy milk. While the various sandwiches made from soft, tender white bread were delightful, one could not subsist solely on them. Cayman, having the means, sought to explore culinary delights, the more extravagant, the better. As Cayman and Marwan engaged in their culinary discourse, Farron approached. "Master, Lord Sandro requests an audience," she said with a bow. Cayman gestured for her to allow him entry. "And you, how far along are you?" "Almost 4 months, master." "Very well, pass your current duties to Besali. I grant you a year's maternity leave, with your salary unchanged." Gratitude shone in Farron's eyes. Not only had Cayman restored her status as a free person, but he had also elevated her to one of the head maids, ensuring she received a substantial monthly stipend. Aegon Fachetto had similarly regained his freedom and been appointed as one of the male stewards. However, as her pregnancy progressed, her work became increasingly cumbersome. To her surprise, Cayman had proactively granted her a year of maternity leave. In truth, Cayman's benevolence was not reserved solely for her. All female slaves under his command who became pregnant were entitled to a year's maternity leave, accompanied by monthly allowances for meat, eggs, and milk. Cayman placed immense value on the birth rate of newborns, wishing for the population under his care to double within a year. Lord Sandro rushed in, and Cayman signaled for him to take a sip of milk and speak at his leisure. "Uncle, the arrangements you requested have been completed. The staff has begun the population count, which should take approximately 3 days. 3 days, that is acceptable. Do not forget the matter of renaming, once the population is tallied. This land shall be designated as Dragon's Domain, distinctly separating it from Riss." With a grand wave of his hand, Carmen divided the 2 territories. Henceforth, it would no longer be a contested land subordinate to Riss, but rather Riss that would be subordinate to Dragon's Domain. The city of Riss houses nearly 300,000 individuals, yet the actual number of Riss inhabitants is fewer than 100,000. The remainder consists of transient merchants and a variety of slaves residing in Riss. The population of the contested land should be even greater, albeit more chaotic, with an amalgamation of indigenous peoples, slaves, and migrants from beyond. Only after the census is completed can Carmen effectively summon laborers to expand true Dragon City. One wonders what the Governor's Council has been occupied with these years, to the extent that they lack even a population register, forcing us to start anew. Lysandro sat beside Carmen, his mouth filled with grievances. During this period, he was not only preoccupied with the relocation of the bank, but also tasked with various statistical duties. Carmen gestured for a servant to bring forth another serving of breakfast. "The Governor's Council has been too busy seeking personal gain to address such troublesome matters," he chuckled. "Your aunt will also join us for breakfast shortly, so let us dine together." "Ah, then I shall not hold back," Lysandro replied with a grin, never missing an opportunity to strengthen his rapport with Carmen. The two began discussing the expansion plans for True Dragon City, intending to first extend the territory of Watchport fivefold. However, neither of them possessed the expertise in construction, so they could only outline a rough plan. The specifics of the construction would have to await the arrival of the skilled slaves. There are not many skilled laborers, primarily due to their lack of economic value. Yet this suited Carmen perfectly, for he had a penchant for architectural slaves. Ultimately, at a price only 5 times that of ordinary slaves, he acquired 87 skilled laborers. These 87 would be sufficient to lead a construction crew of thousands. Once the masters trained their apprentices, the workforce could further expand. "My lord, the lady has arrived." As the maid's announcement faded, Santoria entered with Valyria, yawning as she walked, clearly having had a restless night. Even Valyria appeared somewhat listless, dark circles shadowing her eyes. Upon noticing Carmen's warm gaze fixed upon her, Santoria rolled her eyes. Last night, she had nearly encountered the goddess of desire, and even now, she felt a lingering discomfort. Did they truly think she was incapable of mischief? Valyria stepped forward to pull out a chair and set the table for Santoria, ignoring Carmen. Santoria turned to Lysandro. "Have you found what I asked for?" At the mention of this, Lysandro's eyes brightened, nodding vigorously. "I took matters into my own hands." "How could there be any issue?" he replied, brimming with pride. "Not only did I procure 2 Valyrian steel swords, but I also uncovered a magnificent ruby." Lysandro gestured to emphasize his point. "Approximately the size of Lisa's bosom. What do you think?" Lisa is the star attraction of the perfumed garden. Commanding 20 silver coins for a single night, her figure reminiscent of majestic mountains. Sandrolia was somewhat taken aback, not expecting that Lysandro would exceed his task by procuring 2 Valyrian steel swords and a colossal ruby. Chapter 28. Bloodworms. What do you intend to do with these items? Carmen inquired with curiosity, perhaps already suspecting Sandrolia's intentions, merely seeking confirmation. "Of course, they are for the study of magic. I have discovered that certain materials, such as Valyrian steel and rubies, are more conducive to conducting and harboring magical energies. Thus, I aspire to forge a necklace from Valyrian steel and the ruby." Initially, she had merely requested Lysandro to acquire a bit of Valyrian steel and a fine ruby. To her astonishment, the once disobedient Lysandro had now secured not just the steel, but 2 swords and a magnificent ruby. If it is indeed as large as Lisa's bosom, then it can truly be deemed colossal. Sandrolia glanced at Valyria, contemplating crafting a necklace for her as well with the remaining materials. The young girl's talent appeared to surpass her own. Already able to communicate with the magical energies in the air at such a tender age. "By the way, may I dismantle a chair?" Sandrolia suddenly asked. "Dismantle a chair? Which chair?" "Just go ahead," Carmen replied, momentarily taken aback by her query. "I wish to take apart that set of golden heartwood furniture," Sandrolia admitted somewhat bashfully. "You are my wife, though we are not yet wed. Our bond is unmistakable. Just proceed as you wish. However, if you desire golden heartwood, I could arrange for the merchant guild to assist in retrieving some." Ever since the breaking of the barrier, Sandrolia's spirits had noticeably lifted, and she excitedly asked, "But isn't the export of golden heartwood prohibited from the Midsummer Isles? Can we truly acquire freshly felled golden heartwood?" "Indeed, while the exportation of golden heartwood is forbidden. Where there is gold, anything can be obtained, albeit at a price. Many from the Midsummer Isles have thrived on the smuggling of golden heartwood. I suspect they intentionally enforce this ban to artificially inflate prices." Carmen harbored this suspicion, for despite the Midsummer Isles' proclamations against exporting golden heartwood, a significant quantity still managed to flow beyond its shores. Sandrolia bit her lip and finally expressed her gratitude. "Thank you. We are married. We are one." Thus expressing thanks feels somewhat distant. Lost in thought, she subtly crossed her legs and returned to her meal, ceasing further conversation. Carmen glanced at her but chose not to speak, focusing on his breakfast. Although Sandrolia's emotions had flourished considerably, it was merely in comparison to her previous demeanor. As Carmen savored his breakfast, flames engulfed the Stairway Islands, which were known to have only 2 named islands amidst countless unnamed ones. Sizzle. The piercing roar of a colossal dragon reverberated across an uncharted island. The pirates named this isle, located at the westernmost edge of the Staircase Islands, Shadowstone Isle. Torrential flames from the dragon cascaded down, causing the soldiers of the 3 cities' alliance to scatter in terror. The fearsome scarlet beast descended from the heavens, its mouth spewing forth an unrelenting torrent of dragonfire. Those unfortunate enough to be engulfed by the flames were instantly reduced to ashes. Even those who escaped the inferno were left with but a limb or 2, their fates almost as dire. The horror of an adult dragon was vividly manifested in that moment, as the terrifying roar of Kalakshia echoed throughout Shadowstone Isle. Just then, another dragon's roar erupted, prompting Kalakshia to gaze upward. A young dragon, shimmering in pale silver gray, soared through the sky, mercilessly unleashing silver flames upon the archers lurking on the mountain peaks. The sea serpent, Kalakshia, was evidently exhilarated as it unleashed its dragonfire for the first time on the battlefield. To the dragon's eyes, the archers concealed on the barren summits appeared as mere lambs awaiting slaughter, a sight both laughable and absurd. Under Daemon's command, Kalakshia consciously drove the soldiers of the Three Cities Alliance in a singular direction. To the north, Count Corlys Valyrian's fleet had awaited this moment for quite some time. The Sea Serpent, Corlys Valyrian, Earl of Driftmark, Master of the Tides, and Lord of Driftwood and High Tide, commanded the most formidable naval fleet in the Seven Kingdoms, alongside 3 dragons, rivaling the might of House Targaryen. However, for the past 3 years, Krahazdar and his lieutenants, Tyros and others, had become increasingly greedy and brazen. Corlys suffered greatly from their tyranny, as his family's maritime trade faced severe repercussions. Ultimately, he allied with Daemon Targaryen, who yearned to prove himself through deeds of valor, and they instigated the War of the Staircase Islands. Corlys, weapon in hand, personally led the charge, flanked by several young warriors. "How long have you been a knight, Waymond?" Corlys inquired of the youth beside him, his nephew, Waymond Valyrian. 10 years, my lord," Waymond replied in a subdued tone. "This shall be your first official war as a knight. Make sure to learn well. You have great potential." Corlys held a deep fondness for this nephew, brave, fearless, and a fine candidate for knighthood. With a little guidance, he would become a valuable ally to Laenor in the future. Upon hearing Corlys' praise, Waymond stood a little taller, pride illuminating his face. Such commendation came from the Sea Serpent and Master of the Tides. How could he not feel proud? Chapter 29. Beloved daughter. Just as Waymond basked in pride, Kalakshia and sea smoke appeared nearby. Beneath the feet of the 2 dragons, a throng of soldiers fled in panic. The sporadic bursts of dragonfire behind them instilled a profound dread, rendering them oblivious to the ambush laid by Corlys ahead. Recognizing the opportune moment, Corlys raised his weapon and issued the charge command. Kill. In the region of Corlys, not only does he command his navy, but he also gathers the noble scions and rogues through Daemon's personal charisma. Under the combined onslaught of the dragons and Corlys, the soldiers of the Tri-City Alliance quickly fell by the wayside. The 300 stationed on Shadowstone Island stood no chance against the formidable fleets of dragons and Corlys. Or rather, they were merely cannon fodder arranged by Kralhastral. The only purpose of these 300 was to gauge the strength of Daemon and Corlys' forces, as well as to ascertain the dragons' combat tactics and destructive capabilities. Holding a severed head, Waymond wore a scornful smile, regarding them as nothing more than a band of scoundrels slightly superior to pirates. Daemon dismounted from Carrix's back and approached Corlys. "This marks our first victory. Let us celebrate on the island today and assault Bloodstone Island tomorrow." "No problem. Our supplies are still ample. This war has only just begun, and Corlys has brought substantial provisions. Moreover, there is the continuous financial support from Aegon I. Thus, they lacked nothing in terms of resources, and even had a slight edge financially. As long as Daemon refrained from causing trouble for Aegon in the court of the Seven Kingdoms, he would be more than willing to finance Daemon's endeavors. "My prince, my lord," a scout reported, 3 merchant ships are anchored offshore, flying no flags. Daemon furrowed his brow. "What do you mean, no flags? Are those vessels from the Kingdom of the Three Whores providing supplies to the defenders of Shadowstone Island?" Waymond also frowned slightly. "Perhaps we should investigate. If those ships do belong to the Kingdom of the Three Whores, we could save the resources for tonight's celebration." Corlys smiled, hoping that the 3 ships hailed from that very kingdom. "Waymond, take a few swift ships around to the rear of those merchant vessels. Should they indeed be from the Kingdom of the Three Whores, ensure they do not escape." "Understood." Corlys instructed his eldest son, Lannister. "Keep an eye on them from the skies." Lannister nodded in acknowledgement and returned to the back of sea smoke, soaring into the air. Soon, Daemon and Corlys arrived at the coastline indicated by the scout. They spotted the 3 merchant ships anchored not far away, with a dozen individuals disembarking, including fully armed soldiers. Numerous others were busy transporting goods ashore, while a flag depicting a black dragon on a blue background, surrounded by sun and moon, fluttered in the wind. Daemon and Corlys exchanged glances. What house does that blue dragon flag belong to? Corlys furrowed his brow, struggling to recall any faction that bore such a banner. Daemon shook his head and drew Dark Sister. "We shall find out by going over there." The 2 swiftly encircled the strangers engaged in transferring goods. "Where do you hail from? Are you unaware that a battle is underway here?" Corlys called out loudly. Subsequently, in a hushed tone, he whispered to Daemon. "The one at the forefront, with golden hair and blue eyes, embodies the quintessential traits of Arisen. It is almost certain that he is a supporter from the Kingdom of the Three Harlots." A glimmer of excitement flickered in Daemon's eyes at these words, her right hand gripping the Dark Sister tightly, her entire being brimming with anticipation, for she was insatiably bloodthirsty. Daemon lifted her longsword and responded softly, "We hail from Riss." "My lords." Frank bowed slightly, expressing his honor to represent their leader in this visit. Corlys, initially relaxed, now furrowed his brow. It was evident that the visitors were aware of his and Damon's identities, and had specifically come to see them. This was becoming intriguing. While a battle raged on, they arrived bearing 3 ships' worth of supplies. Moreover, Colas was not entirely ignorant of risks. It had always been governed by the governor's council. When had a leader emerged? Who is your leader? Colas pressed, seizing the crux of the matter. Frank glanced at the supplies being unloaded and replied, "It is a long story. This setting is not conducive to such a discussion. Shall we find a more suitable place to converse?" After a moment's contemplation, Colas acquiesced. Confident in their dragons and troops, unafraid of any trickery from the visitors. "Follow me then. What do these crates contain?" "Fresh salt, fine spirits, exquisite soaps, cured meats, sausages, various provisions," Damon remarked, casting a sidelong glance at Frank, before instructing a nearby soldier to inspect the cargo. Frank, seeing no need to object, allowed the inspection, confident in the abundance of mere supplies on board. "Come along," Colas beckoned, leading Frank towards the encampment on Shadowstone Island. "You must be Count Colas Valyrian of the Sea Serpent." "Indeed, I am Colas. My family has recently been significantly influenced by your Tri-City alliance," he replied without turning, his tone neutral, yet laced with subtle barbs. Frank chuckled lightly. "Tylos and Mir are indeed greedy, yet we Riss are the cherished offspring of Valyria." Chapter 30. Making a friend. Frank's words caused Colas and Damon to pause in their tracks, both taken aback by the envoy's candidness. Upon arriving at the encampment, Frank suddenly halted. With a creaking sound, a massive crimson beast was feasting on a nearby hill, surrounded by a mountain of corpses and goats. Frank gulped. This dragon was far larger than Igarus, formidable and terrifying. It was no wonder that the Binnick father and son coveted the dragon in Common's possession. Alas, both Binnicks were fools, toyed with by Common at his whim. "Ah, this must be the bloodworm Calaxio, truly as fearsome and powerful as the leader described," Frank marveled. "Is your leader well acquainted with us?" Colas retorted. As they spoke, the group settled into the military tent. "Very much so, more than you might imagine. And he understands the reasons behind the eruption of the Stone Steppes Islands War," Frank responded. "Our leader firmly believes that the Stone Steppes archipelago should never have descended into war. Peaceful trade is undoubtedly the aspiration of all." "Do they understand more than we imagine?" Although Damon often displays a carefree demeanor, he is far from a fool. As for Corlys, there is no need to elaborate. He is a shrewd old fox. At this moment, both men sensed something significant. The purpose of this visit likely harbored deeper intentions. "Let us dispense with pleasantries and speak plainly. Time is precious." Damon, clearly running short on patience, detests those who indulge in obfuscation. "Therefore, I shall be straightforward. My name is Frank, and I have come to discuss the prospect of an alliance with you both. Our leader is acutely aware of the importance of stability in the Stone Steppes archipelago and is willing to support your war efforts, considering it a gesture of friendship." Damon erupted in laughter, scoffing. "Corlys is a member of the Tri-City Alliance. Why should I trust you or accept your aid? Simply based on our leader," Frank asserted confidently. Damon's dwindling patience reached its limit, and he nearly ordered Frank to leave. However, Corlys displayed a greater reserve of patience. He interjected, inquiring about the identity of the leader Frank mentioned. "Who is your leader?" "As far as I know, Liss has always been governed by a council of governors, with no such figure as a leader. The council consists of a collection of self-serving merchants, whereas our leader is different. True dragon blood courses through his veins. Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen is our leader's mother." Upon hearing this, Damon straightened in his seat, his brow furrowing. The illegitimate child of Rhaenyra Targaryen? He had not anticipated that the leader in question was a contemporary Targaryen descendant. "Please watch your language, Prince Damon. The moment our leader hatched from the dragon egg fossil, he became a true dragon, rather than the illegitimate child you speak of." Corlys immediately grasped the crux of the matter. With a hint of disbelief, he asked, "Are you saying that your leader hatched a dragon from a dragon egg fossil?" The name Igalus was familiar to both Corlys and Damon, as it belonged to a deity of Valyria. Valyrian, Vagr, Myrixes, and even Corlicus were all named after Valyrian deities. The notion of hatching a dragon from a fossilized egg was utterly unprecedented. There had never been any record of such an event. Frank chuckled softly, producing a black dragon scale from his cloak. "This is an old scale shed by Igalus during his growth. If you still doubt, feel free to send someone to Liss to inquire further. You may even witness Igalus soaring through the skies." Damon and Corlys exchanged glances once more. If what Frank claimed were true, it would mean that a dragon rider had emerged on the continent of Essos. Moreover, he is a bastard of the Targaryen lineage, a cousin of Daemon and an uncle to Laenor. Were he merely an illegitimate child, it would be a matter of little consequence. However, if he possesses the ability to command dragons, we must proceed with utmost caution. Frank, my esteemed envoy, I believe we can engage in a thorough discussion, Corlys proclaimed, calling for provisions and wine. It would be my utmost pleasure, my lord, Frank replied with a smile, knowing that this mission was assured. The three men conversed over drinks until nightfall. Frank, however, did not linger long and seized the cover of darkness to depart from Dragonstone. After bidding Frank farewell, Corlys and Demon sat across from each other in the military camp. After a moment of silence, it was Demon who broke the stillness. Do you believe what he said is true? Corlys took a sip of his wine and replied with a chuckle. Are you inquiring about the matter of dragon egg fossils hatching? Indeed, the dragon egg fossils are mere stones, not true dragon eggs. How could they possibly yield hatchlings? The dragon eggs within Dragonstone and the dragon lairs are guarded by dragon keepers. If any were lost, it would surely provoke a stir. Does it truly matter to us whether it is genuine or not? Corlys maintained a cheerful demeanor, with Rhaenys now at the helm of the governance structure. Her authority surpasses that of a king. Moreover, Caemon himself bears the blood of House Targaryen, which is sufficient for our purposes. The Tri-City Alliance is no longer a monolithic entity. Even if Frank were to deceive us and Caemon is not a dragon rider, what difference would it make? As long as Rhaenys refrains from engaging in the conflict over the Stepstones, we can at least alleviate a third of our burdens and secure victory in the war at minimal cost. Demon inhaled deeply and rose to leave the tent. Corlys observed Demon's departing figure with a tranquil expression. Although both he and Demon shared the objective of seizing the Stepstones, their motivations were fundamentally divergent. Corlys desired a peaceful Stepstones to facilitate his family's maritime trade, ensuring its smooth operation. In contrast, Demon yearned for validation. Viserys had proclaimed his daughter Rhaenyra as Princess of Dragonstone, naming her as the heir to the Iron Throne, while exiling Demon. This undoubtedly struck a deep blow to Demon and ignited within him an urgent need to prove himself. In truth, Corlys held no particular fondness for Demon. Yet he bore no animosity either. He was solely focused on preserving his family's business. However, it appeared that Corlys had encountered an even more promising ally. A natural one at that. Lifting a small glass vial from the table and gazing at the fine powder within, a glint of excitement sparked in Corlys' eyes. This coarse salt was no mere spice. It was, in fact, gold. Corlys summoned Vaymond. Vaymond, I have a task for you. Please, instruct me, my lord, and I shall ensure its completion. Vaymond stood tall and resolute. Take a contingent of men and, under the cover of night, set forth towards Rhaenys. I shall compose a letter, and you must deliver it directly into the hands of Caemon of House Valyrian. Rest assured. Chapter 31. Distant alliances and close attacks. In the 5th month of the year 106, temperatures continued to rise. The world resembled a colossal steamer, perpetually boiling everything within it. In the contentious territory, the expansion of True Dragon City has officially commenced. My lord, should we recruit an additional 5,000 workers alongside the initial batch of 5,000? Lysandro inquired while perusing the account books. Yes, recruit boldly. Finances are a trivial concern. The wealth of the entire world is flowing towards us. Came the nonchalant reply from Carmen. He was utterly indifferent to monetary matters. The prices of fresh salt powder and fine spirits had soared to astronomical heights. The production of beauty soap was also steadily increasing. He was not short of funds. Moreover, the entirety of Riss's tax revenue was under Carmen's control. With greed eliminated and the boundless governor's council no longer a hindrance, Riss's annual tax revenue commenced at 600,000 gold dragons. This sum was barely sufficient for constructing True Dragon City and developing the disputed territory. However, when factoring in the income from the Free Trade Guild, the economic pressure remained quite manageable. Recent population statistics had provided Carmen with considerable surprise. Since the cessation of hostilities in 96, the contentious region had enjoyed a decade of relative peace. Now, within the territory controlled by Riss, the population had rebounded to 600,000. Approximately half were free citizens engaged in agriculture, while the other half comprised serfs bound to the estates. My lord, there is something I do not quite understand. Why do we not recruit serfs? By merely paying a modest fee to their masters, we could easily acquire a significant number of workers. Lysandro had long pondered this question. He believed hiring serfs from the estate owners to be exceedingly advantageous. Not only were the costs lower, but their upkeep was also minimal. Was this not preferable to hiring free citizens? Carmen glanced at Lysandro and replied with a casual tone, I intend to abolish slavery. It only serves to impede our rate of development. Lysandro's expression shifted slightly upon hearing this. The overall ratio of free citizens to slaves in Riss had reached 12, if not 13, making the abolition of such an entrenched system far from trivial. This seems quite challenging. You are undoubtedly more aware of Riss's situation than I. Consider the contentious territory, There are a full 300,000 serfs. If you abolish slavery, how shall we sustain them? Carmen regarded Lysandro with some surprise, not expecting such comprehensive thinking from the young man. Indeed, while abolishing slavery seemed straightforward, a mere declaration, enforcement would be another matter entirely. The real issue lay in how to provide for these 300,000 serfs. Carmen had been acquiring estates, yet their scattered nature made it impossible to consolidate them all at once. At times, he felt a sense of helplessness. Upon hearing the news of his low-priced estate acquisitions, the estate owners did not band together in resistance. Rather, they eagerly sold their properties to him. In a fleeting moment, Carmen found himself perplexed about who truly benefited from the low-priced acquisition of the estate. Meanwhile, the merchants who had hastily sold off their manors flocked to Jinlong City, inquiring about the timeline for purchasing adjacent lands. The disputed territory, characterized by its level terrain and fertile soil, promised prosperity if the pace of cultivation kept up. We could sustain not just 300,000, but even 3 million. Carmen unfurled a map, indicating a circled area. This is the estate I possess, which has already begun to gather serfs for the cultivation of surrounding wasteland. With the estate's support, the challenges of reclamation were significantly mitigated. Moreover, just 2 days prior, I meticulously segmented both Jinlong City and the disputed land. The territory we occupy has been divided into 21 distinct zones. The land held by Reese in the disputed area constitutes less than 1/3. To the far west lies the Drenner Mountains, with the Mogos Plains, the disputed woods, and the Mesoloth River stretching eastward, culminating at the easternmost point, Linsho Town. Carmen subdivided these locales into 21 regions, envisioning the establishment of a town at the heart of each, from which development would radiate outward. The blueprint for these towns was inherently tied to the estates under the aegis of the Free Trade Guild. The sites for these estates had been meticulously planned to effectively encompass all areas. Lysandro glanced at the map, unable to suppress his remark. I suspect you have been preparing for this day for quite some time, haven't you? Not at all, Carmen replied with a smile. I still require a villain to serve as a stepping stone. A villain? A stepping stone? Lysandro echoed, somewhat bewildered. Indeed. Do you remember the envoy I dispatched to Bravos a few days ago? Of course I do. At the time, I advised against seeking a loan from the Iron Bank, suggesting instead that you wanted Bravos to play the role of this villain? Lysandro's expression was one of astonishment. Bravos often found itself at odds with Pintos over the issue of slavery. They are in desperate need of a non-slave-holding ally in the realm of free trade. To abolish slavery under the pretext of a loan is far more advantageous than issuing a direct command myself. Lysandro's brow remained furrowed, still unconvinced. It sounds somewhat plausible. But borrowing from the Iron Bank comes with exorbitant interest rates. With that money, we could expand our army by 3,000. This is fundamentally different. Carmen shook his head. The primary purpose of seeking a loan from Bravos is to prepare for an alliance. And rest assured, the interest on the funds borrowed from the Iron Bank will not be excessive. Bravos is in search of allies, and Reese represents the optimal choice. By allying with us, they not only gain a non-slave holding partner, but also gain leverage over Volandis. Unless the current Sea King of Bravos is a fool, he would certainly not forfeit the opportunity to ally with us. Lysandro scratched his head, pondering for a moment before speaking. In that case, we will be facing simultaneous pressure from Tyros, Mir, and Volandis. Isn't that a rather daunting prospect? He was perplexed as to why an alliance with Bravos was imperative. Bravos is too distant from us. During a critical moment, I fear they may prove to be of little assistance. Why do we not foster a cordial relationship with our natural allies, Tyrosh and Mir? Ivica and Deistin are currently in Mir. The prolonged silence from Mir suggests they may be waiting for us to initiate negotiations, hoping to extract a favorable deal. If we can cultivate a good rapport with them, perhaps they would willingly hand over Ivica and Deistin, thereby eliminating future threats. As Lysandro babbled on, Carmen revealed his signature squinting smile. The abolition of slavery is not an immediate concern. We still need to construct true Dragon City, repair roads, and expand the estate into a small town. There is much to be done. Thus, we can afford to negotiate slowly with Bravos. They are more eager than we are, desperately seeking a suitable ally to counter Volandis. As long as the funds are sufficient and the interest agreeable, everything can be arranged. Moreover, we possess sought-after commodities such as fresh salt powder. Surely Bravos would find that enticing. As for Ivica and Deistin, they are merely two insignificant rats. What can they, or even Tyrosh and Mir, do against Volandis? They are two war-torn harlots and a wretched woman who claims to be the daughter of Valyria. By the time they decide to confront me, my sword will have been sharpened long ago. In truth, Carmen harbors a degree of disdain for these free trade city-states. In this age of slow communication, he is confident he can outmaneuver them. Within 3 years, he will demonstrate to Tyrosh, Mir, In Volantis, the meaning of distant diplomacy and local aggression. Chapter 32. Old Sam, just as Common was conversing with Lysandro, a melodious chime suddenly rang out. It was mealtime. Let us dine at the construction site today. Very well, I shall have a separate meal prepared for you. Lysandro turned to leave. Common remained behind, continuing to monitor the progress of construction. True Dragon City is envisioned as a pseudo-square city, covering approximately 45,000 acres, with Watcher's Port serving as the southern gateway. Additionally, there will be 2 port city gates and 5 intercity gates. It will take several years to complete True Dragon City, and construction has been underway for nearly a month, having only just finished the foundation of Watcher's Port. Leader, welcome to supervise the construction progress. A somewhat aged voice called out from behind. It was Sam Castro, the principal overseer of True Dragon City, a senior slave from Slaver's Bay, who had been sold to Common due to his advanced age. Yet, Common did not mind Sam's age. On the contrary, greater age signifies richer experience. As he worked, he could also mentor apprentices, thus expanding the workforce. Old Sam, did I not grant you permission to rest? What are you wondering about? Common frowned slightly, concerned that the heat might be too much for the old man. Fear not, leader. I have endured harsher conditions than this. There is no need to worry about my health. I am well aware of my limits. Old Sam, clad only in coarse trousers and glistening with sweat, replied. Just keep that in mind. I spent 3 gold dragons to bring you here, Common reminded him. Hello, Mango Novel Network. As you diligently mentor your disciples, once you have successfully nurtured 21 qualified apprentices, I shall establish a construction bureau and appoint you as its director. Presently, Carmen has become quite adept at weaving grand illusions, effortlessly crafting a dream for the 50-year-old Old Sam. Having reached the age of 50, Old Sam has often been the recipient of such fanciful promises from his previous master, and thus he took Carmen's words with a grain of salt. To speak candidly, he has consumed more illusions than he has constructed walls and buildings. Nevertheless, gratitude must be expressed. Thank you for your consideration, my esteemed leader. Old Sam bowed respectfully. As for cultivating 21 apprentices, that is the simplest of tasks. With the True Dragon City still under construction, it serves as a ready-made textbook. With the right materials, learning becomes swift. Carmen encouraged Old Sam with a pat on the shoulder, disregarding the sweat glistening on his hands. How long do you estimate it will take to complete True Dragon City? Approximately 5 years. The compensation you offer is exceedingly generous, and no one wishes to forfeit this employment. The recruited workers earn 200 copper coins a day, not to mention 3 meals, including a hearty lunch. This is far more lucrative than farming. Were it not for Carmen's stipulation that each family can only send 1 member, these laborers would be eager to bring their entire household workforce. However, securing long-term employment is no easy feat. They are organized into groups of 20. And if their work ethic falters, they risk dismissal at any moment. Carmen has appointed numerous foremen and often conducts discreet observations himself. Previously, he lamented how leaders scrutinized him incessantly. Now that he is the boss, he feels compelled to monitor every laborer diligently, even ensuring that no donkey cart remains idle. Carmen paused for a moment before stating, I will continually recruit more individuals. Their experience will grow, and the construction pace will undoubtedly accelerate. Indeed, the more laborers there are, the faster the progress. How many do you plan to recruit in total? Around 20,000, in batches. In 2 months, the spring wheat harvest season will arrive. At that time, I will send these individuals back for a while. Food security is paramount. It is now May, with spring wheat set to be harvested in mid-July, leaving us with approximately 2 months. Although the yield per acre from these farmers falls short of that from estate farmlands, the sheer quantity necessitates that no mishaps occur. Not only must their food remain secure, but Carmen is also prepared to invest in purchasing grain, ideally filling every granary to capacity. As Carmen and Sam continued their conversation, they soon arrived at the site where the laborers gathered for their meals. Dubbed the dining area, it was, in truth, merely a corner piled with construction debris. The laborers huddled in small groups, seated atop the refuse. Upon noticing Carmen's arrival, they set down their bowls and utensils, greeting him warmly. The toil of everyone is commendable. As temperatures rise, I shall arrange for the provision of brine starting tomorrow. I express my heartfelt gratitude for your generosity and benevolence. Esteemed one, may the deities bless you. The laborers are exceedingly joyful. If they could receive a bowl of brine in the afternoon, their vigor during the subsequent work would surely be enhanced, preventing any sign of fatigue. In truth, they are already quite content. Their midday meals are replete with saltiness, and they are also served a bowl of rich meat broth. Previously, they might have gone months without tasting a single bowl of broth, yet now they can indulge in it daily. Observing the enthusiastic cheers of the laborers, Carmen smiled and remarked, there is no need for such excitement. as your leader. It is my duty to procure a better life for you. In fact, the salt they consume is merely the byproduct of the saltworks. Nevertheless, even these scraps are far more delectable and wholesome than the coarse yellow salt they previously endured. Chapter 33. It turns out to be him, the valiant Wymond. To be your subjects is our honor, esteemed leader. A robust man bowed respectfully to Carmen. Although they are nominally all citizens of Riss, they inhabit a realm entirely distinct from the free citizens residing within the city of Riss. The city, perched upon an island, is the undeniable heart of power. Those dwelling in the disputed territories find themselves under Riss's dominion solely due to conquest. At times, the tax officials of Riss could scarcely be bothered to collect taxes from the disputed lands, focusing primarily on the estate owners therein. However, with Carmen's arrival, the political epicenter has shifted to the Morgos Plain. For the nearby farmers, this could very well be the most fortunate event of their lives. Of the 600,000 surrounding inhabitants of Riss, at least 90% reside in the Morgos Plain and the contested woodlands. As Carmen develops these areas, these individuals will rise like piglets on the wind, soaring to new heights. I am equally delighted to be your leader. You are the most genuine people, and you embody the future of Riss. Carmen approached and patted the broad-shouldered man on the shoulder with an expression of satisfaction. In truth, they are far from mere simple farmers. As the saying goes, impoverished mountains and treacherous waters breed cunning folk. This group would not hesitate to sacrifice 10 lives over a single well. Carmen refers to them as the most genuine people merely to win their hearts. Speaking in flattering tones, as long as they comply, in Carmen's eyes, they are indeed the epitome of simplicity. Just then, the distinctive roar of Icarus echoed forth, descending from the heavens in an instant. Months have passed, and Icarus has grown considerably, expanding by over half a meter each month on average. The juvenile stage of a dragon is the fastest growing phase in its life cycle, with growth rates gradually slowing after the age of 5. Now, Icarus measures over 2 meters in length, including its tail. I believe that within a few years, I shall soar through the clouds upon the majestic back of Igalus. The laborers have encountered Igalus on numerous occasions, yet each time the great beast presents itself, they cannot help but observe with cautious reverence. They marvel at the divine magnificence that could conjure such a formidable creature. The dragon scales of Igalus shimmer with a metallic brilliance under the sun, while its golden slit-like eyes gaze disdainfully at the surrounding workers. Whether due to the essence of the golden saplings or the ancient dragon egg from which Igalus was birthed, it exhibits a remarkable intelligence that surpasses even that of ordinary dragons. This exceptional intellect has bred an air of arrogance in Igalus. Apart from Carmen, it regards all others as mere contemptible bipedal slaves. After affectionately nuzzling Carmen, Igalus surveyed the workers, its expression swiftly shifting to one of ferocity. The rapid transformation of the dragon's visage left those nearby momentarily stunned, unable to react. Carmen affectionately scratched Igalus's neck. You all continue your meal. I shall take my leave. With a wave, Carmen and Igalus departed from the workers' dining area. Upon returning to his temporary lodgings in Watcher's Port, a sumptuous lunch awaited him. Soft white bread, succulent roasted meat, fried eggs, crispy bacon, sweet jam, and golden ale. While somewhat cliché, the flavors were nonetheless pleasing. He seated himself at the table and cut a piece to savor. Marwan's culinary skills improved daily, yet when would he master the art of stir-frying? Carmen could not help but jest, finding the meat somewhat bland in his mouth. He yearned for spice, fiery, scorching heat that would render him unable to relieve himself. The known world possessed chili peppers, yet he had forgotten when he last indulged in food of such explosive heat, especially the spicy hot pot. Marwan's cooking merely included a hint of black pepper, which bore no resemblance to true spiciness. The cursed continent of Essos had a climate that was a whole degree hotter than Westeros. Carmen felt an overwhelming urge to venture to the north of the Seven Kingdoms. To partake in a blazing hot pot amidst such frigid conditions, he could hardly fathom the ecstasy it would bring. The mere thought threatened to overwhelm him. Sitting across from Carmen, Lysandra silently committed his words to memory, preparing to inquire with Marwan about the meaning of stir-frying after their meal. My lord, you have guessed yet another matter correctly, Lysandra remarked as she set down her knife and fork. Carmen paused slightly, for having watched House of the Dragon, he had formulated many strategies and predictions. Momentarily unsure of which matter Lysandra referred to, a delegation from House Valyrian has arrived, and they bear a letter meant for your hands alone. However, the envoy was unaware of your presence in Watcher's Port and is currently en route from Lys, expected to arrive by tomorrow morning at the latest. Sensing Carmen's discomfort, Lysandra promptly relayed the information. Understanding dawned upon Carmen. Prepare for tomorrow. The Valyrian family plays a pivotal role in the Grand Triangle and must not be neglected. Chiole has mentioned the identity of the Valyrian envoy. What is his name? It is Waymond Valyrian, who claims to be the nephew of Corlys Valyrian. So it is him, Waymond Valyrian. This individual has left quite an impression in the television series. Before the gathered assembly, he brazenly accused Rhaenyra of being a wanton, only to have half his head severed by demon. While it is true that Rhaenyra has engaged in an affair and borne 3 bastards, to state such a thing before the likes of Viserys I is indeed audacious. Who does not know that the ruler of the 7 kingdoms, Viserys I, dotes on his daughter? Is there truly a difference between that and delivering a slap to Viserys I's aged visage? Chapter 34. You see. Anxious again, the following day dawned grim and overcast, with torrential raindrops sweeping across the land. After a lengthy drought, the rain was a welcome relief. Without it, I would surely be scorched. Common stood upon the balcony, extending his hand outside to feel the rain's relentless embrace. The environment in Dragonstone is indeed more comfortable than in Driftmark. Perhaps you could return to Driftmark, suggested Lysandro, standing beside Common. Common gently shook his head. No matter how many times he expressed it, Lysandro remained oblivious to the significance of the land. I trust Chiolay to manage Driftmark effectively. While my duty is to restore order to the contested territory, you place great importance on the contested lands. Indeed, land equates to populace and military strength. Remaining in Driftmark would squander the resources of the Moro Plains and the disputed woodlands. You can still command the development of the contested lands from Driftmark. Lysandro, rotating the jade ring on his thumb, asserted that no one would dare defy your orders. I assure you of that. It is not the issue, rather. Driftmark simply lacks the suitability to serve as the imperial capital. Lysandro's hand paused abruptly as he twisted the ring. The imperial capital? Common turned with an enigmatic smile. The imperial capital. We are the true heirs of Valyria, and the second Valyrian empire shall rise beneath our feet. Tyrosh and Myr shall nourish the empire, contributing their worth for its robust growth. Thunder rumbled as lightning rent the dark clouds asunder. Lysandro gazed at the illuminated countenance beneath the flash, suddenly realizing he had underestimated his uncle. He had thought the aim was merely to establish a new Targaryen family in Driftmark. However, the intent was to restore Valyria in the contested lands. No wonder. Lysandro finally understood why Common had meticulously chosen his mistresses. These women, possessing some intrinsic value, were likely being prepared for the creation of the Targaryen family. Another thunderclap echoed, followed closely by a knock at the door. Supreme Leader. The envoy from the Valyrian family has arrived. The sound of the maid's report echoed from outside. Take him to the hall. I shall join you shortly. Understood. After the maid departed, Carmen called the dazed Lysandro to the hall. Soon, they encountered the envoy from House Valyrian, Waymond Valyrian. A flash of lightning illuminated the sky as Waymond surveyed his surroundings before turning his gaze to Carmen. You must be Carmen. I have heard your mother is Rhaenyra Targaryen. It seemed that the modesty of the manner led Waymond to harbor some disdain for Carmen. Mind your words, Waymond Valyrian. You ought to show me a modicum of respect. Should there be a next time, I shall have your tongue severed, even if it incurs the ire of Count Corlys. Carmen's tone remained calm, yet it rendered Waymond's expression rigid, leaving him momentarily speechless. Where is the letter from Count Corlys? Hand it over, and you may depart. Carmen directly demanded the missive sent by Count Corlys. Given Waymond's manner of speaking, one could hardly fathom how Corlys could trust him with such an important task. Carmen had never encountered a more foolish envoy. Arrogant, conceited, and thoughtless, he was as foolish as Benick and his eldest son. With a sullen expression, Waymond reluctantly produced the letter and handed it to Carmen, sneering before turning to leave. Carmen made no effort to see him off and instead seated himself at the table to open the envelope. A simpleton like Waymond held no value for forming alliances. Just as the gloomy Waymond opened the door, a dark shadow suddenly descended from above. Rah! The roar erupted in his ears. Startled, Waymond stumbled backward, scrambling in a panic. Rah! Icarus charged into the manor, yet he posed no threat to Waymond. Instead, he darted past him, making his way to Carmen. Take care, envoy. There is no need for alarm. Icarus is quite intelligent, perhaps even more so than some. Lysandro teased, his tone unmistakably mocking. Waymond quickly regained his footing, shooting a venomous glare at Lysandro before fleeing into the pouring rain. Well done, Prince Icarus. This should serve as a profound lesson for him. Lysandro gave Icarus a thumbs up. Icarus glanced at Lysandro, shook off the remaining raindrops, and settled comfortably at Carmen's feet. With the letter in his left hand, Carmen read while absent-mindedly stroking Icarus, who exhaled a puff of vapor. Count Corlys has agreed to ally with us, but there are several conditions. Carmen raised the letter. Lysandro stepped forward to take it. Reading intently, Count Corlys had consented to Carmen's request for an alliance, yet he stipulated 5 conditions. 1. Withdraw from the Tri-City Alliance and publicly oppose Tyro's claim to dominion over the Stepstone Islands. 2. Deploy troops to contain Myr, thereby applying pressure on them. 3. To provide combat supplies for the Valyrian family's navy and replenish their fleet. 4. To grant him exclusive rights to sell fresh salt and wine in Westeros. 5. To wed Laenor Valyrian and relocate to Driftmark. Upon seeing the 5th condition, Lysandro was instantly alarmed. We must never acquiesce to Corlys' demands. His prices are exorbitant, his appetite rivaling that of a sea monster. You see, he is distressed. Common gently tapped the table, asserting that the terms are negotiable. As for the 5th condition, rest assured, I shall never betray Sancalia. Common's words caused Lysandro's face to flush. Being exposed in such an intimate moment was undeniably awkward. Lysandro genuinely feared that Common would concede to Corlys' terms. It is well known that Laenor commands the world's largest and oldest dragon. Marrying her equates to acquiring a dragon at the pinnacle of its might, battle-hardened and formidable. Chapter 35, Codex, Taxes. Should we send someone to negotiate further? Lysandro awkwardly shifted the topic. Common perceived his unease, but had no intention of pressing him further. There is no need to rush. We are not the ones embroiled in battle, so why the haste? Simply send word to Corlys, inviting him to Dragonstone for an in-person discussion regarding our alliance. Is that feasible? I fear Corlys may not be willing to take such risks. It is perilous. Lysandro furrowed his brow. It is indeed feasible. Corlys is not me. Aegon has yet to mature, and the Valyrian family possesses 3 dragons that have seen battle. Common was confident that Corlys would come to meet him. If Corlys does not arrive, then Common would not risk venturing into battle himself. A competent leader would never place themselves in jeopardy. Shall I make arrangements now? Go ahead. Lysandro bowed respectfully before turning to leave. The mist lingering around Aegon had nearly evaporated. It affectionately nudged Common's right hand, emitting a soft, endearing hum. What Common needed most at this moment was time. Whether it was to develop the Maguz Plains or the disputed woodlands, or regarding Aegon. It all required time, at least 5 years. As Common reclined in his chair, eyes closed in contemplation, a pair of gentle hands began to massage his temples. Perhaps you should take a few days to rest, came Rika's voice. Ever since that day when Common had warned her, she had become entirely compliant. She followed him closely whenever she had the chance, resembling a devoted wife more than Sancalia herself. No need for that. I am not weary. Merely pondering our next moves and simultaneously assembling a navy. Rika felt a surge of joy within but did not exhibit it outwardly. The surroundings were indeed unstable, necessitating a standing navy to safeguard Lys and the safety of Watcher Esport. Common opened his eyes and gazed up at Rika's face. This navy will be under your command. However, you are not permitted to venture to the Summer Isles for the next 2 years. Understand? Understood, rest assured. Everything is under your command. You are my steadfast support. She allowed Common to rest his head upon her bosom, her hands gently kneading his temples. Common nodded softly, thoroughly content with the current state of Rika. Both Johanna and Rika have become quite obedient, particularly Johanna, a woman of remarkable intelligence. 2 months have swiftly passed, ushering in the 7th month of the year. The initial framework of True Dragon City has begun to take shape, with the foundation of the core structure. The True Dragon Palace, already laid. In the center of the plaza reserved in front of the palace, Common gathered all the workers. The construction of True Dragon City was temporarily halted, and everyone was instructed to return to the fields to harvest grain. With land tax set at 1/10 and a head tax of 60 copper coins. For those wishing to sell grain, I shall purchase it at market price. As Common's words echoed, a subtle stir rippled through the crowd, but tranquility soon returned. They had long anticipated this tax. In the past, they had been so impoverished they resorted to gnawing on tree bark, and Lys had deemed it a waste of time to exploit them further, allowing them to scrape by. Now, as their lives improved, taxation was inevitable. Moreover, Common had issued the True Dragon Code a month prior. During the workers' evening meal, he arranged for literate individuals to read the contents of the code aloud. The True Dragon Code is divided into 3 main sections: criminal law, statutory law, and civil law, with explicit tax provisions outlined in the civil law section. After prolonged readings, the workers grasped some of the implications. The construction site was laden with regulations, and those who violated them more than 3 times would face dismissal. No one wished to relinquish such favorable employment. Thus, everyone adhered to the rules with utmost caution. They had been subtly transformed, becoming accustomed to compliance and taking pride in their adherence to regulations. Therefore, upon hearing that land and head taxes would commence this year, their initial unrest dissipated almost immediately. Their daily earnings amounted to 200 copper coins, while the head tax was merely 60. The 1/10 land tax was negligible. The fertile lands had been appropriated by landowners through various means. Each family possessed an average of 2 acres of barren land, yielding a meager harvest. Had it not been for Common's directive to return for the grain harvest, They would have preferred to let the crops rot in the fields rather than abandon their work. After all, a pound of rye costs only 12 copper coins. By remaining, they could earn 200 copper coins a day, along with broth to sustain them. 1,000 workers were gradually sent back, among them the 30-year-old Abba, who returned to his thatched cottage with a heavy heart. Inside the small abode, no decent furniture could be found, only a rather antiquated wooden stump serving as a dining table. He plopped down on the stump, a frown etched upon his face. "Darling, why are you back so soon?" Abba's wife, her belly swollen, rose from the straw bed, concern etched upon her features. "Were you dismissed?" Innie bit her lip, reassuring herself. "It is all right, my dear. You have been working for a month and a half. Our child will surely grow up healthy." Though her heart ached, Innie forced a smile to comfort her husband. "You have saved 9 silver coins for our child, and now that the wheat is ready for harvest, I will help you gather it." Abba rose and offered the wooden stake to his wife before sighing. "It is not as you think. The Frere has commanded all of us to return home to collect the grain, promising to purchase it without limit." Abba recounted Cayman's orders in detail, which finally eased Innie's worries. "Let us not sell the grain. After paying our taxes, we shall keep the rest for ourselves. What do you think?" Innie gently cradled her swollen belly. The grain was her lifeline, providing her with immense security, and she was unwilling to part with it. Chapter 36. The envoy from Bravos. The head tax must be paid, even by the commoners of Risk City. The 9th month of each year is designated for taxation. To be precise, the tax collection begins in August and concludes in September. The commercial tax in Risk City is 1/10. The majority of tax revenue is derived from brothels, blanket merchants, perfumers, and blacksmiths crafting long daggers. Particularly notable are the blankets of Riss, renowned worldwide. Many artisans earn their livelihoods by sewing these blankets. Beyond this, numerous wealthy merchants generously sponsor artists, actors, and sculptors, who also contribute significantly to the tax revenue. The demand for beauty and pleasure permeates every aspect of Riss people's lives, making related industries the backbone of tax contributions. Last year, Riss's tax revenue reached 600,000 gold dragons, with 70% originating from industries associated with the pursuit of beauty and pleasure. On the first day of August, the True Dragon Palace announced once again a year of tax exemption. This included commercial taxes, land taxes, and head taxes. Additionally, various unreasonable taxes, such as window tax and cesspool tax, were abolished. These taxes primarily served as a means for the governor's council to amass wealth, with peculiar taxes emerging annually. Cayman directly abolished these taxes, decreeing that only commercial taxes, land taxes, and head taxes would be collected in the future. As news of the year-long tax exemption spread, Cayman's reputation soared to new heights. He was hailed as the visionary Cayman, while others referred to him as the benevolent Dragon King. In addition to this, a plethora of peculiar titles arose, all praising Cayman's achievements, attracting a multitude of bards who composed songs in his honor. Some were funded by Cayman himself, while others merely followed the trend. Praising Cayman had seemingly become a unique custom in Riss. It appeared that from some unknown point in time, whenever a bard sang praises of Cayman, an audience would gather and reward them. People relished the tales of Cayman's journey from illegitimate son to dragon rider, and many theatrical troupes performed daily. The land of controversy, True Dragon City. At this moment, the construction of True Dragon City has recommenced, with a formidable workforce of 15,000 individuals engaged in the endeavor. Common has invested a substantial sum of money into this venture. He has meticulously selected 3 locations, intending to establish 3 new salt fields and concurrently launch a new distillery. Although fresh salt powder, gold liquor, and beauty soap are all consumables, the demand for fresh salt powder evidently surpasses that for the latter two. Particularly, beauty soap, with the expansion of its production, has seen its market demand stabilize. As for gold liquor, it faces stiff competition from numerous substitutes. Many regions produce high-quality spirits that rival gold liquor in excellence. Consequently, the reception of gold liquor in most areas is merely commendable, with many preferring to indulge in more affordable alternatives. However, in the north of Westeros, gold liquor remains perpetually in high demand. The north, blanketed in snow for most of the year, holds high-grade liquor in great esteem, hoarding it for the long nights. This immense demand has prompted Common to contemplate establishing a factory in the north. Yet, both beauty soap and gold liquor pale in comparison to the demand for fresh salt powder. Following an initial price surge, the price of fresh salt powder has skyrocketed to 80 golden dragons per pound. Even though expanding production might lead to a price decline, fresh salt powder remains exceedingly lucrative for Common. Increasing output would only yield greater profits. Even if the price for fresh salt powder were to fall to 20 golden dragons per pound, it would still be immensely profitable. As the construction of True Dragon City thrived, a grand purple ship sailed into Watchport. Upon docking, a dozen individuals disembarked. The leader, an elderly man, was closely followed by 3 middle-aged men clad in black attire. The remaining 10 were armored guards. Is this truly Watchport? Jorn Cinderton surveyed his surroundings. Although Watchport had expanded significantly, it still paled in comparison to Bravo's Purple Harbor. It must be correct, my lord Jorn. This is the only port in the contested territory of Lys. Harden, dressed in black, stood unwaveringly beside Jorn. He was Bravo's finest swordsman, tasked by the Sea King to protect the administrative officer Jorn Cinderton during negotiations in Lys. The governor of Lys, or rather, now referred to as the leader, struck Jorn as peculiar. Why would he abandon Lys City to venture into this wilderness? Despite his disdain, Jorn maintained an impassive expression. Suddenly, a roar echoed above, and a massive black dragon swooped past, heading towards a distant estate. It seems the rumors hold true. Common is indeed a dragon rider, and that fearsome black dragon is a testament to his prowess. Jorn fixated intently on the receding silhouette of the dragon. It has grown remarkably fast, according to our intelligence. This black dragon had only hatched in the 2nd month of this year. In mere 6 months, it has already reached an impressive height of over 3 meters. Jorn's brow furrowed. In just 6 months, 3 meters, this growth rate surpasses even that of the first-generation dragons recorded in the Black and White Academy. It is said that this dragon emerged from the fossil of an egg, perhaps a manifestation of divine will. In a moment of contemplation, Harden could not discern the reason, attributing it solely to the will of the gods. If this truly were divine intent, then such a decree ought to have been bestowed upon Bravos, where this black dragon should have been born. Jorn inhaled deeply, feeling a surge of jealousy within him. Had this black dragon been born in Bravos, it would have rewritten the entire landscape of Essos, condemning all slave masters to their demise. Alas, there is no room for hypotheticals. The first dragon of Essos was born in Lys, upon the shoulders of a bastard. Let us proceed to meet the Dragon Knight of Lys, the first among the free trade city-states to express an intention to ally with Bravos. The Sea King has issued a decree that Lys must abolish slavery and become our ally. Once that is accomplished, after the Sea King has dealt with Pintos, he will join forces with Lys to eliminate Tyrosh and Mir. The entirety of the Western Essos will witness the eradication of any slave-holding city-state. At that juncture, Bravos will possess the strength and allies to confront the eastern dominion of Volantis head-on. Chapter 37. The first manner, as the saying goes, timing is everything. In the hall, Jorn and Lysander exchanged glances, momentarily ensnared in silence. Are you implying that your leader has gone to work in the fields? Jorn inquired, his expression a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. Well, not exactly working, more like guiding the farmers in their toil, replied Lysander. A young man of mercantile origins instructing farmers? Do you truly expect me to believe that? Lysander twirled the jade ring on his finger, and seeing Jorn's continued skepticism, he reluctantly added, if you doubt my words, you may accompany me. Our leader is not far away at Manor 1. Jorn and Harden exchanged a glance, then nodded in agreement. Very well, I shall accompany you. However, should you be deceiving me, our discussions of alliance shall be rendered moot. Rest assured, there is no deception here. I will arrange for a carriage at once. Lysander summoned 3 carriages, and he shared one with Jorn, accompanied by Harden. As the carriage began its slow journey, the construction of True Dragon City unfolded before Jorn's eyes. Laborers toiled diligently, their sweat-soaked bodies failing to conceal the smiles upon their faces. This scene astonished Jorn. It seems this group of workers holds great affection for your leader, maintaining such cheerful countenances even in this sweltering heat. That is certainly part of it, yet ultimately, it comes down to remuneration. Our leader has stated that they are not fools. They know who will provide them with a better life, Lysander explained. The adage he who has milk is king will always hold true. How much do they earn in a day? 50 coppers? Jorn inquired. If they truly earn 50 coppers, that indeed constitutes an excellent wage. In the port of Bravos, longshoremen toil all day for a mere 30 coppers. Earning around 50 coppers a day here is indeed commendable, although 50 coppers is hardly sufficient. Lysandro's expression revealed a hint of embarrassment. The heat of the day was already oppressive, and in addition to the fixed compensation of 200 coppers, there now existed an added allowance of 80 coppers for the high temperatures. What did you say? Jorn exclaimed in astonishment. You pay these laborers 280 coppers a day. They are not mere laborers, Mr. Jorn. In our realm, wealth allows one to enjoy all that life has to offer. Yet, before the laws set forth by the Frere, all are equal. This is the current state of affairs in Lys. Wealth affords one all privileges, provided one does not contravene the regulations established by Cayman, known as the True Dragon Code. Jorn regarded Lysandro with a knowing glance. curiosity stirring within him about Cayman, a ruler seemingly distinct from the ordinary. What is the total number of individuals you have recruited for the construction of roads, buildings, walls, and trees? 10,000, with plans to continue expanding in due time. Lysandro replied without hesitation. This was not a secret in Lys. Cayman often disseminated information regarding recruitment and conscription plans in advance. 10,000. Joran was genuinely taken aback. One gold dragon could be exchanged for 10,000 coppers, amounting to 280 gold dragons per day. While this may not seem substantial, once one factors in the costs of materials and various unforeseen expenses, the total at the end of the month is far from negligible. The workers' wages constitute but a small fraction. The true bulk lies in the construction materials, stone, timber, which cannot simply be gathered at will. The true dragon city appears quite expansive. Can your financial chain withstand such demands? Joran inquired, looking toward Lysandro. Of course, our financial chain can endure, although expenditures flow freely. The three treasures of the Free Trade Guild generate income even more rapidly. However, we are beginning to feel the strain and are preparing to halt operations temporarily in a month, allowing for a respite before resuming work, Lysandro replied, displaying an appropriately exasperated expression, followed by a sigh. Due to stringent confidentiality measures, Joran remained oblivious to the substantial profits generated by fresh salt powder. In reality, the production cost of fresh salt powder is lower than that of golden wine and beauty soap, with all raw materials sourced from the bountiful sea, an inexhaustible resource. Even the sea worms thrive in their controversial coastal habitats. Observing Lysandro's melancholic demeanor, Joran maintained a facade of indifference, yet inwardly reveled in the situation. The scarcity of funds was advantageous. The most prosperous industry in Bravos is finance, with heaps of gold coins and the iron vault awaiting utilization. Bravos possesses wealth while Lys grapples with financial constraints, thus granting Bravos the upper hand in this alliance. Soon, the carriage arrived at Manor Number 1, which is destined to be expanded into Town Number 1. Cayman, lacking enthusiasm for naming, opted for the simplest designation, although the formal expansion has yet to commence. The first estate, after the removal of the external fence, has already begun to take on the semblance of a small town. Fields are cultivated. Wooden cabins stand in neat rows, and structures such as a bakery, a well, livestock pens, and stables are all present. From his vantage point, Joran can even spot a blacksmith's shop and a tailor's shop not far away. Is this what you refer to as an estate? This is evidently a thriving small town. Joran gazes at the scene before him, having relinquished his previous disdain for Common and Riss. Prior to his arrival, he had amassed considerable intelligence regarding Common and was aware that he possessed numerous estates. If each estate is as prosperous as this one, then Common's strength may indeed surpass his initial estimations. Given a few more years, it is conceivable that Common could cultivate such prosperity throughout all of Riss. Joran, being well-versed, surmises that maintaining this level of prosperity could double the population of Riss within a decade. At that juncture, Riss would likely possess the capability to confront Volantis directly on land. This would be immensely advantageous for Bravos. Should Riss truly flourish, it would become a thorn in the side of Volantis as an ally of Bravos. It would be even better if a war were to erupt between Riss and Volantis. Bravos would not only profit from the war, but would also weaken Volantis, achieving two objectives with one stroke. Lysandro led the way, explaining, "This is the first estate under the Free Trade Guild, which is set to begin expansion in October, approximately tripling its size. Only then can it truly be considered a small town." Chapter 38. The initial alliance. As the group walked and explored, Lysandro intermittently provided explanations. However, upon passing a substantial building, he suddenly grew quiet. The enormous circular structure was surrounded by fences, with guards clad in leather armor patrolling the perimeter. What is this? Are they producing fresh salt powder inside? Joran's eyes sparkled with curiosity, as if he wished to see through the exterior walls of the building. Lysandro regarded the vast fertilizer production facility with an odd expression. Indeed, something noteworthy was produced within, though it was the complete antithesis of fresh salt powder. If one were to incorporate the product from this edifice into their cooking, the flavor would be indescribable. Well, sort of. It's our secret. There's nothing to see here. Let us move on. We will soon meet the leader, Lysandro replied evasively, continuing onward. Joran wished to take a closer look, perhaps even to enter for a visit, but alas, Lysandro had already departed, and he had no choice but to hastily follow. The farmland within the estate had been cultivated in large-scale plots, often clustered together. How many times must I reiterate the importance of crop rotation? You rascal! Why do you insist on planting wheat throughout the entire year? Do you regard my words as mere nonsense? Joran had yet to lay eyes on the speaker when the sound of their furious outburst reached his ears. Following the sound, one could behold a youth barefoot upon the earth, wielding a shovel in one hand. That individual is our leader, somewhat stern. The young black boy is in dire straits. Lysanzo pointed to Cayman, introducing him to Yorn. I discerned that he seemed inclined to strike down the slave. Yorn nodded gravely. However, one aspect eluded my understanding. Why do some individuals don collars of servitude while others do not? Yorn, with a keen eye, quickly perceived that the vast majority were indeed slaves, yet some bore collars while others did not. Those without collars are distinguished producers who, upon being recognized for their excellence, may regain their freedom. Our leader disapproves of slavery. Had it not been for the prevalence of slave-holding city-states surrounding us, the institution of slavery in Riss would have been abolished the moment he ascended to leadership. Thus, our leader offers these slaves an opportunity for liberation through diligent labor. They can not only regain their freedom, but even earn land as a reward. Yorn felt a surge of joy within. This was undoubtedly favorable news for him. For Cayman detested slavery. While reprimanding the young black boy before him, Cayman suddenly heard someone call his name. Turning around, he saw Lysanzo approaching with a group of unfamiliar faces. Lysanzo, who are these individuals? Leader, this is Yorn Shinton, the envoy from Bravos. An envoy from Bravos? Cayman exchanged a knowing glance with Lysanzo, an understanding dawning upon him. So, it is an envoy dispatched by the Sea King. Let us proceed to the manor. I shall freshen up. With that, Cayman rubbed the dirt off his hands. We appreciate your hospitality, leader, Yorn replied with a smile. Cayman was acutely aware of Yorn's intentions. The alliance between their factions was destined to flourish. The only matter requiring negotiation was the extent of benefits Cayman could secure from Yorn. Upon arriving at the manor, Cayman, having refreshed himself and attended to his appearance, entered the grand hall. Yorn was savoring Riss's new specialty, the strongest variant of gin. Do you have a penchant for strong spirits, sir? Cayman inquired leisurely as he took a seat across from Yorn. Strong alcohol is rarely favored. Most prefer to dilute their drink with water. Thus, lower alcohol gin enjoys greater popularity. Yorn was the first person Cayman encountered who appreciated the finer qualities of potent spirits. The stronger the drink, the more delightful it is. I used to indulge in wine from Dorne, but since the advent of gin, I cannot part with it. If you share the taste for high-proof gin, when you return, I shall gift you 50 barrels. I am most grateful, leader. Yorn did not decline Cayman's offering, and Cayman smiled in response. Yorn's readiness to accept his gift indicated a substantial likelihood that he approached the meeting with intentions of alliance. In light of this, further negotiation seemed unnecessary, for it would only squander precious time. I believe there is no need for us to engage in futile arguments. Tyros and Mill are nothing but fools. Rays requires new allies, and I am inclined to abolish slavery. Common spoke plainly, while Yorn's eyes sparkled with intrigue. The Chancellor intends to eradicate slavery yet has not taken action. Is there an underlying issue? The crux of the matter emerged as Common sat up straight. Rays possesses a significant number of slaves. Those with skills may be employable. However, the majority are ordinary slaves, and once they regain their freedom, their survival becomes a pressing concern. I can arrange for individuals to teach them how to cultivate land and sustain themselves. Yet, both land cultivation and farming require time. Prior to that, I must finance their sustenance to ensure Rays' stability. The dilemma lies in my dwindling finances. Borrowing money incurs exorbitant interest rates. Common's gaze was piercing as he fixated on Yorn. His implication was unmistakable. As long as Bravos can provide interest-free or low-interest loans, Rays could abolish slavery at any moment. Chapter 39. Yorn's calculations. Yorn leisurely sipped his wine. If it were merely a matter of finances, the resolution would be simple. He chuckled as he set down his goblet. Are you suggesting I borrow from the Iron Bank? Indeed, I can take the initiative to represent the Iron Bank and lend Rays 2 million gold dragons. Would that suffice? A sense of pride adorned Yorn's face. Directly lending 2 million gold dragons is a feat achievable only by the Iron Bank of Bravos. Common's expression shifted to one of discomfort. While the sum would undoubtedly suffice, the Iron Bank's interest rates are intolerably high, as you have observed. There are numerous expenses at present. Yorn's eyelids flickered. He sensed that the other party was waiting for him to respond. Interest is negotiable, since we are allies. We shall not adhere to the rates imposed on outsiders. Yorn's mind raced. How about this? 2 million gold dragons, to be repaid over 40 years. With interest amounting to 400,000 gold dragons. How does that sound? Upon hearing this, Common immediately waved his hand in refusal. 400,000 gold dragons could expand a small town. How about 40,000 gold dragons instead? Yorn's eyes widened in disbelief. Chancellor, please do not jest. 40,000 gold dragons, are you serious? I am indeed serious. As allies, is it not customary to assist one another's development? Yorn was momentarily at a loss for words. 40 years, with an interest of 40,000 gold dragons. What difference does that make compared to no interest at all? The interest of 40,000 is far too low. Let us revise this. 200,000 gold dragons, still over 40 years. Surely that is acceptable? Yorn believed he had presented a most reasonable offer. However, in truth, Common was unwilling to part with even a single coin in interest. Nonetheless, Common found himself in a tight financial situation, with income and expenditure nearly balanced. If he could secure a loan of 2 million gold dragons with low interest, it would indeed be a favorable option. Thus, the matter is settled. My finances are currently strained but manageable at most. I could afford a temporary cessation of operations. I would never part with gold to pay exorbitant interest. 40,000 golden dragons is my absolute limit. If that is not feasible, then let Lysis remain in the Tri-City Alliance for now, after all. Time is the one resource I possess in abundance. Common, adopting a nonchalant demeanor, reclined in his chair, utterly unperturbed. As the production of fresh salt gradually increases, the gold I acquire will only multiply, and Icarus continues to grow. The last thing Common fears is delay. Yorn's expression soured. For the sum of 40,000 golden dragons felt woefully inadequate. In a typical lending scenario, 2 million golden dragons over 40 years would accrue at least 500,000 golden dragons in interest. 400,000 golden dragons is already a friendly rate. Yet, the Sea King has issued a resolute command. Lysis must be brought to Bravos. Disturbed and agitated, Yorn's frustration intensified upon witnessing Common's indifference. Chief Common, there is a matter of grave importance I must discuss with you. According to our intelligence, Tylos is exceedingly displeased with you. Moreover, the Lord of Tylos intends to take action against Lysis once he secures victory in the conflict over the Stepstone Islands. A certain Anders Sonda, a former governor of Lysis, stands a high chance of usurping your position, and all your efforts will merely serve as his triumph. Yorn spoke earnestly, his expression one of warning. However, Common could not contain his laughter, bursting forth with mirth. It has been an eternity since I heard a jest that brought me such delight. Do you truly believe Tylos and the Meal family could triumph in the Stepstone Islands? Ha ha ha. Thank you for the amusement. I shall reward you with an additional 10 barrels of fine wine upon my departure. No need for thanks. Yorn's countenance darkened. I am not jesting, Chief Common. Do you genuinely believe Lysis can withstand the united onslaught of Tylos and Meal? Gradually, Common's laughter subsided, setting aside the question of whether Tylos and Meal can achieve victory. Even if they do win, the war will drag on for at least 2 years. As he concluded this statement, he placed his right hand to his mouth and whistled. Before long, the resonant roar of a dragon echoed overhead. With a thunderous crash, Icarus burst through the door, lunging towards Yorn with a menacing roar. Harden, startled by the sudden emergence of the black dragon, swiftly retreated behind Yorn. Realizing the awkwardness of his actions, and noticing that no one had observed his small misstep, he hurriedly positioned himself in front of Yorn. His earlier retreat had been purely instinctual, a reaction born of surprise. Yorn too was taken aback, stumbling backward and knocking over his chair. Your dragon has gone mad. Make it stop. Yorn shouted in alarm. Yet, Icarus merely bounded to Common's feet, obediently lying down, awaiting affection from his master. Do you have any idea how long it took for it to grow this large? Common inquired, eyeing Yorn. At this point, Yorn had gradually regained his composure, moving to sit at a safer distance. I have no knowledge, but I have heard it takes merely 6 months. Indeed, it has been half a year. Do you believe that in 2 years, I will fear the Targaryens and the Valyrians? To speak candidly, the Valyrian family has been in frequent contact with me lately. Can you guess their intentions? In your opinion, how does the wealth of the Valyrian family compare to that of the Iron Bank? Ultimately, the wealth of the Valyrian family versus that of the Iron Bank is of little consequence. What truly matters is that the Valyrians can still extend their support to Lys. Yorn's expression fluctuated, but soon a smile graced his face. The might of the Iron Bank is undoubtedly beyond the comparison of a single family like the Valyrians. 40,000 golden dragons is merely 40,000 golden dragons. As long as Grandmaster Common is willing to abolish slavery and ally with us in Bravos, all matters can be negotiated. Moreover, if you could grant us the rights to sell fresh salt in the continent, the amount of the loan could certainly be reconsidered. Common's eyes narrowed as he scrutinized Yorn with his distinct heterochromatic gaze. Reconsider? Yorn chuckled. As long as you command that fresh salt is no longer sold to the slave cities. An increase of the loan to 5 million golden dragons would not pose an issue. Common smirked inwardly. Yorn's optimism was rather fanciful. If fresh salt were not sold to the slave cities, he would incur immeasurable losses in the market. The surplus production of fresh salt would inevitably be consumed by Bravos, allowing them to profit handsomely. Observing Common's silence, Yorn continued, of course, you could also establish a factory in Bravos. The esteemed Sea Lord may waive taxes for several years. Common was momentarily speechless. If he were to build a factory in Bravos, it would not be long before Bravos would possess its own fresh salt. Chapter 40. The Second Kingdom Common declined the proposal to build a factory in Bravos. Nevertheless, the alliance with Bravos proceeded smoothly. The two signed a non-binding knightly treaty, stipulating mutual assistance between the two city-states, particularly in military matters. After bidding farewell to Bravos' envoy, Common convened all ministers in the True Dragon Hall. He publicly declared that Lys was now a thing of the past and would henceforth be ruled by the Second Kingdom. The royal capital was established in the True Dragon Hall, and the territory previously controlled by Lys was renamed the Land of the True Dragon. The royal house belonged to the Egalian family of dragon lords, with Common Egalian himself as the inaugural patriarch. Simultaneously, he formally appointed Lysandro as Grand Master and Financial Counselor, and Drazek as Financial Counselor. Mark, Johanna, and Kirill were all officially appointed as members of the Round Table Conference. Among them, Mark was the most elated. He had never dreamed that he would one day become a significant official in a kingdom, especially one established by dragon lords. Common did not immediately establish the Valyrian Second Empire, but rather chose to name the nation the Second Kingdom. The rationale was simple. With his current strength, he could not yet bear the title of Valyrian Second Empire, as he lacked the capacity to simultaneously confront the powers of both the Western and Eastern continents. To hastily name it the Valyrian Second Empire would likely provoke a fierce backlash from the known world. After all, the powers on both the Eastern and Western continents have, to varying degrees, connections to Valyria. Should he proclaim it the Valyrian Second Empire now, it is likely that the first to take offense would be Bravos. Who could forget that Bravos was once comprised of Valyrian slaves? Their opposition to slavery stems from their origins as fugitive slaves of Valyria. The Second Kingdom serves as a prudent intermediary, one that would not instill fear or hostility in the city-states of the Eastern continent. Cayman can initially establish his hegemony in the world, laying the groundwork for the resurgence of Valyria's former glory. To commemorate the establishment of the kingdom and the formal recognition of Egalian as part of the Dragon King lineage, he hosted a week-long feast of celebration. Upon the conclusion of the festivities, Cayman bestowed the title of Prince of Lys upon the one-year-old Grey Solon. Simultaneously, he publicly announced an alliance with Bravos, the abolition of slavery, and his immediate withdrawal from the Tri-City Alliance. These momentous declarations swiftly swept across the Essos continent, even reaching Westeros. While it was anticipated, none could have foreseen Cayman's rapid self-declaration as Dragon King and the establishment of his own nation in Lys. In a certain sense, the Second Kingdom established by Cayman stands as the only true nation on the Essos continent, rather than merely a city-state. Far across the seas, the Sea King of Bravos, though he had not yet encountered the visage of Yoren Santon, understood that Lys, now the Second Kingdom, had declared the abolition of slavery and formed an alliance with Bravos. Thus, Yoren Santon's efforts must have succeeded. Consequently, the Sea King promptly responded by publicly acknowledging the alliance with the Second Kingdom and recognizing its ruling authority. Following his acknowledgement of the alliance, the Sea King dispatched troops to display their might at the borders of Pentos and sent envoys to negotiate amicably with Pentos. The Sea King of Bravos was delighted. However, the High Lord of Tyrosh and the Governor of Myr were thrown into a state of alarm. They had never imagined Cayman would abolish slavery in Lys and ally with Bravos. Initially believing that Anders, Ivica, and Destin would leave Cayman in a vulnerable position, they anticipated that after the conclusion of the war on the Stepstone Islands, they could compel him to surrender the manufacturing techniques for products such as salt and puty soap. Yet, with Cayman's direct abolition of slavery and alliance with Bravos, it was they who now found themselves at a disadvantage. Should Bravos succeed in conquering Pentos, they would face a united onslaught. Faced with Bravos' invincible fleet and aerial supremacy, would they not be utterly overwhelmed? Moreover, they remained mired in the quagmire of war on the Stepstone Islands. To the south, north, and west, one side boasts dragons, another possesses an unbeatable naval fleet, and the final one wields both dragons and a formidable maritime armada. Tylos and Mill were momentarily rendered speechless, opting instead to discreetly dispatch envoys to Volantis in search of assistance. Previously, Tylos, Mill, and Rhys had united to resist the encroachment of Volantis. Now, however, Tylos and Mill found themselves compelled to seek the very aid they had once opposed. Should Volantis not divert Common's attention in the disputed territories, they would likely face the dire prospect of a three-front war. Amidst the turbulent currents from without, the newly established Second Kingdom was also rife with internal discord. The abolition of slavery felt akin to a visceral amputation. The Rhys people, who cherished art and indulgence, relied on slaves for their labor. A considerable faction harbored resentment towards Common's decree, viewing slaves as personal property. The abolition, undoubtedly, stripped them of their assets, compelling them to engage paid labor for manual tasks henceforth. In response, Common proclaimed that the Second Kingdom championed freedom, granting any individual the right to depart and exercise their own choices. Many clamored for compensation, yet none proposed leaving the Second Kingdom. Their wits prevailed. Under the aegis of the Dragon King and with lucrative commodities like fine salt powder, the Second Kingdom was destined to ascend as the preeminent power of Essos. They merely sought recompense to mitigate their losses. 3 months swiftly elapsed. Ultimately, Common, in the name of the crown, compensated those Reese individuals who had lost slaves at 30% of the market value. After 3 months of negotiation, both sides conceded ground. Empowered by low-interest loans from the Iron Treasury, Common promptly commenced military expansion, bolstering the Storm Brigade to a force of 20,000, thereby forming the Storm Army. Simultaneously, the estate began to expand towards the town, enlisting many of the newly liberated slaves, who possessed literacy and numeracy skills. Once freed, Common directly recruited these individuals in the name of the king, appointing them as town administrators, working alongside the original estate overseers on the expansion project. Essentially, all skilled former slaves were enlisted by Common, including those who had previously served as physician slaves, blacksmith slaves, seamstress slaves, and even gladiators and bed slaves. If they possessed a trade, Common ensured their placement. Numerous hospitals, steel mills, and textile factories rose rapidly, with a substantial influx of funds amounting to 2 million. Many previously planned structures could commence construction ahead of schedule. The production of fine salt powder had more than tripled, while the output of soap and golden liquor also doubled. A plethora of merchants began to dock at Watcher's port. Many Reese individuals residing on Reese Island discerned new opportunities, prompting them to relocate with their families near True Dragon City. On this day, the True Dragon Palace welcomed a distinguished guest. The piercing roar of a dragon reverberated across the palace as a slender, blood-red dragon descended from the heavens. The colossal dragon descended before the True Dragon Hall, its terrifying presence rendering the guards too fearful to approach, leaving them to merely observe. Common stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing at the ferocious and roaring bloodworm Coloxio, while Demon Targaryen atop its back seemed in no hurry to dismount. A show of power, how intriguing, Common mused quietly. Were it a decade later, should his adversary dare to be so brazen, he would certainly test the mettle of Demon and Coloxio. Alas, Igalus was still too young. Even nearing 5 meters in length after 9 months, it was utterly insignificant before Coloxio. Currently, Coloxio measured around 50 meters, capable of effortlessly tearing Igalus apart in a single bite. Let us proceed and meet this roguish prince, and observe just how debauched he truly is, Common declared, turning to lead Lysandro outside the True Dragon Hall. Upon reaching the exterior, both Common and Lysandro were struck by the sheer terror embodied by Coloxio, especially with its wings unfurled, spanning at least 140 meters. Lysandro pointed at Coloxio, turning to Common with a bemused smile. The alliance of the 3 cities is battling this creature on the Stone Steps archipelago? Admittedly, it was his first encounter with an adult dragon. Despite having mentally prepared himself by comparing it to Igalus, he remained astounded. Common laughed heartily. At most, it will reach 108. Indeed, the absence of rays will likely lead to an earlier defeat. Who could fathom the thoughts of Tylos and Mill, who were intent on engaging this beast? Common scoffed. This war was entirely avoidable, a band of fools squandering the strategic advantage of the Stone Steps archipelago. In that moment, Demon atop the dragon also spotted Common and Lysandro emerging from the True Dragon Hall. Upon his first glance at Common, Demon recognized him as a dragon rider. The distinct aura and peculiar sensation were unmistakable. Demon patted Coloxio, prompting it to lower its shoulder. Common Targaryen? Solon? Veshui? Demon strode confidently toward Common. Common raised an eyebrow. Noting the sharpness of his tongue, he would remember this slight. Common Egalian, simply call me your majesty. Of course, if you prefer cousin, I shall not take offense. In response, Demon smirked dismissively, for he referred to Vagr as brother, not your majesty. Nevertheless, recalling the purpose of his visit, he restrained himself somewhat. Tylos and Mill had already lost most of the islands of the Stone Steps archipelago. Demon regarded Common, whose heterochromatic eyes held a striking resemblance to the unique purple of Targaryen blood. And so, Common smiled. Shall we discuss matters within? Demon nodded, resting his right hand on the hilt of Dark Sister, following Common into the True Dragon Hall. Without a trace of hesitation, he was assured that Common lacked the courage to strike against him. Common seated himself upon the obsidian throne of the True Dragon King and instructed a servant to arrange a chair for Demon. Thus, this presents an opportune moment for us to jointly eliminate Tylos and Mir, or at the very least, inflict considerable damage upon them. Demon, with his leg crossed nonchalantly, seemed certain that Common would not let this rare opportunity slip away. The Second Kingdom had only recently been established and still had numerous internal matters to address. I was reluctant to engage in battle hastily. Common, with a smile, politely declined Demon's proposal for collaboration. Suit yourself, Demon remarked, taking a sip of the fine golden liquor poured by his attendant. The drink was rather exquisite. In truth, had it not been for Corlys, I would not have made this journey at all. Although surprised by Common's refusal, Demon did not appear overly concerned. I have heard you possess a black dragon. Why have I yet to see it? He glanced around before continuing. You hatched a dragon from a fossilized egg, but to be frank, I suspect you pilfered a dragon egg from Dragonstone. Huh? Do you truly believe that a dragon egg from Dragonstone has gone missing, and you, a Targaryen prince, are unaware? Oh, my apologies. I had forgotten the reason behind your initiation of the Stepstones War. My sincerest apologies. Perhaps you could inquire with your esteemed brother, the king, in King's Landing. Alternatively, you might wish to consult Princess Rhaenyra, the Light of the Realm. As the heir, she ought to be informed. Demon's expression darkened instantly. His gaze fixed upon Common, filled with fury and murderous intent. Unfazed, Common met his stare, having already shown considerable restraint towards Demon, who seemed increasingly audacious. With the Second Kingdom having just allied with Braavos, Common doubted Demon would dare to declare war on him. The construction of the Dragonstone Palace had incorporated extensive underground passages. Should Demon attempt a sudden assault on the palace upon his departure, Common could readily retreat underground. Furthermore, if Demon were to proceed with such an action, he should brace himself for Common's relentless retaliation. Chapter 42. The legitimate firstborn. 3 months swiftly passed. The year 108 drew to a close. The entire eastern continent and the narrow sea were rife with turmoil as the Stepstones War reached a boiling point. Tylos and Myr held steadfastly to the last island, engaging in a desperate struggle. Within the specialized birthing room of Dragonstone Palace, the anguished cries of Sandralia echoed incessantly. Common felt a twinge of anxiety, reminiscent of when Johanna had given birth. However, the sound of a baby's wailing soon alleviated his tension. Your Majesty, congratulations. You have a son and a daughter, and the queen is in good health. The midwife approached, cradling the 2 infants. Common cast a hasty glance at the children before rushing to Sandralia's side. How do you feel? Sandralia smiled. It felt akin to unleashing fire magic. One must gather strength and then release it all at once. Rest well? I shall take care of the rest. Common tenderly adjusted Sandralia's hair. Let me see the children. I am in excellent health, and a warm current has been swirling in my abdomen, surely a result of the fire magic. Common offered no further explanation, merely gesturing for the midwife to hand over the children. Sandralia received her offspring with great affection. The 2 little ones both possess golden white hair. The elder, a boy, has striking violet eyes, while the younger, a girl, boasts captivating azure eyes. The elder resembles me, and the younger resembles you, Sandra exclaimed joyfully while cradling the children. Haha, how can you tell who they look like when they are so young? Common chuckled. Let us name the children, Sandra suggested, gazing at Common. I have already given it some thought. The boy shall be named Belis Egalian, and the girl, Minia Egalian, Common replied. He stayed by Sandra's side for a while longer until she fell asleep before taking his leave. The following morning, as the sun rose, Common summoned his ministers at the True Dragon Palace to announce the birth of Belis and Minia. He conferred upon Belis the title of Prince of the True Dragon Palace, thereby establishing him as the heir to the Second Kingdom. In the ensuing 7 days, Common hosted a grand banquet that lasted 7 days and nights to celebrate the arrival of his heir. Father, I want a hug, Grace said, extending her little arms towards Common. He swiftly embraced her. It had been over a month since he last saw her. Perhaps we should let Grace and Diana stay at the True Dragon Palace for now, until they are a bit older before returning to Riss, Common suggested, looking at Johanna. That is fine. You decide, but I will not continue serving as the intelligence minister. My deputy, Burton Wilson, is quite capable. Let him take my place, Johanna replied, leaning lazily against Sandra, sensing the comforting pressure of her presence. Now, Grace had been appointed as the Prince of Riss, with the Dragon King serving as the governor and Corell assisting. Johanna was beginning to feel a bit aimless. And what will you do? Johanna shot Common a glance. What will I do? Why, I shall eat, drink, and enjoy myself at the True Dragon Palace. What else? Common winked, understanding that Johanna wished for him to remain close to Sandra, easing her concerns. Yet, Sandra did not grasp these nuances. Her mind seemed to only function well when it came to studying fire magic. With a sigh, Common felt somewhat helpless, unsure of what to say. One was too intelligent and sensitive, while the other was too naive and obtuse. Could they truly coexist harmoniously? Your Majesty, urgent intelligence has arrived from the front lines. The coalition of the 3 cities alliance has been defeated. Demon Targaryen has nearly seized all the islands and has proclaimed himself the king of the Narrow Sea and the Stone Steppes archipelago, crowned by Corlys Velaryon. Lytton rushed in with a report, revealing that after much anticipation, the Three Cities Alliance had suffered a comprehensive defeat. Immediately assemble the Storm Army and head to the borders of the Dralia Plains. Common commanded. The Dralia Plains belong to the heartland of Mill. Situated directly to the east of the disputed territory, adjacent to the region of the Messless River, it was originally a vast expanse of plains, later divided between Rhys and Mill. However, Common had long coveted the fertile lands of the Dralia Plain, which, if properly developed, could sustain hundreds of thousands of inhabitants. The dispersed Storm Army within the Second Kingdom swiftly gathered at the borders of Dralia. Common once again publicly demanded that Mill surrender Ivica, Anders, and Destin, threatening that failure to comply would result in violent repercussions from the Second Kingdom. Fresh from defeat at the Stone Steppes Isles, Mill had barely caught his breath before Common sought him out. Unsurprisingly, Mill refused to acquiesce to Common's demands. The trio of Ivica, Anders, and Destin served as a pretext for the Three Cities Alliance to trouble Common in the future, and they would not be handed over lightly. Yet, this was precisely what Common desired. If the Alliance could use the trio as an excuse, so too could Common. If they refused to surrender, they must prepare to face the consequences. In the first month of year 109, clad in specially crafted armor, Common arrived at the border between the Second Empire and Mill. He intended to personally oversee the war, determined to seize control of the entire Dralia Plain. At the temporary command post on the border, Common sat at the head of the table, formulating his battle strategy. Once the conflict commenced, the forces would need to divide into three groups. Frank, you will lead 2,000 cavalry with the primary objective of pillaging the estates. Eliminate the estate owners directly and ensure the return of the slaves and tenants. Cain, you will command another 2,000 cavalry, targeting towns and villages. Be careful not to plunder the civilians. They must be relocated to the true Dragonlands. The Dralia Plain was characterized by its flat, expansive terrain, dotted with farms, estates, and villages. There were no fortifications to defend, nor cities to protect. As the saying goes, when people exist but land is lost, both perish. When people lose their land but remain, they both are lost. Common planned to first relocate the population and then engage in a protracted campaign, training his troops while waging war. The Dralia Plain was easy to attack but difficult to defend. Once in a defensive position, one would be at a severe disadvantage. Cain and Frank departed with their 2,000 cavalry each, while Common led 30,000 infantry towards Mill, making as much noise as possible on their march. Upon learning that 30,000 well-trained infantry were advancing toward them, Mill fell into a state of panic, hastily organizing 5,000 slaves to defend the city. They also desperately sent out numerous distress signals for aid. In addition to Valyria and Telosai, Mill even sent pleas for assistance to the three city-states of Pantos, Novos, and Koar. Given the generally flat terrain of the contested area, Common's forces advanced with remarkable speed, covering the distance to within 50 miles of Mill in just a few days. Mill was thoroughly alarmed. Volantis was far too distant. Within the city, there were only 5,000 able-bodied slaves and an additional 30,000 slaves supported by Telosai. According to intelligence reports, Common's army was exceptionally well equipped, with many soldiers donning leather armor and a few in full armor. The governor of Mill grew increasingly anxious, wondering if merely relying on 80,000 slaves would suffice to hold the city walls against Common's 30,000 troops. However, the Storm Legion, led by Carmen, did not advance further after approaching Mill, halting their march merely 40 miles away. This development provided a sense of relief to the governor of Mill. At this juncture, the strategy was to prolong their defense for as long as possible, in hopes of awaiting the support from Volantis.